During the foundation building stage, after Lu Ruyan got pregnant, the elders of your family actually forced you, a nascent soul cultivator, to take on the role of a scapegoat. Even though you were the only one in the clan with the potential to achieve immortality and ascend, the elders still insisted on putting this hat on you. Without hesitation, you directly unleashed a mighty wild prison Skyfinger, thinking to yourself, I'm already in the nascent soul stage. How dare a bunch of foundation building ants bully me? All of you, perish. In the main hall of the Su family at this moment, the clan leader looked at you with a furious expression and said, Su Yen, with Miss Lu's celestial beauty, her choosing you is your blessing. What else are you dissatisfied with? However, Lu Ruyan paid no attention to the clan leader's attempts to please her, just lowering her head and gently caressing her slightly bulging belly. After absorbing all the memories of the original host, you stood there dumbfounded. What kind of bizarre family is this? They actually let a nascent soul realm like yourself take over someone else's body. Your gaze fell on the stunning beauty of the girl, and as she felt your eyes on her, Lu Ruyan turned to look at you, her beautiful eyes filled with deep calculations. If I can cultivate my son with your cultivation and innate sword talent, he will surely become a natural prodigy in the way of the sword. By then, he can even contend for the position of the great Xia Emperor. Honestly, Lu Ruyan is quite attractive, but looking at Lu Ruyan's big belly, any man wouldn't choose to be a father without effort, right? Moreover, where does Lu Ruyan get the audacity to marry you? Is she even worthy? In terms of talent, Lu Ruyan is only at the chi refining stage, while you, with your innate sword talent, have reached the peak of the nascent soul realm, just a step away from the core formation stage. In terms of family background, the Lu family is just a golden core family, while behind you stands the divine sky sword sect, and you are the contemporary disciple of the divine night sword sect, surpassing Lu Ruyan by miles in status and identity. Where does she get the nerve to call this a blessing? With so many disciples in the Su family, why did they specifically choose you? Who would believe there are no ulterior motives behind this? Coldness flickered in your eyes. The young clan leader beside you, seeing you silent, began to make things difficult. What's with your attitude? This marriage is of great benefit to you and the family. As a disciple of the Su family, how can you refuse? The Su family disciples around also chimed in. Listening to everyone's words, you gave a cold smile. Your gaze fell on Su Rong. Since you are the young master of the Su family, why don't you marry her? Su Rong's face instantly turned red. Who would be foolish enough to marry her and become that green-haired turtle? Your gaze then shifted to the enthusiastic Su family disciples, who all avoided your eyes, not daring to meet your gaze. Mockery gleamed in your eyes. That's enough. The family head, Su Hai, spoke in a deep voice, his indifferent gaze fixed on you. This matter is settled. No one is allowed to object. Otherwise, they will be expelled from the Su family. He believed that under his pressure, you would surely agree. I disagree. Su Hai's face turned livid. Say that again. At the same time, a pressure of golden core level also fiercely pressed down on you. Faced with this immense pressure, you remained unfazed. In the next moment, a more majestic aura surged from you, overwhelming Su Hai like a landslide. Su Hai's blood and energy surged, his spiritual energy in chaos. With just a slight move, you severely injured him. You have actually reached the nascent soul realm. He forcibly swallowed the blood in his mouth, his cold gaze fixed on you. Are you trying to rebel? Facing Su Hai's piercing gaze, you calmly said, I hereby withdraw from the Su family. Everything related to the Su family has nothing to do with me. As soon as the words fell, a cold voice sounded in your ears. Ding! Congratulations to the host for achieving clarity of mind, rewarded with the ancient divine artifact, the sword of slaying immortals. You looked in astonishment at the system in your mind. Nonsense. Su Hai completely lost his temper at your words. Fine. Since you want to leave, then take everything the Su family has given you. You suddenly burst into laughter. Have you all forgotten that without me, the Su family would still be a mediocre clan? With that, your nascent soul realm peak cultivation erupted completely, and the majestic pressure directly suppressed everyone. They all looked at you in horror, memories deep in their minds gradually resurfacing. The Su family was once just a minor family in Maple City until you became the disciple of the Purple Skysword sect, which changed everything. It can be said that the Su family's rise to prominence was all thanks to you. Su Yan, what do you want to do? Release us now. The matriarch of the Su family glared at you with cold hostility. It's not too late for you to kneel down and beg for our forgiveness. Otherwise, nonsense. Before she could finish, you slapped her directly. You little rascal, how dare you? Smack. Another crisp slap resounded, swelling the matriarch's face into a pig's head. I will definitely kill you. She barely finished speaking before collapsing to the ground, a thumb-sized hole on her forehead. The young master of the Su family witnessed this and shouted, Mother, I will definitely kill you. Without even looking at him, you backhandedly slapped him, embedding him into the wall. Feeling the irresistible pressure from you, Suhai was forced to kneel on the ground. In a very indifferent tone, you spoke. I will ask once. Was your involvement in my parents' death? The sudden deaths of my parents. You wouldn't believe it was a coincidence. Suhai looked at you with embarrassment. You are outrageous. My succession to the head of the family was approved by all the elders. Looking down at the kneeling Suhai, since you won't admit it, I will find out myself. With that, you directly probed his mind, and memories from Suhai's mind appeared before you, quickly revealing information about your parents. Your expression darkened instantly, watching Suhai convulsing on the ground. It was indeed related to him, with many elders of the family involved. Turning to the Su family disciples lying on the ground, they were already petrified. My grandfather is the ancestor of the Su family. If you dare to kill one of us Su family disciples, before the words could finish, they were enveloped in a flash of swordlight. I have never opposed you. Please spare me, Su Yen. If you're upset, go kill Su Long. They did everything. In the face of the crowd's wailing, Su Yen didn't pay any attention to it and just coldly watched the Su family disciples die. During the several years of the Su family's expansion, the great expansion of power had long ago distorted all the thoughts of the Su family, a family that used to live at the bottom. After he became the overlord of this Maple City, he forcibly robbed people's women and copied their families and destroyed their clans. What was done cannot be described as an outrage, and those who truly worked for the good of the Su family have long since sacrificed themselves on the path of pioneering for the Su family. For a time, a thick smell of blood filled the entire hall. Lin Shui frowned her pretty willow eyebrows, and for the first time, a displeased look appeared on her face. However, Su Yen just coldly swept a glance and turned around to leave. Wait! A clear and cold voice sounded behind him, and Su Chen felt a powerful aura enveloping his entire body. This aura was even stronger than even Su Yen. Su Yen turned to look, and the one who released his breath was clearly the mysterious old man who had been standing behind Lin Shui, the realm of the transfigured god. Su Yen looked at the old man, and a glint flashed in his eyes. The realms of the immortal cultivation world are divided into Qi practicing, foundation building, Jindan, Yuanying, transformation of God, harmonization, Mahayana, and transition. At the God transformation stage, even within the Divine Sword Divine Sky Sword sect, it was considered an extremely high-status elder. But Su Yen didn't feel too surprised. This Lin family could be involved with the Xia royal family, and the crown princess was Lin Shui's own sister. It wasn't too much of a problem to find a divine transformation stage protector for his sister. Lin Shui raised her eyes and looked at Su Yen with an indifferent expression. When you've taken care of the Su family's affairs, my Lin family will send someone to take over the Su family, and you just need to stay at home and raise your children without fear in the future. What? Su Yen looked at Lin Shui with a confused expression. Is this woman out of her mind? You want to be the father of her child, don't you? Su Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a coldness. Why me? Lin Shui tilted her snow-white swan neck and said with a disdainful face. You don't deserve to know. Su Yen raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice. What if I refuse? Lin Shui's eyes were filled with ruthlessness and cruelty, no longer the tenderness she had before. Then you will have to be imprisoned. Having said this, Su Yen had already understood that he must have what Lin Shui needed in his possession. In that case, let's not waste time. The words fell. Terrifying sword chi burst out from Su Yan's body. An endless white light bloomed as if it was going to disperse this heaven and earth. Roar! A hissing roar rang out, and countless sword chi transformed into 100 feet large sword chi dragon. Su Yen pointed his finger, and the sword chi dragon whistled as it rushed towards the transformation god powerhouse. Chapter 3, Su Yen, you dare to conspire against the imperial prince of the Grand Xia dynasty. Sculpture. The black-robed man spoke indifferently, waving his hand as a powerful barrier appeared around him, meeting the sword chi dragon head-on. Boom! A terrifying explosion rang out violently. Yet the mystic, who was the target, was not much affected. If that's all, then you will lose. The black-robed man gently slapped out a palm, and a terrifying spiritual power instantly erupted, turning into a mountainous pressure that crushed over towards Su Yen. The white aura condensed into a huge palm print, as if it wanted to suppress Su Yen as a whole. In the face of this powerful attack, Su Yan's face did not change and his expression was indifferent. Breaking. One word falls. Monstrous sword chi burst out from Su Yan's body. The dazzling white sword chi transformed into a brilliant light, slicing the palm down the middle in just an instant. The black-robed man's face changed as he once again revolved his aura and condensed a white barrier to resist. This time, however, the instant the barrier collided with the sword chi, cracks that looked like broken glass appeared on top of the barrier. How is this possible? In the black-robed old man's surprised gaze, the barrier shattered with a bang, and the terrifying sword chi instantly impacted on his body, sending him flying out. When the sword chi dissipated, the place that had been attacked was already a mess. Footsteps sounded in the drifting dust, and the outline of a figure slowly appeared. At this time, the black-robed man had already revealed his face, and the black robe he was traversing had already shattered under the strangulation of this horrifying sword chi. Revealing an old and hideous face, the two beady eyes emitted an intense coldness, as if they wanted to devour Su Yan. Thinking of the scene just now, the old man still had palpitations in his heart. If it wasn't for the protection of the spirit weapon in his hand, which counteracted Su Yan's terrifying sword chi, it wouldn't have been as simple as just tearing the black robe just now. Obviously only at the Yuaning realm, yet you possess the battle power of the transformation god realm. Kid, you're pretty good. As he spoke, intense greed flowed from the shadowy old man's eyes. Your Excellency must not forget your position. Seems to have sensed something. Lin Shui's clear and cold voice suddenly rang out, like a bone-piercing ice knife piercing into the gloomy old man's heart. After quenching the greed that had just risen in the shadowy old man, he calmed down. The shadowy old man began to input aura into the bell in his hand. Dang! The bell shook slightly, ringing an extremely shrill bell. The intense aura converged and formed a terrifying golden shock attacking towards Su Yan. With a thought, Su Yan's hand appeared out of thin air with a silver-colored longsword. The longsword set off a terrifying wave of air as it swung. The shock released by that bell was shattered by the airwave in just the blink of an eye. The airwave was wrapped in a terrifying aura and instantly landed on the old man. Boom! The shadowy old man's eyes widened violently, and his body was like a tattered kite, instantly flying backwards. This immortal execution sword, is it the reason why it was not sacrificed? Looking at the immortal execution sword in his hand, Su Yan had some doubts in his eyes. With the prestige of this first sword formation of the Floodlands, coupled with his own powerful aura, he should have instantly secured that old man. However, Su Yan could feel that within the old man's body, there was still a not-so-weak vitality repairing his severely injured body. Warm tip: the immortal execution sword owned by the host is forbidden and needs to be refined by the host before its power can be stimulated. Hearing such a prompt from the system, Su Yan remembered that innate spiritual treasures of the level of the immortal execution sword had rules and prohibitions inside. Before it was completely refined, it was just the equivalent of a weapon that drastically enhanced aura. Whoa! Countless debris tumbled, and the shadowy old man rose from the rubble in a very sorry state. At this moment, the shadowy old man was covered in blood, and his tight clothes were destroyed by the sword chi. Just one piece of close-fitting treasure armor was left behind, and on that treasure armor was also full of cracks. At this moment, the shady old man completely lived up to his arrogance and pride from a moment ago, and his gaze towards Su Yan was filled with panic. Next to her, Lin Shui, who had always thought she could grasp everything, was also a bit shocked at this time. She was aware of the strength of the shadowy old man. He was a true middle-stage transformation god realm powerhouse. As a result, he was actually beaten like this with a sword by Su Yan, who was only at the Yuaning realm. But when she returned to her senses, Lin Shui's delicate body couldn't stop trembling again. The fact that Su Yan is so strong means that his talent is far better than before. If I can use this talent on my son, then who else in this great Xia dynasty can stop the hands? With that thought, Lin Shui immediately blurted out, "Don't delay any longer. Hurry up and strike." The shady old man took a deep breath and directly pulled out a mouthful of elixir from his storage ring and swallowed it. Next moment, a terrifying aura instantly erupted from the shadowy old man's body, his cultivation leaping from mid-transformation spirit to transformation spirit perfection. Oh boy, you are indeed strong, but now you have no chance of winning. The shadowy old man coldly looked at Su Yan with a winning look. Su Yan, however, didn't have the heart to push more with the old man, pouring his aura into the long sword in his hand, and all of a sudden, thousands of sword shadows surfaced around him. This is the Divine Sha Sword Sect's secret technique. 10,000 swords returning to the sect. Seeing the imagery floating around Su Yan, the shadowy old man's face changed greatly. There are 1 to 9 grades of secret techniques in the world, and beyond 9 grades are the legendary immortal techniques. It is said that the sword sect of the Divine Sha Sword Sect's 10,000 swords returns to the sect as the result of its founding ancestor's realization after he watched an immortal sword strike. Even though it was only one move, it was enough to compare to a 7th grade martial art. The Divine Heavenly Sword Sect's ancestor built the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect's supreme foundation with this move alone. In just over 100 years, it had allowed the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect to be ranked as one of the 3 great tripods of the great Xia imperial dynasty. Thinking that just now Su Yan had chopped himself away with a single sword strike, and now he was making use of this legendary sword art. Rather than briefly raising his cultivation to the peak of the spirit transformation realm, the shadowy old man did not dare to slack off in the slightest. Swiftly shaking the golden bell in his hand, Pitch black as ink aura spread out from the shadowy old man. In less than a moment's time, half of the space of the Great Hall was occupied by this black aura. Emerging from the aura was a black figure, like the shadow of a person coming out of their body. When these black shadows saw Su Yan, they were like hyenas seeing food and pounced over like crazy. Break! Su Yan fell with a single word. The countless white sword chi that surrounded his body instantly covered towards the area where the shadowy old man was. The sharp sword chi instantly fell into the large black shadow, and the terrifying power coursing through the black shadow quickly destroyed it. The dazzling white light collided with the darkness, and the radiant light directly enveloped the entire hall. When everything returned to calm, the area where the shadowy old man was had already been reduced to ruins. The only thing left in the spot was a golden bell, and a spatial ring that emitted a bright light. Su Yan reached out and immediately the bell and the spatial ring came into his hand. Because of the death of the shadowy old man, the soul imprint branded on top of the bell had dissipated and became ownerless. Putting the bell and the spatial ring away, Su Yan turned his head to look at the pale-colored Lin Shui in the distance. Lin Shui only felt her scalp tingling, her body's sweaty hairs erecting, a strong sense of crisis dying suddenly. Lin Shui wanted to escape, but the road was only as far as the gate. And where was Lin Shui going to escape? Looking at the continuously approaching Su Yan, Lin Shui's face gradually turned pale. Su Yan, do you know my identity? If you dare to make a move against me, the entire Su family, including you, will die without a burial place. With your Lin family? Su Yan smiled coldly. Don't worry, it won't take long for them to go down and accompany you. Seeing that Su Yan was really laying hands on herself, Lin Shui couldn't care about anything else. Su Yan, if you really dare to make a move, that would be the crime of plotting against the Dixia Emperor, and there will be no more place for you within the entire Dixia dynasty. Chapter 4, Cutting off the grass to get to the roots. Prince? Hearing Lin Shui's words, Su Yan really did stop his hand movements. Seeing this, Lin Shui was instantly relieved and then said with a condescending expression, I advise you to let me go before it's too late, or you can't afford the consequences. Su Yan raised his eyebrows and looked at Lin Shui with a surprised face. The title Imperial Son naturally represented a different status and position than the ordinary. Nowadays, the Great Xia Imperial dynasty was powerful, dominating all the states with an extremely vast territory, and the Xia Emperor has reigned for more than 300 years and has given birth to more than a dozen imperial sons. There are also quite a number of emperors with outstanding talent and extremely prestigious names. Just like nowadays, there were also 2 imperial princes within the divine heavenly sword sect, and one of them was also a contemporary sword son just like Su Yan. Looking at Lin Shui, if it was true, it was obvious that she had added another brother to these royals. It's just that this Lin Shui is only 28 years old now, while that Xia Emperor has been practicing for hundreds of years. Although it wasn't rare in this world, it looked very strange with Su Yan's modern identity. Moreover, this Lin Shui's sister was also the current crown princess. The relationship, it's worse than a ball of string. It was no wonder that this Lin Shui could have a transformation god realm escort beside her. But, Su Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, and his Yuaning realm aura erupted once again enveloping Lin Shui. Lin Shui only felt breathless, as if she was about to suffocate. No, you can't kill me. I'm a royal son in my belly, the future lord of the great summer. If you dare to kill me, my Lin family will definitely not let you go. You must. Bang! Before Lin Shui could finish her sentence, a huge force attacked her up and her head instantly exploded like a watermelon. Noisy! Looking at the headless body on the ground, Su Yan turned to leave. Just as he arrived outside the main hall, he ran face to face with dozens of Su family elders who had hurriedly arrived. Seeing Su Yan, the elder of one of them immediately questioned in a stern voice. Su Yan, what happened in the Great Hall? Why did most of my Su family disciples suddenly die? Su Tsong, the 7th elder of the Su family, secretly contacted the people of the Wang family when he was expanding his territory for the Su family back then, causing the death of my parents. Su Yan's sudden words caused the originally furious crowd around him to immediately hold back. Su Tsong's face was ugly, his eyes full of sinister. Asshole, do you know what you're talking about? Dare to slander the elder. If you don't give me a reason, you will now be punished to the back of the mountain to suffer from the black wind labor. Ha! Hearing Su Yan's light laughter, Su Tsong's face flushed red and reached out to point at Su Yan to criticize him. Suddenly, a streak of light cut through. Su Tsong's entire arm was instantly sliced off by Su Yan's sword chi. Aha! Squeals like killing pigs rang out from Su Tsong's mouth. Large beads of sweat continued to accumulate on Sakura's forehead and then dripped down his cheeks. Su Yan, what do you want to do? How dare you strike out at an elder? Another elder jumped out and roared loudly towards Su Yan. Since you want to die so badly, I'll fulfill you. Su Yan coldly swept a glance at the elder who spoke. The terrifying sword chi instantly swept it away, leaving only a spatial ring in its place. Seeing this scene, all the Su family elders were completely silent, looking at a few figures in the crowd. Su Yan opened his mouth and said word for word, Su Tian, Su Yuan, Su Ling, Su Hua. The elders who were named by Su Yan exhaustively had their bodies trembling and their shoulders could not stop shaking. All of you, more or less, were involved in my parents' deaths. The words fell. Monstrous sword chi, falling from the sky, penetrated everyone in the blink of an eye. A few breaths later, there were only a dozen or so elders left in the field still standing. Su Yan, do you know what you're doing? You are trying to destroy my Su family. If you hurry up and tie your hands now, you might even be spared. That's right, if you're still arrogant, when the old ancestor strikes, he will capture you and lock you up in a water prison for eternity. Bang! In the next moment, the sound of fireworks exploding suddenly rang out from the crowd, and a cloud of blood spray splattered on the ground. A whole breath later, the surroundings were a mess, with only the red-stained ground remaining. What brain circuits! You've spared your life and you're still messing with me. The reason why Su Yan didn't kill the remaining dozen or so elders, that's because there was no information about them in Su Ai's mind. It means they are not involved. But I didn't realize these people were so brain-dead. Su Yan shook his head and his figure instantly disappeared in place. The next one to tackle is the one that really matters. The back of the Su family's mountain. A barrier that rose up from the ground enveloped the entire cliff, and the rich aura gathered in the center, already showing signs of condensing into a liquid. Su Yan extended his hand and pointed a finger on that barrier. In the next moment, the entire barrier emitted a crisp ringing sound, and countless cracks gradually climbed up, breaking open in the blink of an eye. Su Yan took a step forward and stepped into the cliff shrouded in aura. It seems that you already know everything. Coming to the top of the cliff, an old man figure with his back turned appeared in front of Su Yan. This person was the Su family's old ancestor, Su Yan's grandfather. The original has always been skeptical about the death of his parents, but it was the grandfather in front of him that really affected the original body. Because of his absolute trust in him, the original body was not able to find out the whole truth, and he is the one who was responsible for the death of Su's parents. Su Yan's father was serving as the head of the family at that time, although he was expanding the family's power with the help of the identity of the son of the sword in Su Shenxiao's sword, but because of its conservative nature, it is reluctant to take too many steps at once. It led to being disliked by the clansmen who were mainlining the war, using Su's father as a stumbling block to the family's expansion. He orchestrates a series of events as a result. Now, what should you decide? The old man slowly turned around, a pair of eyes radiating a shimmering light underneath his pale face. The old man's eyes were not cloudy, but instead emitted light, as if they contained the sun, moon and stars. Revenge with a vengeance, complain with a grudge. To the current Su Yan, the old man in front of him was a stranger. To a stranger, Su Yan felt that he had said so much was enough. Alas, when it really is karma. The next day, sign in for the second day and get the 9 heavenly swords technique, the first chapter. Inside and in somewhere. Su Yan woke up from his meditation and immediately froze when he saw the sword skill floating in front of him. Rumor has it that the 10,000 swords were created by the old ancestor after he watched the immortal sword techniques, and that immortal sword technique is the 9 heavenly sword technique. So, this 9 heavenly sword decision was an immortal art, but looking at the system's hints, the sword skill was not complete. However, there's no time to go over the sword trick now. Since it was an immortal art, it was bound to be obscure and difficult to understand, and it would be hard to get results in a short period of time. Su Yan got up and pushed open the window and looked down, only to see a huge mansion as far as the eye could see. That the portal was already wide open, chopping the grass to get rid of the roots. Lin family, I'm coming. Chapter 5, The Lin family's marriage. Cool city. As the sky brightened slightly, the Lin family opened their doors to welcome in guests. Whether it was an immortal practicing spells, a wealthy local merchant, or a commoner, all could enter the Lin mansion after receiving permission. Within the mansion, many maids were running around, appearing to be in a hurry. The entire Lin mansion was all decked out in lights and colors, as if it was going to be a big feast. A sheet of Fu and Joy characters cut from red paper is posted all over the house. All sorts of joyous feast items were placed throughout the entire Lin mansion. What is this situation? Looking at the Lin family, this looks like someone crystallized. But why have I never heard of it? We didn't know either. Even the news of this marriage was only known today. That's right. I also got the news and rushed here. I didn't even prepare a gift. But it's not quite normal for the Lin family to tie the knot. So why did even those guys come in? A group of rich merchants gathered to discuss with each other, their gazes looking from time to time at another group of people in the distance, their eyes filled with contempt. And those are ordinary situations within this cool city. Being in the company of them, these rich merchants felt that their status was pulled down. but they didn't dare to make a move to expel them. After all, this was the Lin family's wedding banquet. What's the point of them going up there and interfering when they'd been allowed to do so? Isn't that a slap in the face? Not to mention, they had seen quite a few immortals practicing arts and crafts enter the Lin family's inner courtyard. At this time, Su Yan's figure also appeared in the Lin family. The guard beside him looked at Su Yan's aura that was different from that of mortals and hesitantly went forward to inquire. I wonder what your name is. Where are you from? The guards did not detect any fluctuation of aura around Su Yan. However, Su Yan gave him a very dangerous feeling, as if he could easily take his own life. Su Yan skimmed the guards and said, Qing Yun sect. So your excellency is a cultivator. Disrespect. Receiving Su Yan's affirmation, the guard also unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, My master has already equipped a banquet in the backyard, so immortals can move there. Led by the guards, Su Yan quickly arrived at the Lin family's inner courtyard, and those who could appear here were all cultivators. Su Yan even sensed the aura of several Yuaning realms. With such a big show, doesn't this family know that Lin Shui is dead? Su Yan was all ready to go on a killing spree, but it turned out that looking at the Lin family, seemingly unaware of the fact that Lin Shui had died, she was still preparing for the marriage. Su Yan was a bit surprised. Does this huge Lin mansion not even have a soul guardian hall? All clans with a little bit of ability will build a soul temple, so that if something happens to their clansmen, they can be the first to know. Thinking for a moment, Su Yan didn't care too much. Since you want to have a big wedding banquet, we will do as you wish and offer a generous gift at that time. And Su Yan's arrival also attracted the attention of many cultivators. Soon there was a young man walking towards where Su Yan was. My name is Yi Fan, a disciple of Spirit Void Mountain. I wonder where your teacher comes from. Qing Yun sect. Su Yan. So it's a fellow Daoist from the Green Cloud sect. Disrespectful. Yi Fan's eyes lit up and his tone became eager. The Qing Yun sect is a superior sect. I didn't expect this Lin family to even invite a fellow Daoist. Su Yan nodded gently and had no intention of trying to strike up a conversation with Yi Fan. However, Yi Fan was the one who kept pulling some nonsense beside Su Yan. Doyle. Su Yan suddenly spoke out, interrupting Yi Fan. I have some business to attend to, so I'll take my leave. Words bar. Su Yan's figure instantly disappeared in place. Seeing this situation, Yi Fan's eyes showed some regret. It's a pity that such a great Qi master didn't get hitched. Yi Fan mastered a unique art of being able to see the faint Qi luck in others, and the Qi around Su Yan was the strongest person Yi Fan had ever seen. This is what makes it urgent to rise the mind of friendship, but unfortunately, it is a mistake. As time passed, all the arrangements made by the Lin family were gradually completed, and about the two sides of the marriage tie, it also quickly circulated through Elder Lin's words. It was none other than Lin Shui, the daughter of the Lin family, and Su Yan of the Feng City Su family. The moment Su Yan's name came out, it immediately drew wild looks of adoration from the crowd. Su Yan could be said to be a legend in the surrounding cities. Su Yan's heavenly beauty was outstanding. He had joined the divine heavenly sword sect at a young age, and now he was the contemporary sword son. And the Su family also relied on his assistance to leap into the hegemony of Maple City. Such treatment had to make the surrounding clans blush. After all, the divine skyscraper sword sect that was one of the only 3 top sects in the entire Great Xia dynasty. Any random disciple that came out could easily crush their clans. How could they not be envied? Moreover, as long as Su Yan was able to continue to improve his own strength, then the power of the Su family could be further expanded. And now that the Lin family was able to tie the knot with the Su family, it was naturally enviable. Together with the Lin family and the identity of the royal relatives, the double superimposed down, this Lin family had already become the top power of dozens of surrounding cities, and no one dared to mess with it. The Lin family naturally felt the same way, and when the Lin family head appeared in front of the crowd, his mouth never closed. Just as the crowd was pushing and rubbing each other, a clear hissing sound suddenly came from the sky. One could only see a green-colored shin bird flapping its wings and hovering high above the Lin family, slowly lowering its body. It's a spirit bird from the Great Summer Dynasty, with an emissary from the Elephant Dynasty descending. This person is still really blessed. Even Xia has personally sent someone there. Yeah, I just don't know which one is coming. The crowd watched with burning eyes as the basilisk slowly descended. When they saw the 2 people on the Xian bird's back, the crowd was stunned. One person on the right, a woman in a green dress, wearing jewelry that highlighted an extraordinary status. A terrifying Jindan aura erupted from its body, causing some of the people to feel the pressure. And beside him was a young general in silver armor. Viewing the aura it spread out, it had already reached the Yuanying realm. When the crowd saw this, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cool air. Within the boundaries surrounding this cool city, the Jindan realm was already a top powerhouse, and the arrival of a Yuanying was undoubtedly a descending blow. Although there were many people gathered there, if they were to really fight, they were afraid that they wouldn't even be able to receive a single move from the Yuaning realm. I wonder who the two of you are. After seeing that it wasn't the target he was expecting, some disappointment also showed in the eyes of the Lin family's head. In his unimpeded thoughts, Lin Shui tying the knot was considered a great joy for the Lin family. Her sister as the crown princess should also make a trip, which would not only highlight the prestige of the Lin family, but also bring many benefits to the Lin family. The green-shirt woman smiled gently and spoke. My name is Qingju. I came to deliver the gift on behalf of the crown princess. This is Commander Jiang, sent by His Highness the Crown Prince. At those words, the Lin family head's face eased up quite a bit, but Qingju's next words were like a heavy bomb. This time it should have been the crown princess herself who came, but very coincidentally, the crown princess checked out her pregnancy the day before yesterday and didn't rely on coming to walk around. The crown princess checked for pregnancy. The Lin family lord's eyes widened, his eyes filled with fervor. The crown princess was from their Lin family. And now that she was pregnant, that would be the present-day Daxia royal grandson. The position within the Daxia royal family would become even stronger, and if the crown prince took the throne in another day, then she would be the empress. Thinking of this, the Lin family head's face became unusually fervent and hurriedly welcomed the two inside. While arranging the crowd, he also quickly called for a message to be sent to Lin Shui, telling them to hurry back. How can you delay such a heavenly joy? At the same time, Su Yan appeared in the backyard of someone's house, his pitch-black eyes glowing with a spiritual light, constantly searching for that bizarre scent in the air. Chapter 6, Demon Cultivation Family. Lin family, imprisoned Dao body girl. Just half an hour ago, after separating from Yifan, Su Yan then loitered up in the Lin family, waiting for the Lin family to reach its most climactic moment. But while wandering around, there were many shadowy ghostly sobs gathered within the backyard of your house, which even carried a strong fluctuation of blood qi. And this tends to occur only in demonic cultivators. The fact that there was actually such a thing within the Lin family could only mean one thing. Either the Lin family had a demonic cave, or there were demonic cultivators of notable strength living there. TSK, tisk. Knowing that I'm coming to destroy the door, I actually even thought of a good reason for me. It's really hard for you guys. Devil cultivators are cruel and bloodthirsty, and everyone should be punished. Again, there was a family-type existence that harbored demonic cultivators, so naturally, he had to be beheaded along with him. Su Yan was previously thinking that there were so many people here today, and he was afraid that it wouldn't be good if he killed them all. Nowadays, it seems that it is possible to do so without having to cover it up. Following the fluctuations of the scent overflowing in the air, Su Yan quickly found the most dense place. It was under a wigwam in the Lin family's backyard. Su Yan mobilized his aura to wrap his entire body. Palm prints phantomed in his hands, and he instantly disappeared in place using the transportation technique. After traversing through the layers of obstacles, Su Yan quickly arrived at an empty underground cavern. Here, the dense demonic aura was still about to coalesce into substance. Su Yan mobilized his aura to wrap his entire body to inhibit the erosion of the demonic aura, then explored the surroundings. On both sides of this underground cavern, a cage made of cold iron was placed, but there was no sign of creatures existing inside. On the contrary, there were many items such as ankle cuffs and handcuffs made of cold iron placed on the ground. There were even chunks of blood that had congealed and become black, spraying everywhere. Su Yan continued to go deeper towards the inside, and after searching for some time, a faint aura appeared in Su Yan's perception. Buzz. Suddenly, a strange fluctuation came from within Su Yan's body. Why is this favor trembling so much? Could it be that there is something in front of him that attracts him? Su Yan was born with a sword bone and belonged to a true sword Dao genius, and this sword bone is considered to be at the top of the list of all cultivators' talents throughout the ages. But now that there was actually something that could attract him, it was bound to be no mortal object either. Su Yan immediately accelerated his movement speed and flew in the direction of the sword bone's perception. Not long after, a dense blood light surfaced in front of his eyes, and a huge blood pool appeared in front of Su Yan. And in the center of the blood pool, there was a larger iron cage. In the cage, a young girl is bound in chains so that she is suspended in midair. Getting closer to this young girl, Su Yan felt the sword bones in his body tremble more and more. Su Yan covered his aura around him and made sure that there were no formations in the way. Immediately, he swung his sword to kill the immortal sword, instantly breaking that iron cage into pieces. Losing the restraint of the chain, the young girl also fell down towards the pool as if she were a duckweed. Su Yan gently reached out a soft aura, wrapping the young girl's entire body, bringing her to Su Yan's side. The moment he approached the young girl, Su Ran felt his mind clear for a while, and the gungfu he had practiced for a long time also gained a deeper insight at that moment. Yuan Ling Dao body. Looking at the weak young girl in his arms with tightly closed eyes and a pale face, Su Yan blurted out. It was a very special physique that would emit a unique Dao rhythm. When regular people practiced around the Yuan Ling Dao body, they were able to drastically increase their understanding of the path of immortal cultivation, as well as their own speed of spiritual cultivation. It can be described as a superb supporting physique. If this kind of existence appeared in the sect, it would inevitably lead to some intense looting. The only flaw of this Dao body was that it was only useful to cultivators below the harmonization realm. This was because the harmonization realm cultivators had already stepped out of their own Dao and did not need to resort to the Yuan Ling Dao body anymore. Since she's being held here, there should be a presence of people nearby. Thinking of this, Su Yan immediately probed his spiritual energy towards the depths of that snow pool. Sure enough, after diving down 400 meters into the area, Su Yan sensed a dense demonic aura. Die! The strong aura transformed into a sharp sword and flew towards the demonic cultivator with a bang. The demonic cultivator perched in the deepest part of the pool also violently opened his eyes at this moment. Looking at the sharp swords that kept flying above, his eyes were filled with panic. Elders, spare your life. Bang! Along with the continuous gushing of the blood pool water, that devil cultivator also completely died in the depths of the blood pool. After doing everything, Su Yan quickly took the young girl away and did not stay here any longer. With such a place existing underneath the Lin family, it must have reached a consensus with that demonic cultivator. Devil cultivation required a large amount of blood energy, and the water within that blood pool was pure human blood. It should all be from that demonic cultivator, or the Lin family helping him to get it. Returning to the Lin family above, Su Yan quickly left and put the young girl in her room at the inn. After arranging a customization around its circumference, Su Yan normally left the young girl as just a mortal. Even if she awakens, she will not be able to open these prohibitions. And just after Su Yan left, the young girl lying on the bed couldn't help but move her fingers. At this moment in the Lin family, all the guests had already taken their seats, all waiting for the main character of this wedding banquet to arrive. However, after waiting for several hours, there was still not the slightest movement. Lin Songhai waved his hand to beckon the guards beside him with some displeasure. What the hell is going on? It's not coming until now. The guards were immediately frightened and lowered their heads. The person who sent the message said that there's still not the slightest information coming back from the Miss side, so we may still need to wait. More waiting? How much longer do we have to wait? Wait until the auspicious time is all over and wait until tomorrow for them to come back, is that it? Listening to Lin Songhai's rant, the guards didn't dare to talk at all. At this time the surrounding guests also found the difference. Just in the way of the presence of the two Qingzhu did not dare to voice inquiries. Another hour passed. Yi Fan touched his rumbling stomach, still sort of didn't hold back from getting up and said, Lin Songhai, I wonder why the two who are tying the knot today have not yet arrived. At this moment, Lin Songhai's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. Looking at another young man who suddenly spoke, he immediately looked displeased and said, Who are you? Do I have to report to you when my Lin family does something? Lin Songhai's nonchalant words also caused Yi Fan to lose his temper. Lin Songhai, I am Yi Fan, a personal disciple of the Spirit Market Mountain, and I have been waiting for several hours from early morning until my death. As a result, up to now, the person who linked the relatives have not seen. Just sitting here. You really do not give us an explanation? Lin Songhai's face was unsightly, and his eyes unconsciously looked at the two Qingzhu beside him. The Spirit Void Mountain was a superior sect, more than enough to deal with a Lin family. Yi Fan was a teenage genius as a spiritual void sect's own heir, and his cultivation was also at the Jiedan realm. If Lin Songhai himself had given the word, he really wouldn't have been able to suppress it. However, facing Lin Songhai's gaze, the two of them seemed as if they hadn't noticed it, and just drank the tea in their hands as if they were minding their own business. Just as Lin Songhai looked extremely embarrassed, a Lin family elder hurriedly came from outside. Something big has happened to the family head. Miss Lin Shui has been killed. Chapter 7, The Purple Sun Divine Sect, the Night Stargazer and the Lord of Daxia. Hearing that elder's words, Lin Songhai immediately slapped him. Asshole, how dare you curse my daughter to death? The elder who had just run in was directly slapped out by Lin Songhai. That Lin family elder ignored his injuries and immediately rolled and crawled over from the ground. Family master, it's true. A message from that person just came in saying that the person who was guarding the young lady is dead. Saying that elder handed the jade in his hand to Lin Songhai. Lin Songhai half-heartedly took the jade and then injected aura into it. In the next moment, Lin Songhai's face turned pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. There were only 3 pieces of information revealed inside the jade. That the harmonized god realm guarding Lin Shui had been killed, and the Su family had been exterminated, and the person who did it was Su Yan. How the Su family was, it didn't matter to Lin Songhai, but Lin Shui was her own daughter, the cornerstone for her to go further. After receiving such a blow, Lin Songhai's eyes became red. His hair fluttered all over his body, and a devilish aura vaguely lingered around him. Family master. What should we do now? The elder's anxious words brought back Lin Sunhai's thoughts. The vaguely emerging demonic aura also returned to Lin Sunhai's body. At this moment, Lin Sunhai's face was grim, his eyes revealing a dense killing intent. Announce the news inside, and go all out to arrest Su Yan, the traitor of the Su family. The elder nodded, then took a look at those guests behind him and directly dropped the contents of the jade in his hand, only to erase the matter of the transformation spirit cultivator's death in the Su clan. What? The Su family has been exterminated. Or did Su Yan do it? How is this possible? Su Yan is a member of the Su family. How could he do such a thing? I feel afraid that there is something fishy going on. I feel the same way. Su Yan is the contemporary sword son of the divine heavenly sword sect. How could he possibly do these self-destructive things? It doesn't make sense at all. I'm afraid there's some kind of mistake in it. I still hope that the Lin family head will investigate clearly and not jump to conclusions. Listening to the murmurs of the surrounding guests, the elder spoke in an indifferent tone. Gentlemen, don't you want to know who gave this news to our Lin family? Could it be that this man is a great man? Looking at the elder's certainty, suspicions gradually appeared in some people's hearts. The information within this jade was personally transmitted by Elder Qin Guanqing of the Violet Sun Divine Sect. Do you all think that Elder Qin also miscalculated? Upon hearing the three words Qin Guanqing, the surrounding people immediately widened their eyes. There were three top sects in the Great Xia Imperial Dynasty: the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect, the Violet Sun Divine Sect, and the 10,000 Laws Divine Sect. The strength of the three great sects were all in between, but with the Divine Sha Sword Sect's ancestor traveling far away over the years, the overall strength was still a bit weakened. However, as a sword cultivation sect, the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect's disciples were still very powerful in battle. As for the other two clans, they also had their own merits. However, the one with the greatest fame was still the Violet Sun Divine Sect, within which Elder Qin Guanqing of Stargazer Peak was in existence, whose reputation crushed the patriarch. The ultimate reason for this was his very heaven-defying skill of shutting down the stars. There was a rumor that 300 years ago, the Great Xia dynasty should not have been succeeded by the present Xia Emperor, and it was this Elder Qin Stargazer who changed the fate of the Xia Emperor with the art of stargazing, which allowed him to ascend to the Xia Emperor's throne. Over the years, there had also been occasional occurrences of the Summer Emperor personally traveling to the Violet Sun Divine Sect to personally visit Qin Guanqing circulating. Suffice it to say, this is a very legendary figure, and what he says must be 100% true in the eyes of the crowd. As expected, the many guests who had just been deploring this matter immediately began to verbally attack Su Yan. I didn't expect there to be such a wolf-hearted fellow. The Su family raised him for so many years, and he actually wiped out the entire Su family. For this kind of person to be called the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect's Sword Son, he simply deserves to be struck by heavenly lightning and not be allowed to die. Yes, Miss Lin Shui also suffered an undeserved disaster. He originally intended to take Su Yan, but did not expect to be killed by Su Yan. Death in is heavenly. At that moment, a voice of righteous indignation suddenly rang out in the crowd. That's right. How does this kind of person deserve to live in the world? As I see it, why don't we all make a move together to capture this son and return the Su family to a place of clarity? At these words, the scene fell silent. Those guys who had just threatened to give Su Yan a good look also silently closed their mouths. It's okay to let them move their mouths, but to go straight up and do it, isn't that looking for death? Su Yan was gifted, and he was also the contemporary sword son, so his strength must be very powerful. Plus there was the Violet Sky Sword Sect behind him as a backer. If they went and angered Su Yan, the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect would only need to wave their hands, and there would be plenty of people to tell them to devour them. Looking at the scene where a needle could not be heard, Lin Sunhai couldn't help but curse waste behind his back. Lin Sunhai then took a step, came to the front of the stage, and said loudly, "Gentlemen, today's matter should not have implicated you, but have you ever wondered why Elder Qin gave this information to my Lin family?" Listening to Lin Sunhai's words, the crowd's eyes showed curiosity. Could it be that there were certain things they didn't know about? Lin Sunhai fixed his mind and said with a proud face, "My Lin family has now joined the Violet Sun Divine Sect, and my son Lin Feng is even a personal descendant of Senior Qin, the details of which I'm sure you're all aware of, right?" As Lin Sunhai's words fell, the faces of the guests in the crowd gradually turned rosy, and each of them brought on a look of excitement. The corners of Lin Sunhai's mouth curled into a smile as he continued to speak. "All of you have seen the message left by Senior Qin on this jade, and are considered a witness. I, Lin Sunhai, implore all of you to capture Su Yan with me, but there will be heavy thanks after this is accomplished, and if the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect punishes down, it will be borne by my Su family." Lin Sunhai spoke forcefully and emotionally. Immediately, it drove the surrounding cultivators. "Gentlemen, In my opinion, this Yen has already entered the devil by destroying his own family, and we are helping the Lin family master to fight, in order to get rid of the devil and defend the way. A Yuaning realm powerhouse immediately came to the front of the crowd and said loudly. With the Yuaning realm taking the lead, the rest of the people began to respond to the call, one by one stepping forward ready to help the Lin family. TSK, TSK, TISK. The speech was really good. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have thought that the Lin family master had such abilities. A teasing voice sounded from above the heads of the crowd, who quickly looked up, only to see a young man wearing white clothes appeared in the sky above the Lin family. His white clothes fluttered without a trace of dust. His temperament was out of this world, standing there like an exiled immortal on earth. Seeing the arrival of the young man, Yi Fan in the crowd was dumbfounded. Suyin? Su Yen? Asterisk 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 asterisk. This guy can't be that Su Yen, right? Yi Fan's face was embarrassed, feeling as if he knew something unimaginable. Less a glance at the people around him, Yi Fan silently took a step and began to prepare to run. Yi Fan had seen how huge Su Yan's chi was. With these people making a move, Yi Fan really didn't think they could deal with Su Yen. Chapter 8, Backfiring on Oneself. No one can defend oneself. Brat, who are you? How dare you be so arrogant? Among the crowd, looking at Su Yan's arrival, one of the cultivators immediately chided angrily. Su Yan just stood above the heads of the crowd in such a dignified manner, which was tantamount to a provocation in the eyes of the crowd. The key Su Yan was extremely young, which made it even more unpleasant. Kid, get your ass down here. That person was obviously extremely short-tempered, and without waiting for Su Yan to speak, he directly operated his aura to slap out a palm towards Su Yan. Extremely terrifying power erupted, highlighting this person's identity as a Jindan realm cultivator. However, looking at that weak attack, Su Yan only felt a burst of amusement. A finger was pointed out, and that huge palm print instantly shattered. The terrifying aura formed an impact that directly smashed down the stunned powerhouse that struck out. Under the attention of the surrounding people, the Jindan realm cultivator who was enough to dominate on one side, it instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist and disappeared into the heavens and earth. What? Feeling Su Yan's powerful strength, the surrounding people immediately froze, having unbelievably looked up at Su Yan. To be able to kill a Jindan realist so easily in seconds, the strength of the person in front of him must have already reached the Yuan-ing realm. Now the people who had previously had complaints didn't dare to speak. Lin Songhai, however, took a step forward at this moment, releasing a powerful aura that was no weaker than that of the Yuan-ing realm. This friend, if you're here to cause trouble today, my Lin family isn't afraid, but please don't take it out on these innocent friends. The corner of Su Yan's mouth hooked up a smile, and he said with a somewhat playful tone, "Didn't you guys just try to whip me into shape? Why am I afraid to move now that I'm here?" Instead, upon hearing Tracy's words, the crowd immediately stared over in disbelief. "You are a traitor of the Su family." Su Yan. Lin Songhai gritted his teeth and said, his pair of man-thirsty eyes itching to swallow Su Yan on the spot. "Congratulations for guessing correctly. I am Su Yan. Well, I didn't think that if we didn't go looking for you, you'd send yourself to the door instead, simply looking for death." Lin Songhai turned his head to look at the people around him and said loudly, "Gentlemen, this devil dares to show himself. Please join me in subduing the devil. Even though he is a Yuan-ing, we have one here." As Lin Songhai's words fell, several Yuan-ing realm cultivators quickly rushed out from the crowd and surrounded Su Yan in the center. I didn't expect that it was actually such a heavenly pride that died in our hands. It's still really a pity, since a demonic cultivator has broken away from the righteous path. It's not worth dying for. Stop dawdling and just strike. The others instantly struck out, using their respective magic treasure spirit techniques to launch attacks towards Su Yan. Looking at the attacks that came from the sky, Su Yan, however, did not even change his face. "I've killed even those in the realm of transformation. Do you think you can make waves with you Yuaning?" Su Yan turned his hand into a sword and slashed out. In an instant, terrifying white sword chi blossomed out, transforming into a monstrous dragon that shattered all the attacks in just an instant. The giant dragon of sword chi hissed up to the sky and let out an angry sound, then charged towards the several Yuaning realm cultivators. Several people were swallowed by the sword chi dragon before they could even react. When the scene in front of him returned to calm, all 5 Yuaning had already died in battle. How is this possible? Seeing this scene, Lin Songhai's face changed drastically. This is 5 Yuaning, not 5 refined chi. Surprisingly, he couldn't walk more than a single move in the hands of Su Yan, who was also at the Yuaning realm. Have you forgotten, householder? This Su Yan even beheaded that god transformation cultivators. Dealing with these 5 Yuaning realm cultivators isn't too difficult. Beside him, that Lin family elder couldn't stop his legs from trembling. and his tone was filled with panic. After killing 5 Yuaning with a single sword strike, Su Yan looked down at the crowd below who had already long been confused. Su Yan, don't be arrogant. Even if you're invincible within the Yuaning territory, it's hard to believe that you can still be stronger than the Violet Sun Divine Sect. Looking at the person who spoke, Su Yan pointed out with a finger. A flash of sword chi arrived instantly and directly penetrated its forehead. How dare you? Su Yan, do you know who he is? He's under the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect. Phew! Bang! After consecutively killing 2 people, Su Yan turned his head to look at the others again. Anyone else have something to say? Su Yan had thought that he had killed enough. I didn't realize that people who weren't afraid of death existed in there. Su Yan, you have become a demon. If you don't stop, the 3 clans will descend in the future and work together to kill you. Su Yan waved his hand indifferently. You couldn't see it then anyway. As the words fell, a strand of Su Yan's sword chi exploded out, directly churning that person into pieces. Su Yan then pointed out again, and people in the crowd were continuously killed by the terrifying sword chi. Those who were locked by the sword chi could hardly escape death no matter how they escaped. In the end, they all completely dissipated between heaven and earth. In less than a few breaths of time, only half the number of people were left in the venue where hundreds of people had gathered. Seeing this bloody scene finally shocked those present. No one dared to speak up at all this time. Each and every one of them looked at Su Yan with great fear. That's more like it. Su Yan nodded with satisfaction. I'm at the Yuaning realm, and there would actually still be a Yuaning below provoking me. Wouldn't that be properly looking for death? And you guys, this is a case of believing whatever people say, with no awareness of being a cultivator at all. After decades of cultivating immortality, it's practically cultivated into a dog's stomach. This scene of Su Yan's admonishment was as comical as it could be. A kind of person who has been practicing for more than 10 years, or even decades. At this point it was like an elementary school student listening to his own teacher, not daring to say much at all, fearing that the teacher would reward a strand of sword chi if he wasn't pleased. If there were outsiders here, I'm afraid that they wouldn't think that Su Yan was a Mahayana cultivator. After speaking for quite a while, Su Yan was feeling like his mouth was a bit dry. Su Yan reached out and a wine bottle appeared in his hand. After taking a sip of spirit wine to moisten his throat, Su Yan then continued, well, I'm not a murderous person either, so it's good to have everything spelled out. The crowd looked at Su Yan, who was talking eloquently above, and a slander was cast in their hearts. You still say you're not a murderer? Didn't you kill all these people? TSK, TSK, TSK. Looking at the disbelieving gazes of the people around him, Su Yan's eyes were filled with pity. What a bunch of idiots. Better let me clean your brains. Su Yan raised his eyes to the Lin family's backyard and directly released a powerful aura in his hand. Seeing Su Yan's movements, Lin Songhai secretly said that it was not good, and his body unconsciously began to tremble. Lin Songhai was aware of what was hidden there, and looking at Su Yan, he already knew the situation. With Su Yan's strength today, even Lin Songhai, with his entire family together, was no match. Lin Songhai only felt a wave of despair inside. As the terrifying sword chi landed in the Lin family's backyard, the barrier shrouding it shattered. As the sword chi continued to go deeper and deeper into the ground, it didn't take long for a large pit to appear in the backyard, followed by majestic demonic chi gushing out from the pit. The entire sky was immediately infected with a layer of black. This is a demonic aura. The Lin family is actually harboring demonic cultivators within their own clan. So that's how it is. I get it. Today the Lin family is trying to wipe out all of us. That's why they made up all this stuff. You fart. Seeing the person who thought he had analyzed correctly, Lin Songhai immediately shot out with anger, directly slapping his palm towards him. The palm force of the Yuaning realm was naturally not something an ordinary cultivator could resist. Those who were around it were heavily injured along with them. The man spat out blood as he was hit, and immediately roared in anger. Gentlemen, my guess was right. This Lin family does have a premeditated plan, and now they're already trying to kill and exterminate each other. UING. Looking at the questioning gazes thrown over by the people around him, Lin Songhai scrambled to explain. Everyone, I don't know why there is a demonic aura present underneath my Lin mansion. I will report this matter to the Violet Sun Divine Sect. If you are unfortunate enough to be here to supervise, and Su Yan he killed the Su family is an indisputable fact. If you do not believe it, you can let people to go to the Su family to investigate, and will certainly be the same as what I said. Oh, the way you say this, Lin family master. Isn't it possible that your Lin family sent someone to destroy my Su family and subsequently framed me for the crime? Hearing Su Yan's words, Lin Songhai immediately cursed back. Chapter 9, The End of the Lin Family. Su Yan, if you are really here to avenge the Su family today, why don't you just do it but also speak so much here? After all is said and done, It's nothing more than trying to use this sudden appearance of demonic chi to defame my Lin family. I'll never let you get away with this. Lin Sunhai looked at the others again and said with a sincere face, "Gentlemen, if my Lin family has really come into contact with this demonic aura, even if it's just a slight trace, you can all see it. Can you all see the demonic aura that I'm carrying on my body?" Once Lin Sunhai made these words, the crowd was instantly in deep thought. Lin Sunhai really didn't carry a demonic aura. Even the aura he released just now was no different from a normal person. Then why did you suddenly attack me just now, trying to put me to death? Watching that man climb up from the ground again, Lin Sunhai was simply so angry that he could spit out blood. Lin Sunhai forced the anger in his heart to rage and opened his mouth to explain. "Fellow Daoist Su, I was just messing around in the heat of the moment. After all, there are more than 10,000 old and young people in my Lin family. But if I die here in this place because of this plain slander, then if it were to be spread outside, wouldn't it be a disgrace to all of you?" Hearing Lin Sunhai's explanation, although Sui was a bit upset, he really didn't find a point that he could refute. When Lin Sunhai saw that the people around him were silent, he then pointed his spear at Su Yen again. "On the contrary, it's you, Su Yen. Won't you explain where this demonic aura actually comes from? Why are you slandering my neighboring family?" Hearing Lin Sunhai's words, Su Yen sighed. "These are so hard to teach that just after I finish with you, you forget again." The moment the words fell, Su Yen directly slapped his face. Snap! Lin Sunhai was immediately knocked out and smashed down on the wall pillar with a mouthful of blood. "I was present at the peak of Yuaning, and you're actually asking me to explain it to you? Since you're so brainless, I'll give you another one." Su Yen pointed out with one finger, and thousands of sword chi bloomed out. Before Lin Sunhai had time to react, he was engulfed by the sword energy. When the surroundings returned to calm, Lin Sunhai had completely died out in the world. Instead, at the place where Lin Sunhai died, a ball of pure black demonic chi suddenly appeared. Su Yan once again pointed out a finger, and a strand of sword went to stab into it, which stirred it completely. And seeing the appearance of the demonic chi, the surrounding people looked surprised and completely believed what Su Yan had said. The destruction of the Su family was all due to the Lin family's efforts to practice magic. I didn't realize that this Lin Sunhai was actually a hidden demonic cultivator. It really deserves to be killed. Thanks to swordsman Su Yan. Otherwise we'd all still have to be hoodwinked by the Lin family. Yes, Mr. Su is worthy of being the sword son of the Violet Sky Divine sect. He really is as discerning as he is. Listening to the words of the people around him, Su Yan did not have the slightest expression on his face. Looking down at the complimentary crowd below, he smiled faintly. "I still like how untamed you guys were just now. Everyone, since this Lin Sunhai is a devil cultivator and there is still a devil cave underneath the Lin family. In Mr. Su's opinion, this Lin family is afraid that they have long since defected to the devil path," Su Yan said slowly. The crowd heard the words and didn't understand. A cultivator looked at the Lin family disciple beside him and directly slashed up. "Say, who else in your Lin family is a demonic cultivator?" The terrifying blade chi fell, not giving the man a chance to speak at all, and he was directly beheaded on the spot. The cultivator then said righteously, "Sir Su, this person refuses to give an account of everything. I suggest searching the entire Lin family to make sure that no demonic cultivators will escape." The surrounding cultivators were stunned at the sight. "Cowhide." Su Yan looked at the cultivator in surprise and nodded in satisfaction. "Then I'll leave the rest to you. I will live up to your honor." After saying that, the crowd immediately began to carry out the massacre. Su Yan also turned around and prepared to leave, and on his way out, he did look more at those two comers from the Great Summer Imperial Dynasty. The two of them were heck of a lot more in the kill. Su Yan shook his head and directly left. As for the demonic cave that was left behind, it was better to leave it to the purple sect Yangshan sect. Demonic chi is very difficult to handle and extremely consuming of spiritual energy. Su Yan didn't want to do these thankless things. Moreover, Su Yan hadn't forgotten that the information Lin Sunhai had gotten was given by the elders of the Violet Sun Divine sect. After Su Yan left, Qing Zhu and the young general looked at each other and quickly left on the Xian bird. I didn't expect the Su Yan to have such strength. Killing 5 Yuaning mirror powerhouses in a single strike is an extremely terrifying opponent. Listening to the young general's words, Qing Zhu also nodded. "And with him doing it, the matter will be none of our business, and we'll save ourselves the trouble." By the time Su Yan returned to the room, the severely injured young girl had not yet woken up. Su Yan didn't bother and probed the young girl's physical condition. After determining that there wasn't much of a problem, he placed another healing elixir into the head of his mouth. Su Yan then took out the 9 heavenly sword decree that he had earned from signing in today. Sitting next to him, he began to flip through the pages with the help of the girl's Yuan Lingdao body's ability. Su Yan's talent was indeed good, but there was still a considerable amount of pressure in trying to comprehend the immortal skill. After all, this was a sword technique styled by an immortal who had surpassed a transitional cultivator. Just the realm alone had thrown off Su Yan by several levels. The sound of flipping books kept ringing through the room. The sleeping young girl seemed to have seen something horrible, and her pretty brows unconsciously furrowed. Tightly closed eyes slowly opened, unconsciously looking to where the sound of flipping books came from beside him. A white coat, warm and elegant, and a very reassuring feeling. The moment she saw Su Yan, Jiang Shuyan unconsciously came to mind. At the same time, Jiang Shuyan also noticed that the surroundings were no longer the dark prison she was in earlier. Su Yan's perception was powerful, and he keenly noticed Jiang Shuyan's small movements. Awake? Elder, were you the one who saved me? Su Yan nodded, and then took a look at the books he was holding. I found you in the dungeon below the neighboring house and rescued you on the way up. Many thanks, Senior, for saving my life. If Senior needs anything, I am willing to dedicate myself. Oh, when Yan Su Yan looked up at Jiang Shuyan, the mother and son unconsciously sized up Jiang Su Yan. Noticing Su Yan's gaze, Jiang Shuyan's face involuntarily blushed. After all, the current Kong Sukin didn't seem to have anything to hold on to, except for this body. However, Su Yan only glanced at Jiang Shuyan for a few moments before withdrawing his gaze. These are better to wait until you're better. Your body was in serious deficit before. Even though I ate a 5th grade elixir for you, it will still take some time to recover. What Jiang Shuyan damaged was her own Yuan Ling Dao body origin. Normal pills didn't work in this situation, and it was necessary to get some special heavenly materials to make up for the deficient origin. So what Su Yan did was just to suppress his injuries to a certain extent first. Will it still take some time to completely repair the damage to the garden in the end? Hearing Su Yan's words, Jiang Shuyan realized that her heavily injured body had actually recovered most of it. Kong Sukin tried to get out of bed, and although the feeling of pain still came from her body, it did not prevent her from performing simple activities. Recall the previous darkness of the scourge of prison, and even can no longer get out of the feeling of despair. At this time to regain a new life, Jiang Shuyan eyes unconsciously filled with tears. If it wasn't for the fear of disturbing Su Yan next to her, she would have wanted to hold back her tears. It's okay, you can cry, it doesn't affect me. Su Yan flipped through the sword skill in his hand and said indifferently. Su Yan's words were like opening the valve that trapped the aqueduct. Large teardrops continued to drip from the young girl's eyes, smashing into the ground and forming black trails. The moment the words fell, Su Yan heard the sound of crying coming from the young girl beside him. The weeping went on for a long time. When Jiang Shuyan had almost finished crying, Su Yan then got up and went to order a table with the shopkeeper. Collecting her own emotions, Kong Sukin lowered her head and sat on the bed in silence. Su Yan, on the other hand, returned to his original position and continued to comprehend the sword duel in his hand. Suddenly, a flash of light lit up in Jiang Shuyan's eyes, and then she fiercely raised her head to look at Su Yan. Elder, where are we now? Ryujo, what's wrong? Jiang Shuyan's face changed and she hurriedly said, Senior, you can't stay here. You are needed to leave immediately. Chapter 10, Returning to the Violet Sky Divine Sect. In that case, there is another prince who has joined forces with the Lin family? After listening to Jiang Shuyan's words, Su Yan's eyes were deep in thought. Half a pillar of incense ago, Jiang Shuyan suddenly told Su Yan a piece of news. This underground devil's den of the Lin family. Although the Lin family knew about it, they didn't build it, they just carried out guarding. The person behind the scenes who really planned everything was a prince of the Great Xia dynasty. As for why Kong Sukin is sure, it was because Jiang Shuyan had seen the dragon jade pendant worn around the man's waist. Dragon was the totem of the Great Xia imperial dynasty. It is not permitted to be used by the common people or by the children of wealthy families. Not to mention carving it into a jade pendant and wearing it on the side of your waist. Only those who are truly part of the Daxia royal family are qualified to wear it. Could it be those two? Normally, since Lin Shui was pregnant with Emperor Xia's heir, shouldn't have come to himself anyhow. Although it was rumored that the current Xia emperor had suffered a serious injury due to an outing, resulting in his lifespan coming to an end. But that was also a strong person of the harmonization realm, or the emperor of this great Xia. A word to the wise. It was perfectly possible to arrange a clear-cut arrangement for Lin Shui, so why did she have to come to herself? What's wrong with you? Su Yan sighed helplessly. Had he known that he wouldn't have killed Lin Shui so quickly in the first place, it mostly felt like Lin Shui was too much of an idiot to give her a hard time. I regret it. I should have just tried soul-searching first. But thinking about it, the only people Su Yan could produce socialization with were the two imperial princes within the Violet Sky Divine Palace. One of them was still in the same swordsman status as himself. The contemporary Divine Knight Sword sect had a total of 9 sword sons, representing the Divine Knight Sword sect, the strongest 9 of the younger generation. And before that, Soam was ranked 7th out of those 9. The 6 people in front of them were all at the God transformation stage cultivation level. And among them, there was no lack of people who possessed divine bodies and Dao bodies. Although Su Yan possessed a natural sword bone, he wasn't considered a particularly top-notch sword Dao when all was said and done. Within the cultivation world, special talents were classified as spirit body, king body, god body, and Dao body, as well as the legendary immortal body. The possessor will become a true immortal. Su Yan's innate sword bone was, to put it mildly, equivalent to a king-level physique. As for those divine knight sword sons in front, there were 3 divine bodies as well as 1 Dao body. Another royal prince is one of the body owners, named Xiaze, water spirit sword body, middle stage of spirit transformation cultivation, ranked 3rd. Su Yan didn't have any great grudges against him, and there weren't many interactions. On the contrary, Su Yan had been invited by Xiaze when he defeated the previous generation's sword son and inherited his identity, but at that time it had already been explicitly rejected by Su Yan. Is it hard to make such a big drama out of that one sentence? Thinking about it, Su Yan didn't find out where the key to it was, but Jiang Shuyan was indeed right. Today's Maple City was not suitable to stay for a long time. When the matter of the Devil's Cave gradually spreads, I believe many people will rush over. Su Yan didn't want to be interrogated by a group of people at that time. Dealing with demonic qi was very tedious and time-consuming. Su Yan was not interested in waiting here. Moreover, Maple City belonged to the boundaries of the Ziyang Divine Middle Sect. It wouldn't be long before the people from the Violet Sun Divine Sect would come to solve the problem. Finish fixing the food. Su Yan immediately brought Jiang Shuyan to the Divine Sky Sword Sect. Senior, are you sure you want to take me to the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect? Hearing Su Yan's words, Jiang Shuyan's eyes glowed. Well, you have good talent. It would be a waste if you were to stray, Su Yan said in a flat tone. Su Yan then looked at Jiang Shuyan. Could it be that you don't want to go down this path? Jiang Shuyan shook her head repeatedly. Her large eyes filled with starlight flashes. I want to cultivate immortality. It's been my dream since I was a child. The Divine Sky Sword Sect isn't bad either. With your talent, you should be a core disciple going in. Su Yan then took out the spirit beast pouch. As the spell seals were struck, a white spirit bird of huge size appeared in front of the two. As a sword son of the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect, Su Yan's treatment was naturally top-notch. Like this kind of spirit beast mounts and whatnot, naturally, there are people who dedicate themselves to it. The spirit bird in front of him looked ordinary in appearance, but it was actually a bit of a Jindan realm spirit beast. Go! Su Yan's figure moved to the spirit bird's back, followed by a move of his 5 fingers. Jiang Shuyan was instantly wrapped in a wave of spiritual energy and pulled into the spirit bird as well. Maple City was still a bit far away from the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect, and it would take almost 3 days with the spirit bird's flying speed. Looking at the environment below that was constantly regressing, Jiang Shuyan's eyes were filled with joy, and in the ensuing conversation, Su Yan also learned about Jiang Shuyan's identity. Jiang Shuyan was not an ordinary disciple, but came from a wealthy merchant family. Since she was a child, Jiang Shuyan had always wished to become a cultivator and embark on the path of immortal cultivation, but his parents were reluctant, believing the road to be too dangerous. They preferred Kong Suking to stay at home and be a child loved by her parents. Just half a year ago, Jiang Shuyan took advantage of her family's big feast to invite guests to sneak out. As a result, he was captured and imprisoned in the Devil's Cave. It was also good that Jiang Shuyan had the Yuan Ling Dao body to protect her. Otherwise, not to mention half a year, even a day's time would be eroded by the rich demonic qi inside, reduced to a machine that only knows how to kill. Speaking of this, Su Yan didn't know whether to say she was lucky or unlucky. In the next few moments, Su Yan began to flip through the immortal secrets in his hands again. In addition to studying the Tao divine principles he had previously learned, it had to be said that with Jiang Shuyan by his side, Su Yan felt that his comprehension of the sword Tao had all advanced by a large step. The sword intent that Su Yan had comprehended had also become a few points more powerful, and was about to break through to the grand completion sword intent. This time, he came out to settle the troubles of the Su and Lin families. Although there was being disgusted, Su Yan's gain was even greater. There was also more certainty about dealing with the next cultivation conference. After all, the next thing Su Yan had to face was the 6 sword sons in front of him. Trying to outsmart them, really, not a simple thing. 3 days passed in a flash, and along with the hissing of the spirit birds, a huge immortal mountain standing in the clouds appeared in front of the two. This is Divine Sky Sword Sect. Looking at the clan that was wrapped up in the clouds and chatting fog, a shocking color flowed from Jiang Shuxian's eyes. Spirit mists wrapped around, spirit birds flew, and all sorts of magical and powerful spirit rhythms flowed between the mountain peaks. Worthy of being the top immortal sect in this great Xia dynasty, Su Yan's status was extremely high, and he could directly bring Jiang Shuxiang into the inner sect to cultivate. Stay with me for the rest of the day, and I'll reassign you when the conference is over. Jiang Shuyan nodded excitedly, once again expressing her gratitude towards Su Yan. Many thanks, senior. I will definitely not let you down. Upon hearing this, Su Yan only smiled helplessly. With your talent, once the divine heavenly sword sect knows about it, even a pig can feed you into a great power. The appearance of the Yuan Lingdao body would definitely cause a shock to the higher echelons of the divine heavenly sword sect, and at that time, Jiang Shushan's status would even far exceed Su Yan's. To be on the safe side, Kang Sukin will have to wait a while to join. Calculating the time should be about the same. This month's time, master teacher should be out of the gate. Chapter 11, signing for 3 days in a row. Immortal Dictionary Secret Methods. Su Yan's master was named Wine Taoist, and was also a harmonization realm powerhouse. Su Yan was able to be discovered in Maple City, a border city of the divine heavenly sword sect, thanks to this Wine Taoist. Just thinking of his own master, Su Yan also couldn't help but feel a headache. Is there something wrong with Elder? Noticing that there was something wrong with Su Yan's expression, Jiang Shuyan eagerly opened her mouth to ask. He was afraid that he would bring trouble to Su Yan. After all, the divine heavenly sword sect, as a top great sect, was extremely harsh in accepting disciples, and without even conducting a test himself, he was going to be brought directly into the inner sect to cultivate. Jiang Shuyan felt that Su Yan must be under great pressure. Nothing. Su Yan shook his head, then looked toward an immortal mountain full of green bamboo plants in the distance. That's Spirit Wine Peak, and that's where you'll be living for the next little while. Spirit Wine Peak is rather special. As of now there is only one disciple, me. As for the Peak Master, that is, my master is currently still in seclusion. Once he's out of the gate after a while, you can officially join Spirit Wine Peak, or you can choose another Spirit Peak to join when the time comes. Listening to Su Yan's words, Jiang Shuyan shook her head and said in an affirmative tone, Elder, I won't leave Spirit Wine Peak no matter what. If my spiritual root is too poor and my master is unwilling to accept me, even if I become a miscellaneous disciple, I'll still stay here. Looking at Jiang Shuyan's determined demeanor, Su Yan was somewhat stunned. She couldn't have misunderstood something, could she? That's right, she doesn't know the specialness of her body either. So I guess she's just as scared as I was at that time that I don't have a spiritual root today. Su Yan withdrew his eyes and stopped speaking, as the forest bird kept getting closer. Some of the surrounding disciples on patrol also flew towards speechless location. Just seeing that it was Su Yan, they all respectfully stopped and called out, Good day, senior brother. Su Yan nodded slightly, and was considered to have said hello. As Su Yan and the two of them left, the disciples patrolling the surrounding area gathered together again. Why did senior brother Su go out this time and bring a woman back? Yes, isn't it rumored that senior brother Su likes women by his side? What don't like? It's senior sister Chenro who doesn't want to. Senior brother likes senior sister Chenro so much that he naturally reduces his dealings with female disciples. So what's going on now? Who knows? Maybe it's another trick to attract senior sister Chenro. After all, senior brother Su Yan is said to be dedicated, but to put it bluntly, they're all privately rumoring that senior brother Su Yan is senior sister Chenro's licking dog. It was easy to see through the conversation of a few people that they still had a certain amount of awe and even regret towards Su Yan. However, there was some scorn for Su Yan's actions, with a slight disdain. Spirit Wine Peak. The spirit bird slowly gathered its feathers and descended into a clearing. As soon as she landed, Jiang Shuyan smelled a very unique aroma in the air. What's that smell? It smells so good. Absorbing the unique odor in the air, Kang Sukin's face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, and her eyes showed a mesmerizing color. This aroma is the odor of our Spirit Wine Peak's unique green bamboo wine brew. It's bang! Before Su Yan could finish his words, he heard a thumping sound from beside him. Turning her head to look, she only saw Jiang Shuyan lying on the ground with smoldering cheeks, directly sleeping. Su Yan was a bit helpless. Then he remembered that Jiang Shuyan was not a cultivator and could not carry this wine containing spiritual qi. Su Yan then arranged Jiang Shuyan next door to his room. This would also help Su Yan continue to improve his cultivation. Su Yan sat on the bed with his legs crossed, and did not enter the cultivation state the first time. Instead, opened the system backpack. Reflected in the eye are 3 different items. Within 3 days, each day's check-in brought Su Yan a considerable reward. The first was a 100-foot-sized dragon carp. This was a very special kind of spirit beast. The aura of the body was extremely rich, comparable to a harmonization realm cultivator, and the aura contained the power of life. If it was consumed by a severely injured person at the God transformation realm and below, eating a piece would restore them to their original state in less than a moment. The second item, a bell-type magic treasure, the soul regenerating bell, had a grade of extreme immortal artifact. P.S. Magic weapon, treasure weapon, Tao weapon, immortal weapon. That's right. Just this tiny purple bell was that rumored immortal weapon. If one were to compare this bell with Su Yan's immortal execution sword, the grade of this bell would be considered a Hotian spiritual treasure. The only pity was that the bell had a seal on it, and now it was just a Dao weapon. But this also happened to be suitable for Su Yan to use. If this thing was an immortal weapon, it was feared that using it once would have to drain all of Su Yan's life force. As for the last one, it was a rather special gongfu, the immortal code of feathering. If you practice this method, you will have no worries on the road ahead and reach the realm of immortality. This had already surpassed the highest 9th grade gongfu in the world, reaching the legendary immortal laws. 3 days down the line, Su Yan had pretty much comprehended the sword decree. However, the exact power was still to be verified by Su Yan himself. At the same time, Su Yan also realized that the complete sword skill should have recorded 3 stances. The one recorded in this one is called Chopper. When the sword comes out, it can cut down the divine dragons of heaven and earth. Dragons were the top spirit beasts in this world, and their strength could be imagined. Su Yan was also eager to see what level of dragon he would be able to slay using this move. Time passes quickly. The mana practiced by the feathered immortal Hall quickly finished transforming the mana of the Ling Knight skill that Su Yan had previously practiced. The Ling Xiao skill was the divine heavenly sword sextown technique, and its grade reached the 8th rank. Comparing the two techniques to each other, Su Yan would naturally choose the feathered immortal classic. However, because of the conversion of the gong method, it caused Su Yan's cultivation level to start falling as well. Peak Yuaning, late Yuaning, mid Yuaning. It ended up staying at the early stage of Yuaning. However, at this moment, Su Yan had a feeling that if he were to face that God Transformation Realm cultivator again, he could exterminate him with a single sword strike. Strength was increasing almost several times over. Time just slowly passed in the practice. Ding! Congratulations to the host on signing in on the 6th day and obtaining the infant shaping method. Su Yan slowly opened his eyes and looked doubtfully at the secret method floating in front of him. The baby shaping method. Finish molding the dollar baby? Su Yan had a shocking look in his eyes. After completing the conjugation of Jindan, a Jindan cultivator could condense Jindans of different grades, the best being the perfect Jindan. Having a perfect Jindan was enough to crush the enemy within the same level, and it wasn't difficult to even do the reverse of the Yuaning. And when the Jindan ruptures to transform into a Yuaning, it also inherits the previous level to form a complete dollar baby. What Su Yan had previously possessed was only the upper grade Yuaning, and hadn't reached its limit. And now that there was a method of arriving at the limit right in front of him, Su Yan's breathing unconsciously became a few moments sharper. Once Su Yan was able to advance to complete dollar baby, even if he didn't rely on the immortal Punisher sword, Su Yan was able to achieve the reverse felling transformation god. While Su Yan was going over the secret method, several figures came outside Spirit Wine Peak. Senior sister Chenro. Senior brother Su is definitely trying to piss you off this time. There's no need for you to get too angry. Yeah, a few days ago, senior brother Su wanted to bond with you and was once again rejected by you, so he should have done it to provoke you. Listening to the conversations of the people around her, the cool female cultivator known as Chen Shui remained indifferent, only that the anger contained in her beautiful eyes could not be concealed. Chapter 12, Light in the Darkness. Helpless Su Yan. Where is this? In a daze, Jiang Shuyan slowly opened her eyes to look at the unfamiliar surroundings for a moment. Some doubts. Wait, didn't I follow Elder to Spirit Wine Peak? Immediately after the thought, he got out of bed and left the room to look for it. The moment Kong Sukin just opened the door to her room, Su Yan in the other room immediately had a sense. But now his own enlightenment had also reached a critical moment. So Su Yan directly transmitted his spiritual voice towards Jiang Shuyan. I have something I need to take care of, so you can visit the Spirit Wine Peak on your own first. Hearing voices coming out of his ears, Jiang Shuyan's face couldn't help but flush, and her eyes were filled with excitement. Is this the legendary cultivation technique? Although she had stayed with Su Yan for 3 days, Jiang Shuyan hadn't seen Su Yan use any spells. At this moment, he heard Su Yan transmitting to himself through the air. This was a very ordinary thing in the eyes of ordinary immortal cultivators, but here in Jiang Shuyan it appeared to be a bit of a surprise. With Su Yan's permission, Jiang Shuyan's boldness grew and she began to visit the entire Zero Wine Peak. Within the lush bamboo forest, a small compound built of green bamboo wrapped within a barrier. When Chen Ro's few female disciples arrived, they were immediately blocked outside by this white scraping. Chen Ro's brows clustered as she reached out and just touched the barrier. A tingling sensation came directly from it and she was shaken back and forth. Senior sister Chen Ro, what's wrong with you? Seeing this scene, the few female disciples around them were a bit uncertain. Chen Ro's face was a bit ugly, and her tone was flooded with coldness. Su Yan actually set up a barrier within the spirit wine compound to block me. When I go in I will definitely make him look good. Hearing Chen Ro's words, the crowd also curiously reached out to touch the white barrier, and were then directly shaken out. A female disciple with weaker cultivation was even shocked to spit out blood, her face immediately turning pale. What are you? Seeing that the woman was injured, Chen Ro immediately went up to check the situation with heartache. Chen Yi shook his head, a hint of stubbornness showing on his miserable face. It's just a small injury. It doesn't bother me. I'll just take some pills. Chen Yi then took out a reddish elixir from his storage ring and swallowed it, and his originally fluctuating breath calmed down. Chen Shui was relieved. Then looking towards the white curtain of light, Chen Shui instantly shouted out in anger. Su Yan, come out of there. Su Yan, do you hear me? Hurry up and come out and apologize to Xiaoyi. However, Chen Shui called out a few times without the slightest movement. Chen Shui's face was icy cold and her eyes were terrifyingly gloomy. Just as she was about to continue shouting, she saw the barrier in front of her ripple, only to see a young teenage girl wearing a long green-colored dress with a green headpin on her head walk out from it, looking at her people with a curious face. Senior sister. He's the one senior brother Su Yan brought here. Strange. Why don't I feel any spiritual energy in her? Me too. It's so weird. Chen Shui sized up Jiang Shuyan for a moment, disdain showing in her eyes. Don't guess. She's just a mortal. Mortals? Hearing Chen Shui say this, the crowd immediately tightened their faces and lost interest. Mortals are a far cry from them. Say, who are you? Why are you here? Listening to Chen Shui's questioning tone, Jiang Shuyan's willow brows slightly knitted, feeling a little discomfort at Chen Shui's tone. But the thought came that these few people might be Su Yan's friends. Kong Sukin could only say the same thing truthfully. My name is Kong Sukin. I was brought by my benefactor in my room. A benefactor? The crowd felt a bit puzzled by this strange title, but didn't care too much about it. Chen Shui wrapped her arms around herself and looked condescendingly at Jiang Shuyan. You go and call Su Yan out to me now and make him apologize to Xiaoyi. Listening to Chen Shui's increasingly dissatisfied words, Jiang Shuyan also saw that the several people were coming from a bad place and said in a deep voice, Benefactor, he is not here. No? Chen Shui's brows furrowed as she looked at Jiang Shuyan with an increasingly unkind gaze. Are you sure you're not cheating on me? Not at all. Number one just had that same blasé look about him. With that, he was ready to turn around and leave. I gave you permission to go. Chen Shui's face turned cold as she reached out and waved her hand. A wave of aura instantly wrapping around Jiang Shuxiang. What do you want to do? Looking at Jiang Shuyan's angry eyes, a look of enjoyment spread across Chen Shui's face. Since you dared to disrespect the immortals, I will now let you know the price of disrespecting the immortals. Chen Shui raised her palm and smacked it directly towards Jiang Shuyan's face. Snap! This slap Chen Shui directly used spiritual power. A huge palm print appeared on Jiang Shuyan's delicate face. Despite the immense pain she had endured, Kong Sukin didn't say a word. The beautiful eyes stared fiercely at Chen Shui, and if not for the fact that her body was imprisoned by Chen Shui, she was afraid that she would directly charge up. Looking at the red palm print, Chen Shui seemed to be slightly dissatisfied. TSK, tisk, how dare you stare at me like that? It seems that one slap is not enough. It should be two for symmetry, said Chen Shui as she raised her palm and was about to fall again. Bang! Suddenly, an extremely large pressure fell. Chen Shui was inadvertent and was directly pressed to her knees by this power. The few people around them were similarly confined by this spiritual pressure, all kneeling in front of Jiang Shuyan. The aura that was imprisoned around Jiang Shuxiang had also been dispersed by this spiritual pressure. Jiang Shuyan's face blushed together as she turned her head to look back, but she only saw Su Yan's figure slowly walking out from within the barrier. Where did the cats and dogs come from? How dare they clamor in front of my door? Seeing a few people, Su Yan frowned and exuded vigorous killing intent. Feeling Su Yan's terrifying aura, Chen Shui's body could not stop trembling. The eyes gradually became red and large tears dripped down. Su Yan, you actually scolded me for this woman. You said you wouldn't bully me. What a mess. Looking at Chen Shui, Su Yan frowned tightly for a while before recalling the identity of the person in front of him. Holy, dude, no. Why are you still a lickspill? What happened to the Su family can be said to have been marred by kinship, but this becoming Chen Shui's dog licker was purely a result of the original's own temperament, previously because the truth about the death of his parents was never available, plus the family, and the oppression of my own grandfather. The original body that returned to the divine heavenly sword sect fell directly into a sinkhole during that time, and at this time, Chen Shui appeared in the world of the original body like a beam of light. With Chen Shui's help, the original body comes out of the darkness and gradually treats Chen Shui as the most important person to him other than his relatives. It is even said to be more than the family, in the mind of the original. But it was also under such a one-time guidance that the original body was completely reduced to Chen Shui's licking dog. Chen Shui also gradually bared her fangs towards Su Yan and began to lie on its body to suck blood. All kinds of rare and precious medicines, spirit stones and magic weapons. As long as he had it, He would stuff it all in his head to Chen Shui. Even if it meant deserting his own cultivation, he had to help Chen Shui. Chapter 13, Broken Dantian, Desperate Chen Shui. Thinking of the series of strange things that the original body had done for Chen Shui, Su Yan felt a pang of speechlessness. Su Yan, do you still want me to be your Dao couple? Don't let go of me yet. Chen Shui's face was humiliated as she looked at Su Yan, her beautiful eyes carrying intense anger. If you don't let go of me, I'm never going to talk to you again. However, Su Yan indeed did not even look at Chen Shui. Su Yan walked to Jiang Shuyan's side and stretched out his hand, injecting a strand of spiritual qi into his body. The bright red palm prints on that face quickly disappeared. Thank you, benefactor. Kang Sukin shrugged her head and forced herself not to let her tears flow out. Want to get your revenge back? Ha! Jiang Shuyan raised her head violently and looked at Su Yan incredulously. What? Don't you want to fight back? Su Yan frowned, trying to. But, looking at Chen Shui, who was kneeling on the ground, Jiang Shuyan's face showed a tangled color. Hearing Su Yan's words from afar, Chen Shui had an incredulous look on her face. So Yan, what are you talking about? You actually want this little of mine to beat me up. So Yan, I'm warning you, if you're trying to piss me off with him, you're wrong. You're only going to make me loathe you more and push you further away. Noisy. Su Yan's face turned cold, and he directly slapped over. Snap. Chen Shui's gaze instantly turned to the side, and two teeth stained with blood foam instantly flew out. When did I give you permission to talk? Su Yan's face was indifferent as he looked at Chen Shui, killing intent lingering in his eyes. Under the gaze of Su Yan's icy gaze, Chen Shui's heart went cold and her body could not stop trembling. Su Yan, have you forgotten who helped you walk out? Have you forgotten who it was that gave you your present status as a swordsman? Su Yan coldly smiled. So, that's why you're using me as a dog? Chen Shui's face went white, and her face cat all a little evasive. How could you think that? I've never treated you as the closest person to me. This time, when my sister entered the Divine Heavenly Sword sect, I even personally brought him to meet you. But you actually brought a mortal woman into Spirit Wine Peak. You said that Spirit Wine Peak would not have a second person come up besides me. Chen Shui looked at Su Yan with a humiliated face and directly bit back, dumping all the blame back onto Su Yan. Su Yan raised one eyebrow, as if it was really something like that. Spirit Wine Peak, as the peak of the Divine Sky Sword sect's inheritance of the art of brewing wine, didn't exist just for the sake of brewing wine. It belonged to the 72 skillful peaks of the Divine Heavenly Sword sect and was not as special as the 36 main peaks. However, because the spirit wines brewed by Spirit Wine Peak all possessed the efficacy of boosting spiritual cultivation, there were often people who would bring spirit stones to purchase them. However, with the appearance of Chen Shui, Spirit Wine Peak showed signs of a blockade. Because of Su Yan's master's perennial seclusion, the entire mountain peak only had Su Yan as the only living person, and everything Su Yan said was the truth. At Chen Shui's instigation, the entire Spirit Wine Peak was going to become his private property. Many disciples were greatly disappointed by the closure of Spirit Wine Peak, where once the Spirit Wine Peak had been somewhat alive. Now there was only one living person left. At this moment, listening to Chen Shui's accusations, Su Yan was slowly revealing a smile. Seeing Su Yan's expression change, Chen Shui thought that what she said had worked. Immediately the heart began to steel together. A dog liquor is a dog liquor, and nothing about it will change that. Snap. Suddenly, Chen Shui's other cheek received another slap and began to redden at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chen Shui's face was stagnant and she did not return to her senses for a long time. You're right. It looks more symmetrical that way. Nice. Chen Shui stiffened and turned her head, her eyes as if they were spitting fire, staring at Su Yan in death. Su Yan was indeed blissfully unconcerned, randomly turning his head to skim over Jiang Shuyan. Since you haven't made a good decision, this opportunity is gone. Su Yan's mind moved, and the massive pressure intensified once again. Su Yan tapped his finger, and a streak of sword qi shot out. As the sword qi entered her body, a look of pain immediately spread across Chen Shui's face. When the spirit qi in his body was completely shattered, pure blood completely couldn't help but spray out a mouthful of blood. Su Yan, you actually ruined my cultivation. Chen Shui's face was completely dumbfounded as she felt the empty aura in her body. The few female cultivators around them who had followed Chen Shui were also completely dumbfounded. Sis. Seeing her sister's situation, Chen Yi's face turned red and she spoke out angrily accusing Su Yan. Senior brother Su Yan, you are the contemporary mirror of our Divine Sky Sword sect. Neither status is comparable to ours. But why are you bullying us like this? Do you know how hard it is for my sister to cultivate? Why did you destroy her cultivation? Are you really doing this to live up to your status as a sword son? Facing Chen Yi's resounding questioning, Su Yan's eyes showed hesitation. You have a very good point, and since you can't see him suffer, you'll stay with him. What? Chen Yi's face froze, and in the next moment, she felt the aura in her body begin to rapidly drain away. No! Chen Yi's brain went sideways and she directly fainted. Seeing this, the surrounding female disciples who had come to support the scene immediately lowered their heads. Cold sweat continued to bubble on his forehead, fearing that he would be next. Take them all away. Don't waste my spirit wine peaks aura here. Feeling the intimidating pressure on their bodies disappear, several people immediately thanked towards Su Yan. The fainting Chen Yi and the frozen Chen Shui were then quickly taken away. Well, things work out. Su Yan stretched and turned toward the small courtyard, as he passed by the stony-faced Kong Sukin. If you didn't take the opportunity just now, it looks like you won't be able to get your revenge later. According to the rules of the Divine Sky Sword sect, the two of them will soon be sent down the mountain gate. Hearing Su Yan's words, Jiang Shuyan turned her head to meet Su Yan's eyes. Benefactor. You guessed it. Kong Sukin has never been a person who likes to rely on others. Although she was beaten by Chen Shui, she wanted to fight back by virtue of herself more than anything else. Returning to the small courtyard, Jiang Shuyan still didn't hold back from asking the doubts in her heart. Benefactor, is it true that the sect won't chastise you for doing this? By all rights, Su Yan's behavior should have been more serious as well. But looking at Su Yan's appearance, he didn't seem to care. Su Yan smiled faintly. You'll know why when you take the position of Sword Son. Kong Sukin blushed in embarrassment. I'd like to, but I'm not confident. Looking at this Jiang Shuyan's expression, Su Yan also didn't hold back his laughter. Su Yan got up and walked towards the kitchen, and halfway there he turned back to look at Jiang Shuyan. Can you cook? Kong Sukin froze for a moment, then nodded. Okay, there are all the ingredients in the kitchen, so watch and prepare yourself. I'm going to go rest for a while. Ooh-hoo. Looking at Su Yan's departing back, Jiang Shuyan also felt a little strange. Didn't they say that immortals don't get hungry? Why does the benefactor want me to cook? By the way, from now on, don't put a person on your lips. Just call me Su Yan. Su Yan's voice came from the distance. Jiang Shuyan nodded her head hastily. Okay, benefactor. Chapter 14, The Great Xia Dynasty. Divine Sky Sword Sect. Green Spirit Peak. Click. This Su Yan is really bullying people too much. After listening to his subordinate's report, Xia Zhe was so angry that he slammed the teacup on the table to the ground. Your Highness, now that the Devil's Cave has been discovered and the people inside have been rescued, what should we do now? Below, a man with a cold face fell to one knee. How many times have you been there, Your Highness? Though all of them have hidden their identities, there's no guarantee that they won't be detected. Her being rescued will likely work against you. Xia Zhe's face changed for a moment as he looked coldly at the man below. Since Su Yan discovered the Devil's Cave, then Su Yan should stay with her. Brother, I seem to know something. Xian Yan, who had been silent next to him, spoke softly. Xia Zhe and Xian Yan are brothers from the same mother. One is ranked 3rd and one is ranked 7th. Talk. Xian Yan, I got the news that Su Yan brought a woman with him when he came back yesterday, and he also had a not-so-small conflict with Chen Shui and the others today. Even Su Yan made a move to waste Chen Shui's dantian for this reason. Speaking of this, Xian Yan's eyes showed killing intent. The current Su Yan's behavior is slightly different from the past. Before he was a joke among our pro-disciples, but this hand of his has directly shattered the crowd's speculation about him. It's only a few days. Does it really change people that much? Shazar frowned. You mean to tell me that you mean he was acting out on purpose before? Xian Yan shook his head. I'm not sure about that. I'm more interested in knowing who actually exterminated the Su family. That's a god transformation realm, and it's amazing that they all died in the bookshelf. Indeed, there's a lot of irrationality in all of this. Shazar rubbed his forehead, feeling very annoyed. It was only after half a minute that Shazar spoke with a grim expression on his face. Find a way to get her back no matter what. This kind of physique should never be shed outside. If we can't get it, then let him destroy it completely. Xia Zhe's eyes carried a rich killing intent. Then he turned his head to look at Xian Yan beside him. Since you're scheming about Su Yan's swordbone, you'll have to stop for a while. Xia Zhe kept pointing out, and a flash of spiritual light quickly entered Xian Yan's mind, transforming into a woman's figure. She is Jiang Shuyan. Go investigate if it's her beside Su Yan. Previously, in order to ensure the presence of Jiang Shuxiang, Xia Zhe did not have anyone who knew what he looked like except for a few dead soldiers under his hand. Even this own brother is no exception. Got it. I'm on my way. Xian Yan's eyes showed respect and he bowed and turned to leave. Great Xia Dynasty, the capital of Daxia. Within the opulent palace, the Xia Emperor with grey temples sat high above the dragon chair. The rich aura of the imperial way lingered around his body, pressurizing the group of ministers below to catch their breath. I know you all have your own little agendas right now, but don't let me investigate, or else, you will all raise your clans to bury the late emperor. After saying that, The Xia Emperor coldly grimaced and got up to leave the throne. Arriving inside the palace at the back, the Xia Emperor's dragon chi around his body rumbled and dissipated, and his face was no longer as red as it had been a moment ago, becoming pale. Your Majesty, your injuries have worsened again. I'll go get the eunuch to come over. No need. Emperor Xia asked in a deep voice. Have you found the murderer of that transformation god realm? The eunuch next to him immediately lowered his head. Not yet. Hearing these words, Emperor Xia's face once again turned a few shades of white, but the anger in his eyes grew more and more intense. To actually dare to kill my Xia's royal son. How dare you? Xia Huang he also did not expect that he could actually leave an heir once again after a chance indulgence. Although there was a slight awkwardness between the two parties, Emperor Xia didn't care. Instead, he had sent the only few strong men in the imperial dynasty to protect Lin Shui, but he hadn't expected something to happen so soon. But when he thought that even the transformation god realm had died, the other party's strength must be very strong as well. Emperor Xia couldn't help but let out a sigh. Your Majesty, today the three royal clans sent a spirit message that the divine heavenly sword sect's spirit ascension assembly is imminent, asking if you want to attend the assembly. At those words, Emperor Xia sneered. Does he think I don't know what he is up to? Entering the divine heavenly sword sect for so many years and not accomplishing anything at all. Let's see. He's afraid that he's completely taken this divine sky sword sect as his home. Your Majesty, the third prince would never think such a thing. After all, he is your child, and your orders are above all else to him. Only after hearing the subordinate say this did the Xia Emperor's face show some satisfaction. With my body nowadays, if I enter the divine heavenly sword sect it's inevitable that I won't be discovered by those old monsters. So let Vermilion Bird go, and in the meantime, poke around to find out news about Su Yan. As the Su family's legacy son, he should want to find each other more than anyone else. The Xia Emperor's face was cold and his eyes were filled with calculations. Spirit Wine Peak. At this moment, in addition to the scent of Man Mountain spirit wine, there was another unique odor to be added. Inside the room Su Yan slowly put down the books in his hands, his gaze looking through the window at the meal set out in the small courtyard. Su Yan was a bit surprised. He didn't think that this Jiang Shu Yan really had a hand. Jiang Shu Yan had said that she was from a rich family, and Su Yan had assumed that she was just doing an average job. I didn't realize it came out so well. Su Yan's figure instantly disappeared into the room, and when he reappeared he had already arrived in front of the stone tabletop. With Su Yan's Yuaning realm cultivation, he didn't actually need to feed on these ordinary spirits anymore. But after crossing over for a few days, Su Yan still wanted to eat some human food. Even if you don't feel hungry, you still want to eat. Su Yan turned his head to look at Jiang Shu Yan, who was still busy in the kitchen, and immediately prepared to pick up his chopsticks and prepare to taste it first. Right at the moment of laying down his chopsticks, Su Yan suddenly stopped and turned his head to look at the barrier. A few minutes ago, after Xian Yan left the Green Spirit Peak, it didn't take long for him to arrive at the Spirit Wine Peak. Coming to the green light curtain, curiosity flowed from Xian Yan's eyes as he reached out and tapped on it. It was accompanied by a gradual spreading of watery ripples. A vortex emitting a blue glow gradually surfaced in front of them. Xian Yan then stepped into it. As soon as he came in, Xian Yan saw Su Yan in the middle of the small courtyard and immediately clasped his hands and apologized. I hope senior brother Su will forgive me for coming here so hastily. What if I don't see it? Xian Yan's face choked, not knowing how to answer. You want to be so impulsive? Su Yan indeed didn't pay attention to Xian Yan, but instead looked at the barrier in the sky with a slight frown. It seems like there is a need to upgrade this protective formation. What kind of cats and dogs can come in? This formation was one that Su Yan had casually ministered previously, and hadn't practiced on it by heart. As long as one's cultivation reached the Jindan realm and knew a little bit about formations, one could easily find the weak points of the formation and thus open it. Chapter 15, Law Enforcement Hall. And listening to Su Yan's unceremonious words, Xian Yan was also embarrassed. Senior brother Su, I just heard that senior brother Su just came back from outside and abandoned the cultivation of 2 disciples. So I wanted to come and ask the reason. I won't hide it from senior brother Su. This matter has already spread outside already. When I arrived, I heard that the law enforcement hall side had already sent people into action. So perhaps it won't be long before they appear at senior brother Su's Spirit Wine Peak. Su Yan yawned and looked at Xian Yan with an indifferent face. Well, is there anything else? If not, please leave. Xian Yan's face stiffened, completely unable to understand Su Yan's actions. Even though Su Yan possessed the identity of a sword son, he couldn't just arbitrarily bully the disciples within the department like that. Or else what should the other disciples think of this matter? If you get angry, you will be directly abolished. If Su Yan continues to be in such a situation, then everyone in the Divine Heavenly Sword sect will definitely be in danger, causing a great impact. However, Xian Yan looked at Su Yan without the slightest care and was very indifferent. Xianyan took a deep breath and was just about to open his mouth when he noticed a figure coming out of the hut next to him. The moment he saw the woman, Xianyan's pupils trembled slightly. Su Yan, as a Yuaning mirror, had extremely powerful perception and also noticed this faint manifestation of Xianyan. Trouble. Su Yan Xin muttered secretly, but his face didn't care too much. Since they were targeting Kong Sukin, it would be best to use this opportunity to catch a big fish. I just don't know. What grade of fish is this one? Su Yan looked at Xianyan, and the figure of no one appeared in his mind again. Is it this little fish? Or the big fish behind it? No matter who it was, as long as they could be caught out, it would be no small benefit to Su Yan. Senior brother Su, then I'll leave before I do. Aha! Xianyan nodded slightly and immediately turned around to leave in a hurry. After leaving the confines of the small courtyard, Xianyan's face immediately turned into a cold smile. How dare you bring her here? Su Yan, you're really arrogant. You don't think that today's Divine Sky Sword sect is still the previous Divine Sky Sword sect, do you? After leaving some distance, two figures appeared in front of them. As soon as Xianyan approached, Chenyi immediately pounced over with reddened eyes. Cradling the young girl in his arms, he felt that she had already regained her cultivation. Xianyan's mood couldn't help but improve. How is it? Are there any problems with your body after the remodeling? Chenyi tearfully shook her head. Well then, let's get out of here. Chenyi had a hesitant look on her face. But sister will be here soon with the enforcement team. Do I need to not wait here? No harm done. Let them handle it. You stay out of it for now. Su Yan's attitude was strange, coupled with the fact that he had previously wasted the cultivation of the two without hesitation. Xianyan was afraid that Chenyi's roots, which had been so hard to regain, would be cut off again. A few people had just left shortly afterward. A group of disciples dressed in law enforcement hall garb then descended on Spirit Wine Peak with great vigor. However, the group of people were soon intercepted by the formation crafted by Jiang Chang. Humph! How dare you take out a small carving skill and get in the way? The young disciple in the lead sneered and drew out the long sword at his waist, instantly releasing a crimson sword chi. The crimson sword chi landed on top of the formation and immediately punched cracks on it. With a smug look on his face, the young man swung out two swords again, opening a gap in the formation. Within the small courtyard, Su Yan put down the chopsticks in his hand with intent. Looks like I'm not having much luck today. Whatever cats and dogs are rushing up to get beat up. Jiang Shuyan was also a bit puzzled, putting down what she was holding and following Su Yan's line of sight to turn her head to look in the direction of the formation. Soon, the dense crowd fishtailed through the gap opened by the formation and appeared in front of the two. Seeing Su Yan, the leading man looked arrogant and said, Su Yan, we have been ordered by the law enforcement elder to apprehend you, so if you tie your hands now, it will save us from having to do it. Where's Chen Mu? Why isn't he coming? Chen Mu was the senior brother of the law enforcement hall, with a harmonization of God stage cultivation, and ranked 6th in the Sword Sons. It was also the object that the original body of this divine heavenly sword sect living spirit assembly wanted to challenge. While listening to Su Yan's inquiry, the young man laughed out loud. What do you think you are? Just you deserve to be apprehended by eldest brother himself? Saying that, a strong aura erupted from the young man. The young man was clearly at peak Yuaning cultivation as well. I've heard that senior brother Su has been serving as a sword son for 3 years with his Yuaning cultivation, so I'd like to see senior brother's methods as well. Let's see if this swordsman status is worthy of senior brother or not. The young man waved his sword chi in his hand and unceremoniously released a sword chi directly. The crimson sword chi arrived instantly, and in the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Su Yan. But just as it was about to step within the range of the stone table, the powerful sword chi suddenly dissipated. Han Qing frowned, not feeling the slightest fluctuation of spiritual energy at all. With a cold snort, Han Qing continued to push his aura in preparation for a second attack. If you don't make a move again, senior brother Su, then I'll be impolite. Han Chang's aura surged once more, and a raging flame aura surrounded his body. Su Yan was somewhat helpless, slowly getting up and directly pointing out with a finger. The dense sword chi converged on his fingertips and instantly burst out. Trying to defeat me with just a sword chi is simply arrogant. Han Qing's face was furious, feeling insulted. The red sword chi under Han Qing's manipulation. Word said a huge fire dragon whistled towards Su Yan. The blazing flames burned away even the surrounding spirit grasses altogether, carrying the power of an unrivaled explosion. But the next moment, the huge fire dragon suddenly hissed, and its huge body violently exploded. What? Han Qing's face changed, only to see a strand of sword chi shoot out from the exploding flames. Han Qing hurriedly crossed his lance in front of him to fend it off. Click! A crisp sound rang out, and Han Qing's hardened treasure weapon gradually listed a crack. Boom! Han Qing violently sprayed out a mouthful of blood and instantly flew backwards. The breath of the firstborn dropped directly to a low point. If this were to come from just any chi refining stage, it would be able to kill him outright. Han Qing looked at Su Yan in the distance, his eyes filled with panic. Strong, too strong, strong beyond compare. Seeing that Han Shang was injured, the rest of them reacted and surrounded this senior brother of theirs. Senior brother, why don't we run? We're not even his match together. Within these people, the only one who could fight was Han Chang. Now that Han Qing had been seconded, they weren't going up to be properly beaten. Get lost. Go call Chan Mu over and tell him that I want to bring the Spirit Rising Assembly forward. And if he doesn't come, I'll personally go to the law enforcement hall to find him. At those words, Han Qing struggled to get up from the ground. Su Yan, don't be arrogant. The matter of you injuring you backing out 2 disciples' cultivation won't be settled like this. This matter is already known to the law enforcement elders, and they will be the ones to come next. I hope you'll still be so arrogant by then. Chapter 16, Magic Cultivator of the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect. Elder of the Law Enforcement Hall? Su Yan smiled faintly and did not pay any attention to it. Right now, Su Yan was thinking more about where to collect the materials to remodel his Yuaning. Remodeling the Yuaning was extremely risky and came with all sorts of dangers. But that's not even the most troubling. The most troublesome thing was those more special heavenly materials and treasures, which even if the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect had abundant resources, they wouldn't necessarily be able to put together. It seems like we still have to wait until the Spirit Rising Assembly begins. The Spirit Ascension Conference is divided into 2 parts. One of them is the Ascension Mystery Quest. This was a blessed land sandwiched between the cracks in the heavens and earth, within which the spiritual chi was strong and would also produce a unique kind of vitality chi. Spiritual chi is the world as a pure source of energy. The ordinary cultivator absorbed not only to enhance the qualifications, but also to wash the body. The formation of the latter-day spirit body. The secret realm would last for 30 days after opening, and the amount of vitality that could be grabbed would purely depend on one's strength. This kind of special treasure, Su Yan was naturally very interested in it. If he was able to obtain enough living spirit chi, perhaps his own innate sword bone could even receive a huge wave of enhancement. At the end of the secret realm of the living spirit, it was the battle for the Sword Sons. The 9 Sword Sons of the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect represented the strongest of the young generation of the Divine Heavenly Sword Sect. So naturally, they would not be fixed. Those who can afford it go up, and those who can't naturally fall down. And the status and position of a Sword Son, and the resources for cultivation, were all incomparable to other disciples. Even the highest-ranking pro-disciples were beyond their reach. As a result, there were few people who wanted Kenzie to fall down. Su Yan had also heard rumors that there were already quite a few people within the pro-disciples today who had reached the God Transformation realm. They were just waiting for the conference to start, and then snatched the position of Su Yan and a few other Yuaning realm Sword Sons. For now, of the 9 Sword Sons, only Jiang Chan and the 2 behind him were at the Yuaning realm, and were the challenge targets for all the remaining disciples. The previous few at the realm of God Transformation had long been in the position of Sword Son for many years. Cultivation was naturally more profound, with their strength to travel to the challenge. It doesn't count as natural. At this point, Jiang Chang could already imagine how many people would challenge him by then. Su Yan got a headache just thinking about it. Su Yan, the law enforcement hall master's order wants you to quickly go to the law enforcement hall. If the time does not arrive within 1 incense stick, you will personally go to the door to catch them. Su Yan, law enforcement hall master order. The sudden sound spread almost throughout the entire clan. The crowd of disciples came to their senses and looked at the golden color floating in the sky with surprised faces. In addition to the normal sound, there were a dozen large golden characters floating in the sky. Su Yan? Isn't that the 7th-ranked swordsman? What exactly has this Su Yan committed? To think that even the law enforcement hall master has personally taken action. Yes, the law enforcement hall master's personal message hasn't appeared for more than 10 years, right? TSK, 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 you guys still have the heart to guess here now. Why don't you just go straight to the law enforcement hall and watch? That's right, the law enforcement hall. In order to show their impartiality, let us participate in the trial process the entire time. Since we're interested, why don't we go together and take a look? Then gentlemen, we will go together. Many curious disciples were heading towards the law enforcement hall, all wanting to see what this Su Yan had done. It actually managed to make even the head of the law enforcement hall personally take action. After all, the general case is done by its internal deacon. Anything that could make the hallmaster personally take action must be some kind of great case. In the name of eating melons, the crowd swarmed into the mountain peak where the law enforcement hall was located. In response, those law enforcement hall disciples didn't do anything to stop them. They had gotten the news early on. On Spirit Wine Peak, Su Yan naturally heard the sound transmission in the air. Brother Su, will something happen? Jiang Shuyan looked at Su Yan with a worried expression. It's okay, I want to see what they want to do too. I'll be right back. Stay here for now. The words fell. Su Yan's figure turned into streams of light and sped towards the distance, and after making sure that Su Yan had left, a figure appeared from the void, looked at the formation at the center of Spirit Wine Peak, and slowly disappeared. Ha ha ha, this Tracy is really a dumbass, actually sending him back to me again. After getting the news about Kong Sukin from Xianyan, Xia Zhe couldn't help but laugh out loud. Jiang Shuyan is so important. This Su Yan actually brought it back in a big way. It's simply foolish. Third brother. That being said, Su Yan dared to bring him back, so she must be unafraid, and besides, within Spirit Wine Peak, there's no way for us to go and catch her out. Although Xianyan was also heartbroken, he also carried reason. For Su Yan to be able to bring Jiang Shuyan back, there must be some sort of plan present. He didn't believe that Su Yan was such a fool. Hearing Xianyan's words, Xia Zhe also fell into deep thought. After searching for a few moments, a hint of viciousness passed through Xia Zhe's eyes. Is he heading to the law enforcement hall now? Well, according to the information we received, he is already inside the law enforcement hall at this time. If that's the case, then we'll personally get our hands on her and pull her out. Seizing his Dao body origin, hearing his own third brother's words, Xianyan's eyes widened. Seizing the origin of the Dao body. This was a demonic practice in the cultivation world. There's no harm. It's not like we need to make a move. Let those guys do it. If they succeed, they'll be able to get the Dao body origin. If they fail, it's nothing to do with us. Xia Zhe coldly smiled and said without a care in the world. Xianyan sighed and archly went down to make preparations. At this moment, within a certain retreat room of the Divine Heavenly Sword sect, a youthful young man who was in seclusion opened his eyes violently. A spirit tablet emitting a pitch-black demonic aura floated in front of him. The young man's face flushed and he hastily reached out to catch the token. A message passed down the token into the mind. The teenager sighed and turned his head to look at his cave somewhat lingeringly. When he turned around again, the pitch-black demonic aura shrouded his entire body into a black cloak. The cloak wrapped around the teenager and disappeared into a black glow. In the meantime, by a waterfall in the valley, a man with a resolute face and a muscular body was enduring the impact of the waterfall to hammer his flesh. Under the impact of the waterfall, the man's flesh became more solid and powerful. Phew! Suddenly, the youth's eyes snapped open, his gaze fixed on the black token in front of him. This is a message from His Excellency. Looks like my time lurking here is over. The youth sighed softly and got up from the ground with some lingering interest. After getting dressed, the pitch-black demonic aura similarly wrapped it and carried it away from here. Such a scene occurred in many places within the Divine Sky Sword sect. Apart from the outer disciples, even within those inner disciples there were quite a few auras belonging to demonic cultivators appearing, and they all have the same goal. Spirit Wine Peak. Chapter 17, Trial? That's it? Su Yan, do you know your offense? Inside the law enforcement hall, the hall master was high at the top, his gaze stern as he looked at the figures below, and there was another female figure kneeling next to it. At this time Chun Ro shuttle white long skirt, eyes red, exquisite face is full of aggrieved posture, like a tender little white flower. Elder, I have no grudges against senior brother Su Yan, yet he wasted my cultivation for no reason. I still hope that Elder will make a decision for me. Chan Ro said pitifully. Paired with a long dress and that unique temperament, it was completely the image of a soft woman who was being bullied, looking at the surrounding disciples with pity. Hearing Chan Ro's words, the law enforcement hall master once again opened his mouth to question. Su Yan, is he telling the truth? Yes, senior brother Su Yan, if this is really your doing, admit it sooner rather than later. With senior brother Su Yan's ability and talent, I'm sure the sect won't punish you too much. Senior brother Su Yan speak, did you do it or not? Listening to the slightly reprimanding words of the people around him, Su Yan looked at the little cutie's gaze swept towards the crowd, and when they were gazed at by Su Yan's gaze, they lowered their heads again, not daring to meet their eyes. Jiang Chen was speechless. These people are so brainless too. Could they be unaware of my involvement with Chen Ro? Su Yan shook his head helplessly and turned his head to look at the law enforcement hall masters on both sides. This matter was indeed my doing, and besides I didn't just waste her one, I wasted the other. Hearing Su Yan's words, the people around him were struck by lightning. It was completely unexpected that Su Yan would personally open his mouth and admit it, and even say that there was another person who was the victim. This left the crowd a bit puzzled. The law enforcement hall master was also frowning. Then tell me why you struck out at them. Do you know that abolishing the cultivation of a fellow disciple is not allowed within the sect? It is a felony. The words fell. A terrifying aura erupted from the law enforcement hall master's body and pressed towards Su Yan. I just got my own stuff back. What's wrong with that? Su Yan did not show any weakness as he raised his head and locked eyes with the law enforcement hall master, his aura working crazily. Sensing Su Yan's aura, the law enforcement hall master was also slightly stunned. I didn't expect this brat's strength to grow again, and I'm afraid that this session of the conference will go even further. But why isn't his spiritual energy fluctuation much different from that of a Yuaning? Strength got qualitatively changed, and often it was a breakthrough in cultivation. However, the law enforcement hall master realized that Su Yan's cultivation was still at the stage of Yuaning. Su Yan, my cultivation was all practiced by me step by step. What does it have to do with you? Shenrou looked at Su Yan and said in a compassionate tone. I joined the sect for 5 years and went through countless trials and tribulations before I was able to obtain the resources to be promoted to Jindan. But you ruined my cultivation once and for all. And now you're saying that I got my cultivation from you. You're simply too insulting. Shenrou stubbornly looked at Su Yan, completely looking like she was miserably bullied by Su Yan. Ha! Su Yan hummed lightly, his gaze disdainfully looking at Shenrou. What's the matter? You're taking all the precious spirits I've given you over the past few years as your own. Have you forgotten how many exotic treasures I've given you over the years and how many spirit stones I've given you? Even the pills you needed to form the Golden Dan were provided for you by me. Without the help of my resources, with your 3 spirit root qualification, how can you still advance to Jindan within 5 years? It's simply a dream. Being directly poked through by Su Yan, Shenrou's face gradually became a bit taut. What does it matter to me that you gave these to me voluntarily? Seeing that Shenrou was still talking tough, Su Yan snorted. Wasn't it you who kept pretending in front of me? I said that I've been unable to make a breakthrough and lacked some sort of resources, thus enticing me to help you obtain them. If I remember correctly, all the materials consumed in hitting the gold-striped sword you're using now were from you asking me for them. Were you the one who led me to give it to you by being next to me all the time and saying that you lacked certain things? Humph. You're being sophomoric. Shenrou wrapped her arms around herself as if she had caught a loophole in Su Yan's language. You said yourself that I didn't ask you for them directly, so they were given to me voluntarily and had nothing to do with me. Su Yan shook his head and directly slapped his face. Snap! Crisp rattling sounds resonated through the room. Shenrou was directly slapped out. The surrounding disciples were just about to step forward when they were stopped by the nearby law enforcement elder. Through the conversation between the two, anyone who wasn't a cutie can all guess some reason. Even those disciples above who had come to watch the show were repenting in their hearts. They had just helped this White Lotus slander Su Yan, and were now feeling guilty for what they had just said and done. The law enforcement hall master's mind also understood the general idea, but the rules of the law enforcement hall cannot be broken. Su Yan, even so, you shouldn't destroy others' cultivation. Your punishment won't be less, but on account of the fact that you've also done credit for the clan all these years, this punishment will be deferred. It will be enforced on you when the convention is over. The law enforcement hall master's sudden words caused the surrounding people to freeze. Those disciples looked at the law enforcement hall master with confused faces. No, we came to see a movie and this is what you're showing us? The few law enforcement elders below were also a bit puzzled at the moment. In the past, as long as the head of the law enforcement hall personally made a move, basically, it is not a heavy punishment, but it will also make them lie in bed for 6 months and not be able to get down. But today this punishment is almost like making peace. It didn't do any substantial damage to Su Yan at all. Even Su Yan looked at the law enforcement hall master with some doubt. The head of the law enforcement hall had taken out the hall master's order to pronounce Su Yan's sentence, and it actually ended with such a scribble? How can this be? Hall master, he has wasted my Jindan. There is another person. How can you be so biased? Shenrou came back to her senses from her daze, and immediately said in an aggravated manner. The law enforcement hall master glanced at Shenrou and slowly spoke. I have made up my mind on this matter, and there is no need to discuss it further. If there is anyone who is not convinced, he may be allowed to come to me to his heart's content. Hearing this, the crowd scrunched their necks. The head of the law enforcement hall is a harmonization realm powerhouse. Who dares to go up and hold him accountable? Isn't that going up and looking for death? When the law enforcement hall master's slap falls, you'll still owe him a dozen lives. But, Shenrou was about to say something when the law enforcement hall master swept over with a glance. A huge aura directly enveloped its body, pressurizing Shenrou to the point where she couldn't breathe. Okay, everyone disperse. And so it was, a trial that ended inexplicably. Su Yan was also a bit puzzled. Suddenly, Su Yan's face turned a little ugly. Noticing that the formation he had set up had been broken, Su Yan immediately turned into a ray of light and disappeared in place. Only the stupefied Shenrou remained in the entire empty hall. Why won't any of them help me? Chapter 18, The Origin of the Taoist Body. Spirit Wine Peak. I didn't realize that we would actually regroup here. A dozen figures wrapped in black robes appeared above the clouds, looking down at the mountains below. exposing our identities within the divine heavenly sword sect. With our cultivation levels, it can be said that we will die 10 deaths. Gentlemen, are you really willing to die here like this? At the very back of the crowd, a slightly petite figure opened her mouth and asked, Shun Ma, is it possible that you really consider yourself a disciple of the divine heavenly sword sect? A man smiled coldly, arms wrapped around him. The scarlet eyes under the black robe looked indifferently at the woman who spoke. If you're not willing to do it, you can choose to go ahead and confess your identity right now, and see if the divine heavenly sword sect will let you leave alive. And see if they're disgusted with your identity as a demonic cultivator or if they're willing to accommodate your identity as a disciple of the sect. Hearing the man's words, the cool woman no longer retorted. Devil cultivators could almost be said to be the existence of everyone in this continent, especially in this divine heavenly sword sect. As one of the top sects of the righteous path, they naturally wouldn't let go of any demonic cultivator. Well, instead, let's finish the mission first, and if there's a chance, we might even be able to run out of here. The voice located at the front spoke. The crowd then immediately flew towards Spirit Wine Peak. Looking at the strange formation, the few people directly started attacking without saying a word. However, their demonic aura fell on the formation and was quickly dispersed. It didn't make the slightest impact. Seeing this, the demonic cultivator in the lead immediately took out a demonic bead emitting a black glow from his storage ring. As the magic bead landed on that formation, it instantly erupted with terrifying magic power. It quickly attached itself to this formation and began to corrode it. As the crowd watched, a gap large enough to accommodate a person's size appeared in front of several people. Go! A few people shifted and went straight through the hole into the inner area. And at this time, Zhang Shuyan happened to be in the courtyard. Flipping through the books left behind by Su Yan heard a sudden sound of movement outside, and immediately looked toward the sky. It's you guys! Feeling the bizarre and evil aura of a few people, Zhang Shuyan's face changed drastically. Having spent more than a month in that devil's cave, Zhang Shuyan was naturally very familiar with this kind of aura. But Zhang Shuxian hadn't expected that these demonic cultivators would actually charge straight into the divine heavenly sword sect in order to capture themselves. I let you run away before, now you won't have a chance. With the terrifying demonic aura wrapping around her entire body, a pained look appeared on Zhang Shuyan's face. The demonic aura wrap directly brought Zhang Shuxian to the front of several demonic cultivators. Hurry up and do it. The magic pearl won't last long. One person immediately stepped out from the crowd, holding a strange curved blade that emitted a blue glow. Looking at a few people, a bit of sadness flowed from Zhang Shuyan's eyes. Still dying here? To think that Su Yan saved himself from the demon cave, only to die himself. I'm sorry, brother Su. Looks like I can't get away with it after all. Phew! Dazzling blue light blossomed in front of Kong Sukin's eyes, and intense pain came from her chest. Whoops! The damage that hit the soul directly caused Kong Sukin to stifle a pain sound. A wound large enough to have across the body immediately appeared at Zhang Shuyan's chest. Within that wound, a dazzling light was revealed. The demonic cultivator in the lead immediately reached out and probed into it. In Zhang Shuyan's pained voice, a light ball emitting a colorful glow was pulled out by the demonic cultivator. This thing is the Tao body origin? The people around them were also seeing this for the first time and couldn't help but watch it. Well, if you don't want to die, get out of here. The demonic cultivator casually tossed it. Zhang Shuyan's body fell to the ground like a broken porcelain doll, her breath dropping to a low point, her life force continuously draining away. On the verge of death, the devil cultivator and the others then quickly fled the place through the gap where the magic bead had shattered. But having just arrived over Spirit Wine Peak, a few of you, entering my Spirit Wine Peak without even saying hello and wanting to leave peacefully, I'm afraid it's a bit inappropriate. Emotionless voices resounded around them. Several people wanted to escape, but realized that they were inexplicably imprisoned in place. No good. It's Su Yan returning. Hearing this familiar voice, but anyone who knew a little bit about it immediately guessed who the visitor was. How could this be? Didn't he say that he went to the law enforcement hall and couldn't return for half an hour? How would I know? I'm not from the law enforcement hall. As several people struggled, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the crowd. The terrifying aura increased once more, directly shocking a few people into spitting blood from their mouths. Bastard! I'd like to see just how strong you are as a swordsman. With a roar, a demonic cultivator directly burned the essence blood in his body and erupted a terrifying demonic aura. Countless demonic chi gathered in the sky, coloring the surrounding sky black. In the midst of the darkness, huge palms covered it. Die for me! Looking at the terrifyingly powerful hand field, the rest of the people also showed surprise in their eyes. As long as Su Yan dared to make a move to fend off this attack, then they would be able to seize the opportunity to quickly escape. In the crowd's expectant gaze, Jiang Cheng slowly raised his head to look at the gradually falling palm. Break! The words fell. Su Yan released a powerful sword chi around his body. Brilliant white light gradually bloomed, protesting with that horrible black gas division. And the sharp sword aura transformed into a dawn-breaking sword born in the left dawn. The swords and palms clashed. Boom! Accompanied by a huge roar. The monstrous palm was crushed by the longsword in just an instant. The longsword fell into that terrifying cloud layer, blossoming a powerful sword chi towards the surrounding. The sword chi raged, gradually dispersing that black cloud. Then, the powerful aura backfired. The disciple who made the move was devoured by the demonic energy in just the blink of an eye and died violently on the spot. It's your turn next. Su Yan's gaze fell on the man in the lead. An intense chill erupted from his eyes as he looked at the Tao body origin clutched in his hand. Su Yan pointed out with a finger. An intense sword chi spread out at once. It transformed into a sharp blade, covering all of them. Shoo shoo shoo. The sound of sword chi entering the body kept ringing out. Just in the blink of an eye all of them died. And that Tao body origin slowly floated in the air. Just as Jiang Chang was about to make a move to lift it, he suddenly felt a powerful aura coming from behind him. The moment Su Yan turned to dodge, the figure directly grabbed the Tao body origin to quickly flee towards the distance. Su Yan Jianzi, if you don't make a move to save her, she's afraid that she won't live long enough to burn half an incense stick. The smug voice came from the distance. Su Yan's footsteps lurched, and then he struck a reaction in the direction where the mysterious figure had disappeared. Su Yan himself came to Jiang Shuyan's side to check the exact situation. Su Yan took out an elixir to temporarily stabilize Jiang Shuyan's injuries first, then immediately disappeared in place. Chapter 19, Why Can't a Prince Be Killed? Well, is there any news of the elder? Shazar stood in the room pacing back and forth anxiously, around the fact that he had been pampered for many years as a prince of the great Xia dynasty. Still, he couldn't help but feel anxious when he thought about acting today. Not that he was afraid of the repercussions that would follow this. Instead, he was afraid that a few people would miss and be caught by Su Yan. The lives of these devil cultivator disciples were inconsequential to him. What he wanted was which Tao body origin. Originally, Xia Zhe had planned to leave Jiang Shushan within the Devil's Cave and then cultivate his own forces. With the ability of this Tao body, given enough time, he would be completely able to create a team of geniuses. Unfortunately, all of these plans were destroyed by Su Yan. He also had no choice but to break down and just do the grabbing and then incorporate the physique into his body. Your Highness, do not dishonor me. At that moment, a middle-aged man wearing a black robe hurriedly came from outside. What he held in his hand was the very Tao body origin that Xia Zhe had his heart set on. Xia Zhe received the origin with an excited face, and only after making sure there wasn't the slightest problem did he turn his head to look at the middle-aged man. Where's Suyin? He should be back, right? Asked Su Yan. A trace of disdain gradually appeared on the middle-aged man's face. With his ability he would have had a chance to catch me, but he went straight back to Spirit Wine Peak in order to take care of that woman. Don't worry, Your Highness. I definitely didn't bring disaster to Your Highness. And he didn't see my formation and couldn't find it here. Xia Zhe's eyes flashed slightly, and there was an unknown meaning in his tone. In that case, you're the only one who knows about this. The middle-aged man's face froze. Then he knew what Xia Zhe was thinking and immediately opened his mouth to assure him. Don't worry, Your Highness. I've followed you for several years. I'll rot this matter in my stomach, and even if I die, I won't reveal half a word. Really? Then you can go to hell. Xia Zhe slapped his palm on the man's chest, and in his horrified gaze, a terrifying force exploded inside his body, directly exploding into a cloud of blood mist. Only a dead man can keep a secret without reservation. After doing everything, Xia Zhe excitedly looked at the origin in his hand and directly turned around to enter the secret room, preparing to close the door. Suddenly, a powerful aura fell from the sky, directly enveloping the entire compound. That stupid bastard. Xia Zhe didn't need to think about it to know that the one who appeared outside was definitely Su Yan himself. Xia Zhe wanted to revive that middle-aged man at this point and then slash him a few times. You can't even do such a small thing, right? And you're still swearing to yourself. Outside, Su Yan floated in mid-air, his terrifying aura gradually falling, and a strand of sword chi blossomed out from his hand, shooting towards that compound. Unbridled, a furious chorus of voices rang out. An old man in official robes appeared in front of Su Yan, his cold eyes staring fiercely at Su Yan. Little thing do you know that this is the residence of my great Xia royal family down here. You actually dare to rob the wrong one. Are you not looking for death? If it's outside. The old man didn't even want to say much to Su Yan, and directly just made a move to slap Su Yan to death. But not here. This was the Divine Sky Immortal sect. Even he had to be polite here. A place like the Divine Beast Sword sect would not have allowed the existence of her type of Tao protectors in the first place. However, it would indeed not be easy to explain if something happened to the Imperial Sun in the Divine Sky Sword sect. That's why he was able to have a Tao protector placed beside Xia Zhe. Otherwise, If he dared to step into this place, he would have died many times already. Just like now, even if he knew that Su Yan's visitor was not on top, there was no way for him to directly strike to suppress him. This was an ordinary disciple. He might have been able to fight just fine, but the one who came was Su Yan, and the one who came was the divine heavenly sword sect's sword son, so he had even less guts. If he dared to strike Swordy here, he was slapping the divine sky sword sect's face. Old piker, this matter has nothing to do with you, get the hell out of my way. Su Yan had already killed the transformation god stage, and now he had no fear in killing another one, but he was now more interested in getting the Tao body origin back. Boom! In a flash, the sky blossomed with eerie blue electric light. The terrifying aura continued to spread, enveloping the entire mountain peak in its entirety. What's the situation? Boom! Throughout the mountain peak. The others were a bit confused when they felt this sudden change. What's going on? Is it hard to believe that it's going to thunder? But that doesn't seem to have much to do with thunder, does it? Just as countless disciples were curious, the rolling black clouds gradually converged on a courtyard. Kid, since you're not willing to leave, don't blame the old immortal. I will injure you and subsequently send you back to Spirit Wine Peak. Subsequently, the old man controlled the black cloud to release countless thunderbolts that fell towards Su Yan. A bucket-like column of electricity seemed to be destroying everything. Since you want to die, I'll give you a hand. In a blink of an eye, Su Yan's eyes became sharp, and his entire person was like a sharp sword out of its sheath. Powerful suggestions keep coming out concurrently. It transformed into a 100-meter-long white giant sword and charged straight towards the thunder in the sky. Boom! Terrifying power suddenly erupted. A terrifying impact was unleashed in a loud roar. That old man was directly sent flying out by this powerful force. On the contrary, Su Yan was still standing in the same place without being affected in the slightest. You brat! You're obviously just a yuaning well. Why do you have such a powerful strength? Looking at Su Yan, who didn't even change his breath, the old man was completely dumbfounded. Sure, the two of us haven't switched our cultivation levels? Why do I get the feeling you're more like the realm of the transfigured god? While the old man was hesitating, Su Yan's attack had already arrived in front of him. The powerful sword intent completely enveloped the old man. Enduring the sharp edge of countless sword chi, the old man directly fell towards the ground, his life and death unknown. Su Yan then looked towards the mansion and swung out a sword once again. Boom! The sword chi fell, destroying the entire mansion in just an instant. Whoa! Amidst a shattering sound, a figure violently rushed out from the ground. Su Yan, you're too deceitful. At this moment, Xiaozhe was like a lion that had exploded its hair, looking at Su Yan angrily. The scarlet eyes seemed as if they wanted to devour Su Yan. Sizing up Xiaozhe for a moment, Su Yan's eye membranes narrowed slightly, his body's coldness deepening. Su Yan, what exactly are you trying to do by forcing your way into my mansion and killing my protector? Hand it over or I'll come and get it myself. At those words, Xiaozhe's face froze, then he laughed out loud. Although it hadn't been a long time, just a moment ago he had fused all of the Tao body origin into his body. Now what Su Yan said was simply a dream to him. Su Yan, I don't know what you're talking about. Get the hell out of here, or else I don't mind letting the law enforcement hall intervene. Ugh, how come you just don't want to listen when you're talking properly? Su Yan shook his head helplessly and directly slashed his sword towards Xiaozhe. It's just a prince, why can't you kill him? Chapter 20, Reclaiming the Origin of the Tao Body. Seeing Su Yan striking out without saying a word, Xiaozhe's brows furrowed as he quickly fell backward towards the back. Su Yan, do you know what you are doing? I'm the imperial prince of Grand Xia, dare to touch me. Even your master can't protect you. If you withdraw your hand now, this prince will pretend that nothing has happened. Xiaozhe dodged Su Yan's attack while speaking out but said, at the same time the heart was stifled to the core. Although he had fused the Yuan Ling Tao body origin, Xiaozhe had no way, in a short period of time, to master the power within. If one were to use one's own Gongfu aura, it might instead result in a situation where the two spiritual forces collided. When that happens, a lot of irreversible damage can be done. What? As a prince, why don't you dare to make a move? Is it because you're afraid that the two spiritual forces will collide with each other? Listening to Su Yan's mockery, Number One's face turned blue. If it's not yours, don't feel free to take it with your hands. Since you can't keep your hands to yourself so well, I'll chop him up for you. Su Yan's terrifying aura around him once again erupted. Xiaozhe's face was extremely ugly, and just as he gritted his teeth and prepared to make a move, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. There was something wrong with Su Yan's spiritual energy. When a cultivator went all out, he could judge the enemy's cultivation by the fluctuation of his opponent's aura and thus his cultivation. However, in Xiaozhe's perception, the Su Yan in front of him only had the aura fluctuations of the early Yuan-ing realm. One must know that of the 9 sword sons, the last 3 sword sons, including Su Yan, were all at the peak of the Yuaning realm. Although he didn't know why Su Yan still maintained the strength of a reverse-falling transformation god even though his cultivation realm had dropped, but the differences also allowed Shazar to find a counterattack. And at this moment, because the fluctuations of the two fighting were too great, there were already quite a few sect disciples gathering towards this place. Watching them come over, Xia Zhe immediately shouted out, "Bold Su Yan, actually colluding with demonic cultivators to brutally murder my Dashimo imperial son. What crime should you be guilty of? What the hell?" The surrounding disciples who had just arrived froze on the spot when they heard Xia Zhe's words. The sword son of the divine heavenly sword sect colluded with a demonic cultivator to kill the emperor? What's going on here? Not waiting for the crowd to hesitate, Shazar continued to call out, "Senior brothers, this Su Yan has colluded with a demonic cultivator to already kill my Dao protector. I still hope that you all will join me in making a joint effort to exterminate this person." With Xia Zhe's guidance, the crowd realized that there was a figure lying on the ruins. Regarding the means used by Xia Zhe, Su Yan just shook his head helplessly. Thought Shazar could do something. Just this? Su Yan simply did not give Xia Zhe the chance to continue to argue. The sharp sword intent penetrated his body and instantly enveloped Xia Zhe. Grass. Feeling the powerful force contained in Su Yan's sword, Xia Zhe also had to stop his action of continuing persuasion to directly use his sword intent to resist. But just as Xia Zhe mobilized the aura in his body, another aura that did not belong to him quickly swam through the meridians. Two different auras collided with each other. Xia Zhe's face immediately turned red, and he was directly shocked out of his internal injuries. And at that moment that sword chi also came in front of his body. Boom! With a muffled sound, Xia Zhe was directly smashed to the ground by Su Yan's sword. At this time, Xia Zhe Echo's breath was shriveled, and he was already getting less air in and more air out. Su Yan arrived in front of Xia Zhe and directly stabbed his chest with a sword in his terrified gaze. "Stop it! Su Yan, do you realize what you're doing? Xia Zhe is the prince of the great Xia dynasty. If you dare to make a move, you will definitely bring disaster to yourself and your family. That's right, if you dare to make a move, even the divine sky sword sect will be greatly affected." Su Yan, still don't stop and apologize to Xia Zhe. Otherwise don't blame us for making a move to call for your capture. One by one, the disciples immediately surrounded Su Yan and verbally attacked him. The words were powerful, but not a single person dared to step forward to stop Su Yan. Listening to their words, Su Yan was bluntly bored and directly stabbed his sword into Xia Zhe. Rip! A sound of blood and flesh tearing rang out, and the people around them looked dumbfounded. Rueli's long sword slashed through, with great ease, the body of Xia Zhe's transformation god realm. Feeling the immense pain coming from his body, Xia Zhe couldn't help but let out a roar. "Su Yan, wait for me. I will definitely not let you go. I will definitely kill you." Ah! Another sharp pain came, and Shazar hissed louder, only to see Su Yan extend his hand and probe into number 1. A few breaths later, a ball of light that emitted a stream of 7-colored light was taken out by Su Yan. The colorful flow of the light mass converged and transformed into the appearance of a drop of golden blood. Inside this was the origin of the Dao body, condensing all of the Dao rhythm of the Dao body. Looking at the drops of golden blood, the surrounding people couldn't help but gulp. I don't know how. They could feel a pang of longing welling up in their hearts. It was as if another voice was telling them that they must get that drop of golden blood. That blood will be the greatest opportunity of their lives, and once they get it their future will be worry-free. At this moment, there were already several unsuspecting gazes landing on Su Yan. Su Yan, however, was unconcerned and flipped his hand to retrieve the origin. Seeing Xia Zhe on the ground like a dead dog, who would have thought that it would be the third sword son of the divine heavenly sword sect, Xia Zhe, who possessed the cultivation of the spirit transformation realm. "You, wait for me. I will not let you go. I'll be waiting for you." Su Yan smiled faintly and once again reached out towards Xia Zhe's body. "What else do you want to do? It's said that you have a sword bone inside you, so as compensation for this time, give it to me to use. You shouldn't mind, right? You. Ah!" Xia Zhe was about to say something when the intense pain came again, and he directly let out a wail. It was a matter of a few breaths of time, and Su Yan once again had a piece of sword bone in his hand that emitted a white glow. Only after doing this did Su Yan leave in satisfaction. Xia Zhe, who was lying on the ground, had completely fainted. The last moment he closed his eyes, Shazar was still thinking in his mind about how to get revenge back. He was a god transformation stage powerhouse, and as a result, he was actually beaten up to this point by an early stage Yuaning. Even his own sword bone was taken away. Su Yan, today's revenge will not end in death. Only after Su Yan's figure completely disappeared did the other people come back from their shock and rush forward to carry Xia Zhe away. They could also guess from what they saw today that something big was about to happen to the divine heavenly sword sect. When Xia Zhe's sword bone was taken, his cultivation was bound to fall, and a sword son rank 3rd was just wasted. If it was an ordinary disciple, it would be fine, but the Qi Xia was the imperial son of this great Xia dynasty. Even the Divine Heavenly Sword sect would not easily spare Su Yan this time. The Divine Heavenly Sword sect was really going to change the sky this time, and the news of Xia quickly spread towards the surrounding peaks, gradually trickling down to the ears of the contemporary Divine Heavenly Sword sect patriarch. Soon, the patriarch was also dumbfounded. Chapter 21, The Wine Taoist. Jiang Shang, the strongest of the previous generation. What did you say? Su Yan killed the great Xia dynasty's god transformation stage and also siphoned off Xia's sword bone. Patriarch Yang Wushuang violently stood up from his chair and looked at the elder below who had passed on the message with a shocked expression. That's right. This matter was seen by many disciples, and now there are already rumors that Su Yan has cultivated the devil's way technique, and that's why he's become so cruel. Upon hearing this, Yang Wushuang sat back in his chair with a headache. Alas, this is going to be a big deal. The great Xia imperial dynasty's side will definitely send someone to raise hell. Looking at Yang Wushuang's disheveled appearance, the elder could not help but persuade him. Don't worry, patriarch, maybe things aren't that bad. We can probably save ourselves the trouble by having Su Yan return the items. That kid has dared to do it directly within the clan. You think he'll return it? Elder scratched his head in embarrassment. It seems to make so much sense, but there's no need for you to worry too much. Patriarch, after all, with our Divine Heavenly Sword sect we're not afraid of his great Summer Imperial dynasty either. You think I'm afraid of his great Xia dynasty? Yang Wushuang rested a glance at the elder with an inexplicable meaning in his expression. His great Xia dynasty is going to be in chaos itself in a short while. How could he have the heart to care about us? It's Uncle Jiang that I'm afraid of. The elder was instantly dazed. The Uncle Jiang in Yang Wushuang's mouth was originally named Jiang Shang, and was Xia's master. Extremely powerful, only one step away from stepping into the Mahayana stage. 5 years ago, when Ancestor Divine Heavenly Sky went out on a long journey to find a breakthrough method, he passed the position of the sect to Yang Wushuang. However, at that time, the most qualified ones were Jiang Shang and several other cultivators who had reached the perfection of the harmonization stage. As a result, it had fallen on him, an early stage of the harmonization realm. Such a result will naturally not satisfy others, especially Jiang Shang, who didn't want to pull him down at all times and then sit on the patriarch's seat himself. And these 5 years were not short. Jiang Shang's cultivation might have already advanced a step further. At that time, the entire Divine Heavenly Sword sect would have to face a disaster. Forget it. The people behind Su Yan aren't simple anyway. Let them make a mess on their own. Yang Wushuang waved his hand for the elder to retreat. Then he himself closed his eyes and rested his mind. Spirit Wine Peak. Just after returning to the small courtyard, Su Yan realized that something was wrong. The smell of alcohol, which had originally been isolated from the outside, once again filled the small courtyard at this moment. Natsuzawa, who was originally lying on the ground, had also been lost. Su Yan's eyes narrowed slightly as he released his spiritual energy and explored towards the hut. Bang! However, the powerful aura only spread to the vicinity of the small courtyard before it was dispersed by another powerful force. Brat! Just a few years of absence and you want to kill your teacher. With a hoarse sound, a figure staggered and appeared at the entrance of the small courtyard. The wine Taoist held a gourd in his hand and leaned shakily against the door. Master, you came out of seclusion. Seeing the wine Taoist, a rare smile spread across Su Yan's face. Wine Taoist, real name unknown, Spirit Wine Peak Master. His greatest pleasure in life is drinking. When he brought Su Yan into the Divine Heavenly Sword sect back then, he didn't choose to accept him either. It was Su Yan who was hesitant to leave, which was why he stayed at Spirit Wine Peak. During the past few years at Spirit Wine Peak, Taoist Wineman had treated Jiang Chun quite well, and to some extent, he had also brought a little bit of favoritism. As long as it was what Su Yan needed, he would try his best to help him get it. Su Yan's feats and arts were all taught by him alone. In his previous life, he also worked very hard because of this, wanting to make Spirit Wine Peak flourish. However, Spirit Wine Peak was only a technique peak after all. Unlike those 36 main peaks, not only did they have all sorts of cultivation resources, they also had specialized elders to teach them. As for Spirit Wine Peak, other than the bamboo forests that filled the mountains as well as the materials for brewing wine, there were no other resources for cultivation. Thus, even if Su Yan achieved the position of Sword Son, no disciple was willing to join. After all, most people joined the Divine Heavenly Sword sect to cultivate and pursue longevity. Who would idly and purposely come to learn how to make wine? This was also one of the reasons why Su Yan brought Jiang Shuyan here, sort of fulfilling a dream of his predecessor. And with Su Yan's ability, and Jiang Shuyan, it wasn't that difficult to develop Spirit Wine Peak from a parochial front to the main peak one. This is a big trouble you've brought to master instead. The wine Taoist took a sip of wine and looked at Su Yan with a smile through his cloudy eyes. Su Yan smiled awkwardly. You should have retrieved the things in that female doll's body. Right. Take it out and let me see. What in the world is it that can actually make those people breathe and expose themselves personally? Under Taoist wine's curious gaze, Su Yan took out the Tao body origin. Seeing the golden blood in Su Yan's hand, even though the wine Taoist had practiced for hundreds of years and had seen countless opportunities and treasures, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cool air. It's actually a Yuan Ling Tao body. No wonder it's willing to pay such a large price. Oh, so it seems that the person who did it was definitely a cutie. The wine Taoist was in a happy mood as he took another large gulp of wine. Green Spirit Peak. Within an extremely hidden secret room, a middle-aged figure sitting cross-legged suddenly opened his eyes. Master, Qingling Peak has been humiliated. I still hope that Master can offer himself to do justice for us. Listening to the voices outside, the middle-aged man's face was unhappy. Cultivation is the most avoidable way of disturbing other people's seclusion. Humph, taught for hundreds of years. Simply learned from a dog's stomach. With a thought, the middle-aged man's figure disappeared in place, and when he reappeared he had already arrived outside the secret room. Looking at the group of disciples kneeling on the ground, the middle-aged man frowned, and the anger that had originally burned up in his heart gradually dissipated down as he waved the floating sinker in his hand, lifting everyone up. What has happened to make you and others gather here so? Something big of some sort had happened after all that could bring so many people to their knees. Master, here's the thing. Qingling Peak's eldest disciple Su Qing, Zhang Shang's personal disciple, stood out. He had watched the fight between Su Yan and Xia Zhe, and immediately said everything he knew. Of course, one cannot help but add one's own emotions to the mix. After all, Xia Zhe was also a person within their peak, and being punched was equivalent to punching all of them in the face. So, just one Yuaning stage broke into our Green Spirit Peak to kill and waste a transformation god. And you guys don't even dare to fart? Zhang Shang looked at the crowd coldly, his eyes filled with dislike. These kneeling people, Jin Dan Yuaning are all there. If they go together, consume also can consume Yuaning. As a result, a group of people were just there to watch him kill. It was simply wasteful to the core. And listening to Zhang Shang's angry scolding, the crowd didn't dare to raise their heads to speak at all. Most people were actually confused by then. After all, they were all from the same sect. Who could have thought that Su Yan would strike so hard? Su Yan. I remember he's from Spirit Wine Peak. Right. Zhang Shang's eyes narrowed slightly, and after some thought, he was prepared to go and check on Xia Zhe's situation first. Chapter 22, New Signature. Desolate Ancient Sword Tablet. Zhang Shang came to Xia Zhe's room, and to his eyes was an extremely miserable body lying on the bed. Even after being repaired by the elixir, the horrifying sword wound at the chest still hadn't been healed. Wastes, all a bunch of wastes. When I was raising you, I had all kinds of resources at my fingertips, but now I can't even get you to save anyone. Hurry up and do something about it, or you're all going to die for me. Feeling his third brother's gradually weakening breath, Xianyan was like a furious lion, lashing out at those physicians behind him. A single physician shivered and could only complain helplessly in the face of Xianyan's angry words. What the Third Highness needs are items that can restore his vitality, but none of ours have those right now, and the pills refined within the sect don't have much effect on him either. We can only wait for a few elders to practice the pills out. As a top-tier sect, the Divine Sky Sword sect naturally had an alchemy hall. However, Sanxia's injuries were from the wounds of the origin, and unusual pills and spirits were not part of the treatment. Although the Divine Heavenly Sword sect was powerful, it had only been established for 100 years, so it really wasn't very sufficient in terms of its heritage. It was indeed a bit difficult to get the herbs to cure Xia Zhe in a short period of time. Dumbass are excuses. If you can't do it, get me someone else. Xianyan's scarlet eyes stared deathly at the several people, as if he was about to decapitate them in the next moment. Xianyan, it's not in your style to be so agitated. Hearing the sudden sound, Xianyan's body trembled and quickly turned his head to look in the direction the sound came from. A look of joy appeared on the dumbfounded face. Master Jiang. In the early years, Zhang Shang traveled to the Dixia imperial dynasty to realize the Great Tao. At that time, Zhang Shang had bonded with Elephant Huang Tu, and in the time to come he had often traveled to the imperial capital of Daxia as a guest, familiarizing himself with the many royal princes within it. Within the many peak masters of the Divine Heavenly Sword sect, Zhang Shang was the most biased towards the Great Xia dynasty. Therefore, after Xia Zhe worshipped the Divine Heavenly Sword sect, Zhang Shang then treated him as his personal disciple and taught him carefully. If Xianyan hadn't joined during his time of seclusion, he was afraid that he would have become his personal disciple by now. Master Jiang, please also save third brother. These guys are not capable at all. Speaking of which, The next year stole another metaphorical coloration towards these alchemists. A few people secretly grumbled, but there was no way to refute it. Coming to Xiaoze's side, Zhang Shan kept pointing at Xiaoze's forehead, injecting a trace of spirit and checking the injuries in his body. Soon, Zhang Shan's face grew ugly as well. I didn't expect the Su Yan to be so vicious that he actually took away the sword bone in Xiaoze's body as well. Zhang Shan was still a bit unconvinced when he heard those disciples tell him earlier. For Xiaoze, Zhang Shan had long ago probed his physique, and other than the 10,000 Laws sword bone, there was nothing else special about him. However, those disciples said that there was another physique within Xiaoze's body, and combined that with his understanding of Xiaoze. It was probably Xiaoze who had seized someone's physique and implanted it into his own body, and was finally reclaimed by Su Yan. However, Zhang Shan really didn't expect that Su Yan would actually dare to take away the bones inside Xiaoze's body as well. Having lost the 10,000 Laws sword bone, Xiaoze's talent realm had also fallen. Now lying in bed his cultivation had fallen to the Yuaning realm. Zhang Shan sighed and slowly withdrew his hand, facing Xian Yan's expectant gaze beside him. Zhang Shan could only helplessly shake his head. I can save him, but the talent and realm within him is beyond redemption. All of you go out first, I'll heal his wounds. As for Xian Yan, you go and investigate about Su Yan. I want to know about all of this. At those words, Xian Yan's face was delighted and he hurriedly arched his hand to leave. As long as Zhang Shang knights Xiaoze's matter, then this matter will not simply end, and by then it will definitely get bigger and bigger. Thinking about this, Xian Yan's eyes were able to show some hatred. Su Yan, I would like to see what you should do next. Spirit Wine Peak. The Tao body origin that emitted a dazzling light hovered over No. 4. The 9 doctors found the already unconscious number 4 when they came out of their retreat and treated him briefly. Are you sure you want to give these back to her? You don't want them? Looking at that Tao body origin, Taoist Wine sighed a bit. If it was a younger moment, the 9 Taoists might have actually thought about it. After all, with this Tao body, then your path in the cultivation world can go smoother and farther. Walking to the person turned his head to look at Su Yan beside him. Are you sure? If you put it in there's no chance of reversing it. Su Yan was somewhat speechless and immediately opened his mouth to urge. You hurry up. Che, brat. The 9th Taoist bristled, then injected the law and repositioned the Tao body origin within the 4th. As time passed, the Tao body essence returned to No. 4's flesh and blood, reintegrating into one. This Tao body was originally number 4's, so the fusion was very soothing. A steady stream of life force blossomed from it, and it wouldn't be long before number 4 could awaken. Taking advantage of this time, Su Yan also came inside his room. Su Yan sat on his knees, sitting on the bed and taking out the bones he had previously extracted from Xiaoze's body, preparing to refine them. Xiaoze's manifestation sword bone was quite a bit stronger than Su Yan's. However, both of them had similar Tao rhythms, and Su Yan could completely break this 10,000 Laws sword bone and fuse it within his own sword bone. This can drastically increase the speed of one's cultivation. During the cultivation period, one by one, the precious spirit medicine was taken out by Su Yan. In a flash, a rich aura filled the room. Looking at the manifestation sword bone that was suspended into mid-air, Su Yan then released his powerful sword intent. The sword chi pierced into the manifestation sword bone, and a terrifying aura suddenly erupted. A single crack continued, blossoming out from the manifestation sword bone. Wow! Under Su Yan's gaze, the manifestation sword bone quickly shattered apart. The broken sword bones were retransformed into his pure Tao rhythm, gradually integrating into the body under Su Yan's traction. At this time, the precious pills and elixirs placed around Su Yan also emitted their own rich medicinal effects, transforming into a stream of pure energy that was integrated into Su Yan's body. Being nourished by these medicinal auras, there were no surprises in the devouring of the Tao rhyme. At the same time, with the help of a large amount of aura, Su Yan's strength also saw a breakthrough, returning to the middle stage of the Yuanying realm. However, there was still a distance from the peak of the Yuanying realm before. Time passed for an unknown amount of time, and the cold mechanical life interrupted Su Yan, who was in cultivation. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully signing in every day and obtaining a draconic sword monument. Desolate Ancient Sword Tablet. In the Desolate Ancient Era, a tablet coalesced by countless great masters of the Way of the Sword. With the passage of time, the embedded sword intent has reached an extremely terrifying degree, and one can probe one's mind into it to perceive the will of the Way of the Sword embedded in the great masters of the distant past. Chapter 23, Sword Intent Accumulation. Supreme Bone. Hear the system beep. Su Yan's ancient and unperturbed state of mind was finally flooded with ripples. It's what's missing nowadays. What Su Yan lacked was a method that could enhance his sword intent. The cultivation of Kung Fu required the accumulation of time. The same was true for sword intent, which required constant enlightenment. But then, it would lead to a lower cultivation speed, or the time for sword intent realization. Therefore, it is a difficult choice for the unusual practitioner. If you choose one of these things, you must give up the other. It cannot be done at the same time. With a wave of Su Yan's big hand, an ancient stone monument that emitted a desolate aura appeared in front of him. The aura of age came out and enveloped Su Yan's entire body. In just an instant, Su Yan's consciousness was brought inside the desolate stone monument. When Su Yan opened his eyes again, he had already arrived at a battlefield filled with killing. Countless dead bodies were thrown around like garbage. There are countless knives and blades. Ha ha ha, it's me who won. It's me who won. I'm the heir to the way of the sword. A maniacal voice sounded in the distance, and Jiang Chang took a step in the direction the voice came from. Only a figure whose body was wrapped in bloodlight could be seen, standing in the distance and laughing crazily. The red aura around his body was even spreading towards the surroundings, extracting some kind of mysterious power from the corpse. Seemingly sensing the aura of a living person, the figure violently turned its head to look, revealing a hideous face. Why are you here to challenge my killing sword Dao as well? Ha ha ha, come on. Today's battle will not end in death. The man let out a maniacal sound and quickly rushed towards Su Yan. The entire person was like a sharp sword, carrying the purest sword intent. However, looking at the figures that came flooding in, Su Yan's eyes indeed did not fluctuate in the slightest. Breaking, the words fell. A heavenly giant sword emerged from Su Yan's circumference, and as the giant sword fell, everything in front of him was all annihilated. When the radiant sword intent aura had dissipated, a huge gully appeared in front of Su Yan. As for the figure emitting sword chi, it had also long since been directly dispersed under the sword of Su Yan's. Just as Su Yan was about to continue exploring forward, he only saw a ball of bloodlight suddenly coalesce at the place where the man had just disappeared. The bloodlight transformed into a sharp sword and instantly pierced into Su Yan's body. In a flash, countless sword Dao sensations filled Su Yan's mind, and the sword path that the man was practicing was exactly that, killing sword intent. This advice and the killing advice practiced by Su Yan yet had a few similarities, but Jiang Chang already has a kind of advice. In getting a kind of advice is not much of an upgrade. Grasping one kind of advice, if one did not continue to have enlightenment on him, then that advice would stop growing and would even gradually affect Su Yan's perception of other suggestions. Just as Su Yan was about to devour this sword intent, a sudden vibration came from the ground, interrupting Su Yan's thoughts. Su Yan turned his head to look around. This countless black auras gradually converged and coalesced into a figure in front of Su Yan. One person is a kind of sword Dao. So could it be that the one in front of us is dark sword intent? As Su Yan pondered, the figure in front of him suddenly dissipated into a black cloud of smoke. When it reappeared it had already come behind Su Yan. Fortunately Su Yan reacted in time to use his sword to fend it off. But this sort of darkness can blend into the darkness and kill people invisibly. Often, Su Yan had just adjusted his stance when the next attack stabbed out from the side. In that case, Su Yan turned his finger into a sword and condensed countless sword chi. Su Yan pointed out with a finger, and the terror suggestion rushed up into the sky, transforming into a white cloud of sword intent in the sky. The cloud then let out another dazzling white light, releasing strands of sword chi that emitted a colorful white glow. The sword chi was so large that it almost covered the entire battlefield, and even if it was hidden in the darkness, there was nowhere to hide. Click! Accompanied by the sound of shattering, Su Yan randomly turned his head to look. A small black sword hovered in the distance. Afterwards, it quickly stabbed towards Su Yan and merged into the flesh and blood. Another kind of suggestion. Su Yan was a little lifeless at this time. How so much sword intent was in the body? It would be strange if something didn't go wrong. However, this is just the beginning. More and more corpses that had died on the battlefield rose from the ground and used their unique sword intent to launch attacks towards Su Yan. After Su Yan killed them, the sword intent senses they contained were all instilled within Su Yan's body as well. I don't know how long had passed, when Su Yan was tired and panting, sitting on his butt on the ground. There were already 15 types of sword intent built up in his body. Now that this is the case, is it possible that you want me to walk the way of the 10,000 laws sword? Su Yan's eyes showed a helpless color. The reason why the 10,000 laws sword bone has the name 10,000 laws, it was that the more advice this sword bone absorbed from the senses, the stronger the ability that was released would be. Although the manifestation sword bone was fused by Su Yan's innate sword bone, this characteristic was also brought into Su Yan's body. Now that Su Yan possessed so much sword intent within his body, it was not in line with the characteristics of the manifestation sword bone. When all of these suggestions erupted, the power generated would be absolutely extremely terrifying. But unfortunately, Xia Zhe was too feeble to even comprehend a few sword intentions. Su Yan doesn't even have a reference. Just rested for a few seconds. The ground shook again once more. This time, a figure whose entire body was wrapped in flames appeared in front of Su Yan. Flame sword intent? Come on. since you want to give it to me, give me more. Su Yan took out the sword execution immortal, and the terrifying power shook the entire continent whole. Green Spirit Peak. It's been 2 days, why is there still no news? Zanian stood in the doorway ferrying back and forth, looking into the room from time to time. Where did you get the origin you handed over this time? And why hasn't it been fully fused after so long? Xianyan really can't wait any longer. Looking down at the several kneeling people behind him to open their mouths and ask. This bone was found by us within the body of a young child within North Wind City. It is said to be a supreme bone, and the possessor is a born supreme. Born supreme, Xianyan muttered, then looked back to the door of the room that had been closed. I wonder if with this bone, third brother's strength can be restored to the point it once was. While Xianyan waited anxiously, the door to that room, which had been closed for days, finally opened. Jiang Shan walked out of it with a bland face. Master Jiang, my third brother, it's already how it's done, and his cultivation is gradually recovering, so you can go in and take a look. Xianyan nodded, his face blushing with delight as he headed inside. After Xianyan left, then turned his head to look at the group of subordinates kneeling on the ground. You guys did a good job this time. Hard work. No sin. A person had just opened his mouth, only to see Zhang Shang slap a palm, and his entire person directly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The people around them froze. As the breath of the harmonization realm erupted, only a mist of blood was left in the air. Chapter 24, Cooking with Dragon Carp Meat, Recovering Natsuzawa. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and gaining 1 day of spiritual cultivation. Inside the green bamboo hut, Su Yan slowly opened his eyes, feeling the vigorous aura that had appeared in his body out of nowhere. Su Yan was not surprised. This time when he recultivated his Yuaning, Su Yan's speed would have been faster than last time. Now that the signing bonus would also give cultivation, I thought it wouldn't take too much time to get back to the peak of the Yuaning realm. Only this reward was still a bit different compared to the previous desolate stone tablet. However, what made Su Yan a little strange was that Xia Zhe was actually so calm that he didn't come to find his own trouble now. Doesn't he want to take the manifestation sword bone back again? Dum 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 dum. Elder brother, come out to eat. An ethereal voice like a lark sounded outside, pulling Su Yan's drifting thoughts back. Ka chow. By the time Su Yan arrived at the small courtyard, a table of fragrant meals had already been placed on the stone table. The rich aroma was so strong that even the wine Taoist, an old man who was addicted to wine, made a rare move and took a stool to sit over. Smokey, where did you get this meat? Picking up a piece of crystal clear meat, a look of surprise passed through the wine Taoist's eyes. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the blood and flesh of a 7th rank or higher spirit creature. Such a dense life chi is definitely the best of the best. Even I haven't seen it before. Confronted with the wine Taoist's blazing eyes, Zhang Shuyan's eyes also showed bewilderment. Isn't this what you prepared, master? I saw him put it in the kitchen so I brought it over to use. The wine Taoist shook his head in confusion. I've been in seclusion for most of the year. Where are the ingredients left in the kitchen? Besides, this is rare in the world and hard to find. Looking at the wine Taoist sitting there in contemplation, Su Yan was somewhat speechless. Don't you ever ask me? Ahem. Su Yan's coughing sound attracted the attention of the two men, and the wine Taoist sized up Su Yan, exuding a look of contempt. You boys aren't going to say you got this stuff, are you? Yes, indeed. I got it by accident. Che, I'll believe the hell out of you. You kid has the strength? The contempt in the wine Taoist's eyes increased. I still don't know you. With your shabby sword skills, if you encountered a 7th order demon, I'm afraid you'd be so scared that you'd even lose your pants. Even if it's more broken. You taught me my swordsmanship, so what does that mean? It means you can't teach it. Su Yan directly disliked it. Brat, you actually dare to defy the master. No means no. Don't blame it on me. Su Yan blankly glanced at the wine Taoist and didn't bother anymore, opening his mouth to eat the meal on the table. Seeing Su Yan ignoring himself, the wine Taoist was furious. Brat, how dare you not give me face? Do you owe it to yourself? Want a fight? He. You don't think the old man is afraid of you? Playing with the gourd in his hand, the wine Taoist looked at Su Yan with contempt. Come on. I also want to see how strong you are after switching your technique. Su Yan was not surprised that the wine Taoist could detect his Gongfu changes. After all, Su Yan's original Gongfu spells were all taught by the wine Taoist. If he could not see the changes, it would be impossible. Looking at the pair of living treasures, master and disciple's saber-rattling appearance, Zhang Shuyan shrank her small head and ate silently like an ostrich. As much as she wanted to talk it out, she was also too low in status to mess with either one. In the end, Su Yan's two masters and disciples still didn't fight. It's still important to eat. Zhang Shuyan didn't finish the whole dragon carp, What was made today was only a part of it. It's very much a big piece in the middle of the kitchen. Although the wine Taoist despised his disciple, he had to admit that Su Yan was still somewhat useful. Feeling the wine Taoist's probing gaze, Su Yan glanced his gaze into the distance to godforsaken the heavens. While the three of them were eating, the formation that shrouded the small courtyard was suddenly opened, and several uninvited guests walked in. Seeing a few people, the wine Taoist didn't pay any attention to them, still gnawing on the bones in his hand. On the contrary, Su Yan led Zhang Shuyan to salute the two men at the head, and when she saw the people following behind the two, Zhang Shuyan's eyes showed killing intent. Calm down. Don't let the killing intent take over. The idea of killing had just surfaced in Zhang Shuyan's consciousness when she was interrupted by a clear and cold voice. Patriarch, Peak Master Jiang. I wonder what the two of you have come to my spirit wine peak for. Su Yan looked at the person who came and said without being condescending. Spirit Wine Peak was located in the middle of nowhere, and people of their level wouldn't even come. It's not that I have something to come and discuss with your master, so I took the liberty of interrupting. Patriarch Yang Wushuang smiled faintly. His gaze then landed on Lord Wine, following the movements of Taoist Wine and shifting back to the stone table next to him. This, 7th ranked Great Demon meat? Zhang Shan was also a bit surprised. 7th order Great Demons corresponded to Harmonization Realm cultivators, but because demon flesh far exceeded that of cultivators of the same realm, very few cultivators within the same level were able to fight the demons alone. Moreover, the 7th order demon is even rarer, all living in the depths of the demon race. Unusual outside can find a 5 or 6 orders are good. It's just the 7th rank. It's just like that. If it wasn't for that Su Yan brat insisting that I taste it, I wouldn't even bother to eat it. Upon hearing this, several people's astonished gazes quickly landed on Su Yan. This kid's chances are actually so good? They didn't think that Su Yan had the ability to kill a 7th ranked demon, and guessed that Su Yan had only gotten lucky. With such precious meat, even Zhang Shang and Yang Wushuang, the two Harmonization Realm powerhouses, were looking at it with their mouths a little dry. Senior uncle, you're living a really comfortable life. Yang Wushuang bitterly smiled as he looked towards the wine Taoist. Every day, when he got up, he just drank, and he didn't have any tedious matters to deal with, and he could also eat this kind of top-notch spiritual food. This little life was lived in a way that made him the patriarch who had to worry about the sect every day. Envious, the wine Taoist ate a piece of dragon carp meat and said indifferently, you can totally give it to someone else if you're not happy about it. The one next to you doesn't quite want your spot. Yang Wushuan looked at the expressionless Zhang Shang beside him, and a little bit of helplessness showed between his brows. Although Zhang Shang and the wine Taoist were master and brother, the relationship between them was not good. Of course, none of this had much to do with him either. Senior brother is joking. Since the position of patriarch was set by the master, then how can he be allowed to take it as he pleases? Zhang Shang spoke unconcernedly, as if he really didn't want this patriarch position. Zhang Shang's gaze then sized up Su Yan again, with praise in his eyes. Worthy of being the heir of a senior brother, his strength is indeed good. No wonder he was able to snatch my disciple's sword bone. Once these words came out, the already weird atmosphere turned even weirder. On the contrary, it was the wine Taoist who seemed as if he didn't feel it, still eating the dragon carp meat. Well, should we have the two of them fight again? And whoever wins digs up the other's bones one more time. Listening to the words of the wine Taoist, Su Yan turned his head to look at Xiaze, who had a somewhat ugly face. At this time, Xiaze had already detached himself from the dead dog-like appearance from before. His face was flushed and his body was surging with true qi, which seemed to be a few points stronger than before. Senior brother is joking. It's just a piece of sword bone. Since your disciple wants it, then just give it to him. It's just that although senior brother can hide this kind of thing once, it can't be hidden for a second time, so in the future it's better to have your disciples pay good attention to it. Zhang Shang smiled faintly, although there was no threatening intent, but the murderous aura contained was incomparably thick. Oh, then let them work it out for themselves. Listening to the conversation between the two, Yang Wushuan did not dare to interrupt at all. It was only after the surroundings had once again fallen into an eerie calm that Yang Wushuang swept the faces of the two men before slowly saying, Senior uncle, this time I came to find you, mainly to discuss the Spirit Ascension Conference in 3 days. Chapter 25, The Spirit Ascension Conference begins. Steal sword intent from me? Are you guys serious? Yang Wushuang as well as the two masters and disciples, Zhang Shang, didn't stay at Spirit Wine Peak for long and soon left. Only as he walked away, Yang Wushuang said a message. This time, when they participated in the Spirit Ascension Conference, apart from the disciples of the Divine Heavenly Sword sect, there would also be people from the Great Xia Imperial dynasty as well. The Spirit Ascension Conference was an event unique to the Divine Heavenly Sword sect. A secret realm would be opened at that time, and disciples who entered it could absorb the sword intent inside to hone themselves. As long as one stayed inside long enough, one could absorb a large amount of sword intent quenching, allowing one's sword Dao sense to grow rapidly. This kind of excellent treasure land was very coveted even by the other two great sects. Unfortunately, this secret realm was never open to the public, and was always only available to disciples within their own sect. This time, however, the disciples of the Great Summer Imperial Dynasty were suddenly allowed to participate as well, which was a bit surprising. Senior, do you think it could be a trick used by Xiaozhe? Ever since she met Xiaozhe, Zhang Shuyan guessed that he was the one who kidnapped her. Now for this great Xia dynasty. Naturally, there was no good feeling. Who knows? The wine Taoist shook his head with a look of disinterest. It's not like he's targeting me anyway, so let whoever he's targeting work it out. Suyin, old man, what did you mean just now when you said that there was still a piece of bone inside that Xiaozhe? Su Yan looked at the 9 Taoists and inquired curiously. However, the wine Taoist gave Su Yan a blank look. If you want to know, just dig it up again and see for yourself. It's not like you haven't done it before anyway. Su Yan raised an eyebrow and looked at the wine Taoist with a smile. Old man, are you not afraid of that peak Master Jiang? Su Yan's words were like he had angered the 9 Taoists' reverse scales, and the wine Taoist immediately became furious. I will be afraid of him. Brat, who do you think he is? With his little tricks he still wants to deal with me. It's just a dream. If it weren't for the fact that he's in the same lineage as my master, I would have slapped him to death long ago. Where would he have the qualifications to be shady with me? Listening to the wine Taoist's cursing words, Su Yan just smiled and didn't say anything. Although he didn't know what kind of conflict there was between the two, Su Yan still knew some rumors. Among the disciples of Taoist wine's generation, Taoist wine's strength and talent were top-notch, and had been hailed as the genius most likely to break through the Mahayana stage within 10 years, following the ancestor. Only that something happened to the Taoist wine Taoist on his way to cultivation, and from then on, he was devastated and became obsessed with drinking. Otherwise, with the seniority and strength of the wine Taoist, how could he come to this spirit wine peak? The wine Taoist was fully capable of becoming the peak master of one of the 36 peaks. As for being afraid, the wine Taoist was even less afraid of Zhang Shang. Well, old man, I've had my fill, so I'll leave you guys to clean up the rest. After some angry curses, the wine Taoist lost interest and took his own wine gourd and left slowly. By the way, for the next period of time, your senior sister's teaching will be in your hands. Teach him what I used to teach you. Knowing that, I'll definitely throw 2 top-tier techniques directly to senior sister for him to comprehend on his own. Okay, then you can try. The voice of the wine Taoist came from the distance and faded away. Su Yan shook his head helplessly and turned his head to see Zhang Shuyan, who was cleaning up the mess. Come straight to my room when the stuff is in the kitchen later. Okay? Sifu, Clear Spirit Peak. Do you remember everything I told you? Xiaozhe stood above, his gaze cold as he looked at the disciples below wearing the same service. The sword intent sensations within the Spirit Ascension Assembly are all ownerless, and in order to open up the quenching you need to absorb them yourselves. I want all of you to follow him, and not allow him to get a single chance to quench his sword intent. If this mission is accomplished, all of you can become my personal guards, with no shortage of wealth and status women. Hearing Xiaozhe's words, someone immediately stood up to show their loyalty. Don't worry, Your Highness. The masterless sword intent inside the secret realm is pulled according to the fluctuations of one's own sword intent. With so many of us releasing our sword intent fluctuations together, I don't believe he can still rob us. Xiaozhe nodded his head in satisfaction, looking at the person who spoke in his heart to deepen his impression by a few points. Your Highness, the people from the Imperial Dynasty are already here. At that moment, another group of uniformed men walked in. The strength of this group of people was equally not weak. All of them were at the Yuaning realm and above, especially the 3 people in the lead. Their cultivation fluctuations had already reached the early stage of the spirit transformation realm. With these people, there was no worry of not being able to deal with Su Yan. The corner of Xiaozhe's mouth hooked up a cold smile, thinking of everything Su Yan would have to face 3 days later. Xiaozhe felt that the anger that had built up in his chest had decreased by a few points. Just wait, when I raise my sword intent to the sword potential level, let's see how I'll crush you to death. 3 days later. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and obtaining the reward, the Forbidden Breakstone. Inside the room, Su Yan slowly opened his eyes. The Immortal Punisher's sword floating in front of his eyes slowly descended and plunged back into the ground. Within 3 days, Su Yan attempted to break the restrictions within the Immortal Execution Sword. Although not a single prohibition had been broken, it had still worn away a few of the Dao rhythms inside. According to Su Yan's own calculations, there was almost a month left to wear out the first prohibition. At that time, holding the Immortal Punisher sword would usher in an explosive increase in his own strength. It's still too weak. If I can raise all the sword suggestions in my body to the level of sword potential, it would be much simpler to break these prohibitions. The prohibition within the immortal punishing sword was actually a chain condensed from Tao rhythm, sealing all of the might of the immortal punishing sword. And sword intent was all a presentation of the Tao. So the stronger Su Yan's sword intent was, the faster it would break. During these 3 days, Su Yan also entered the desolate stone monument from time to time to obtain sword intent. However, the acquisition of sword intent was stuck at the 30th piece. In order to get the recognition of the sword intent, his original color possessor had to be killed. However, the sword intent possessors that appeared each time were several times more powerful than the last. The latest one. Even Su Yan had no way to win and could only wait for his cultivation to rise again. Su Yan glanced at today's sign-in item, the Forbidden Breaking Stone. The effect was simple, to break the blockade of space and formations. Even a 9th grade formation could not put a stop to it. If we could break the space, could we enter directly into the spirit ascension mysteries? The idea was out of control as soon as it appeared. Su Yan was prepared to give it a good try after entering the secret realm this time. Putting away the immortal Punisher sword, Su Yan immediately got up and headed to the location of the spirit ascension mystic realm. By the time Su Yan arrived, Patriarch Yang Wuxuan was already opening the secret realm with his people. The others were all excited as they looked at the secret realm that was about to open, and only Su Yan arrived slowly. However, Su Yan had just arrived and felt several unkind things. Gee, so I've been dug a hole for me here. I'd like to see what kind of tricks you can pull in here. Chapter 26, The Secret Realm Opens. Robbing the Sword Rhyme. Boom! Accompanied by a white pillar of light in the heavens and earth that shot straight up into the sky. The terrifying spiritual power shattered the surrounding space into a black vortex. All disciples, the door to the secret realm has been opened. Whether or not you can obtain how total chance in it depends on all of you. Yang Wuxuan stood in the sky, and his voice, empowered by his spiritual energy, spread throughout the entire square. Looking at the vortex that emitted countless streams of light, the eyes of the group of disciples were filled with excitement. If it wasn't for the fact that there was still Yang Wuxuan blocking the crowd, he was afraid that he would have rushed straight in. Seeing the impatient appearance of the group of disciples, Yang Wuxuan did not continue to pull the wool over their eyes. Since you all can't wait, let's go in. As soon as Yang Wuxuan's words fell, countless streams of light rushed towards that vortex. Su Yan likewise didn't hesitate, wrapping his body in spiritual energy and rushing towards that vortex. After a moment of heavenly spinning, the dark sky floated in front of Su Yan, and the air smelled of burnt iron, as if he was in an age-old iron furnace. Along with Su Yan, there were also many disciples from the same sect. Looking at the large white mountain standing in the distance, the many disciples immediately darted towards it, and on top of that mountain there was a full moon, which gave off a white light, slightly illuminating the entire mountain peak. As for the rest of the place, it was in darkness. The only thing that can lead to the light is that giant white mountain. Looking at the impatient appearance of each one, Su Yan was in no hurry to move. This living spirit assembly had opened many times, and the predecessor had come in quite a few times. Even the sword intent that was sharpened came from within this secret realm. Rumor has it that this sword mountain was obtained by chance by Taoist divine heaven's heights, and is a product left over from the ancient times. It was inscribed with many precious sword intent Tao marks, which had heavenly benefits for sword cultivators. However, as the number of times it was opened continued to increase, the number of blade marks inscribed within it became fewer and fewer. It was even speculated that perhaps after 4 or 5 more times, this sword mountain would lose the ability he originally possessed. So, those disciples became more and more frantic. Su Yan then picked up a longsword on the ground, and as his spiritual chi was injected into it, the longsword emitted a faint fluctuation of spiritual energy. Click! With a crisp sound, that longsword shattered directly from the center. Too much time has passed for these here blades to carry spiritual power. Yo, isn't this swordsman Su Yan? Why didn't he go up to compete for the sword intent Dao rhyme? Instead he's here alone watching. A slightly familiar voice rang out. There was no need to think about it. Su Yan knew who the visitor was. What? You didn't get beaten up enough last time? Han Cheng's face stiffened and his fists clenched. Don't be arrogant. When I raise my sword intent to sword power, let's see how I'll get you killed. Putting down his harsh words, Han Cheng flew towards that white sword mountain without looking back. He's all gone. So you can all come out now. A sibilant sound rang out. 2 groups of men once again emerged from the surrounding darkness. One of the parties is wearing the same as Black system with the same equipment. Su Yan recognized at a glance that these were precisely the people from the imperial dynasty who were mixed in the group. As for the other group, they were disciples of the Divine Sky Sword sect. It seems that senior brother has misunderstood. We just happen to be passing by and have no malicious intent. The leading Divine Sky Sword sect disciple smiled and led the crowd behind him towards Sword Mountain. That person from the imperial dynasty also left in silence, but the coldness emanating from his eyes, even though he was far away, Su Yan also sensed it. In this regard, Su Yan did not care too much. A few breaths later, Su Yan also arrived at the foot of Sword Mountain. A group of people had gathered here and had begun to climb. At the moment of stepping onto the Sword Mountain, all the spiritual energy would all be imprisoned, and one could only rely on the physical body to advance, drawing on one's own sword intent sense and thus attracting the stray sword intent Dao Rhyme. Sword Mountain was good enough to hold all the disciples, looking for the best place to start attracting sword intent. But, feeling the figures gradually wrapping around him, a hint of speechlessness flowed from the corner of Su Yan's mouth. Such a cheap trick to pull off, only to see a large number of Imperial Dynasty disciples, with those sect disciples who were hostile to Su Yan, presenting an encircling trend to surround Su Yan in the center. As a wave of sword intent erupted, all of the sword rhythms radiating from the Sword Mountain were also absorbed by them. Su Yan all froze. Su Yan thought that these people were going to make a direct move against him, but it turned out that they were actually competing with him here in terms of sword intent. Su Yan shook his head and continued to walk towards the location at the top of the mountain. The rest of the group saw this and just took a step to follow. The cultivation of the sword path was divided into sword intent, sword power, and sword domain. Sword intent was the most basic foundation. When climbing halfway up the area of the Sword Mountain, it was no longer sword intent, but an even more powerful sword momentum. In the face of sword intent, you can slowly proceed to enlightenment. If you can use sword momentum, you can only use your own sword intent to fight him, but if it fails, it is the cultivator himself who suffers the backlash. When the surrounding people saw this, they thought Su Yan was still going to go in. However, Su Yan found a quiet place and directly sat on his knees. Looking at the crowds that surrounded themselves, Su Yan was completely somewhat speechless. As an aura of sword intent gradually spread out, the sword chi that drifted in all directions in the air also converged towards the crowd. Su Yan closed his eyes and also slowly pushed the sword intent in his body. Sensing Su Yan's powerful sword intent, some of the sword intent also came towards Su Yan. However, just as they were about to approach Su Yan, another wave of sword intent would immediately appear, drawing them elsewhere. Somewhere in the corner of Xia Ren's mouth, who was wearing a royal uniform, hooked up a cold smile. Xia Ren was the son of a prince, and this time he entered the secret realm. In addition to bringing a little trouble to Su Yan, he was also trying to improve his sword Dao cultivation. Not only could he disgust Su Yan, he could also strengthen himself, killing two birds with one stone. But soon, Xia Ren couldn't stop smiling. It wasn't just him. All of those people surrounding Su Yan were staring at the sky in stupefaction. One could only see countless sword chi falling from the sky, all of which poured onto Su Yan alone. As for those well-intentioned gaps in the others, they just flew away without even looking at them, not even giving them a chance. The surrounding people looked at Su Yan dumbfounded, completely confused about the situation. Although sensing different sword intent can also increase one's own sword intent, but isn't it too outrageous for you to have a dozen different sword intent all surrounding one person? Can you understand it? Some could even feel the same sword intent as their own, also drifting towards Su Yan's location. And the scope of Su Yan's absorption didn't stop there. Before long, the sword rhythms that were overflowing within the entire secret area were all coming towards the area where Su Yan was. The other disciples came out of their cultivation state and all of them were dumbfounded as they began to gather towards the area where Su Yan was. Within the entire Sword Mountain, Su Yan was the only one still absorbing sword rhythms today. The others could only stare blankly into the distance. The landscape extremely bizarre. Chapter 27, Don't be polite, let me see your newly absorbed bones. Divine Sky Sword Sect Square. A group of elders gathered to discuss the assembly. Senior brothers, now is a good opportunity. Do you want to come and bet on it? An old Taoist wearing a green shirt and holding a floating dust in his hand said with a smile. Oh, what does senior brother want to bet on? Almost all of the disciples within the sect have gone in for this conference. So why don't we bet on whose disciple can be the first to raise to sword potential? Of the 9 great sword sons of the divine heavens today, only 2 had already comprehended sword momentum. The remaining 7 were all still in the realm of sword intent. Fine, I'll go first, I'll bet on my disciple. A lazy voice rang out, followed by a wine gourd flung directly in front of the Taoist priest. The Taoist priest was not offended, but smiled at the wine Taoist. Aren't you also too stingy, senior brother? Just 1 pot of wine is not enough. I'm afraid. This is my Spirit Wine Peak's purple bamboo brew, and it's enough to replace whatever you're holding. The 9th Taoist paralyzed in his rattan chair and muttered. Upon hearing this, the remaining few peak masters were somewhat surprised. Purple bamboo brew is a special spirit wine made from 1,000-year-old purple bamboo. Only Spirit Wine Peak can make it. Although the wine Taoist was a bit out of tune, the wine was really good. 1,000-year-old spirit wine could have a good effect even on harmonization realm cultivators like them. Just one sip was enough to offset their years of cultivation. As a result, many peak masters looked at this spirit wine with some heat in their gazes. Senior brother, it's a bit unorthodox for you to take out this thing. Listening to the tiresome voice, the wine Taoist had a displeased look on his face. Are you annoying? If you love to gamble, gamble. If not, get lost. Jiang Shang laughed and wasn't the least bit displeased. It's rare for senior brother to leave spirit wine peak. How can senior brother sweep away senior brother's nature? With that, Jiang Shang took out a blue bead and threw it directly to the Taoist. Looking at this spirit bead, the surrounding people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cool air. This was a lower-grade Dao weapon, which was already considered a top-notch treasure in this heaven and earth. Looking at the Taoist's somewhat dumbfounded appearance, Jiang Shang smiled faintly, his words spreading towards the surroundings like a breeze. What's wrong with brother? Could it be that he doesn't dare to take it? The Taoist wiped the sweat off his own forehead and accepted the Dao bead with a stiff face. Asterisk 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 asterisk. If you guys want to fight, go gamble yourselves. What's the point of putting all your money on me? His intention was to bet on some common items to liven up the atmosphere. As a result, these two people are one more than one cowhide. Those treasures that he doesn't even have come out to bet. If he loses, he is afraid that he can't afford to lose even if he sells himself. But if you don't take it, and a little look down on his brotherly suspicion, no choice but to take it. Xiao Zhe has broken and established himself this time. His own sword intent has reached perfection. I wonder if senior brother's disciple's sword intent will be able to be integrated after seizing that sword bone. Jiang Shang's seemingly inadvertent bragging was something that immediately tickled the minds of those around him. All of them were in the divine heavenly sword sect, and they had naturally heard about what happened a few days ago. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for the news to get out before they were silenced. At this point though, it would be interesting to hear what is going on in this. However, for their own sake, they can only stay where they are. After all, they couldn't afford to mess with either of the two people in front of them. Not only was his generation high, but his cultivation was also at the top. Beating them, the peak masters at the early stage of the harmonization realm. One person could do a good job with a few of them. It's not for you to bother. Since it's a matter between the juniors, let them settle it on their own. The wine Taoist sipped his wine, still with that lazy look. Ha! Jiang Shang smiled disdainfully, with sarcasm in the depths of his eyes. Buzz off! As countless sword rhythms poured into Su Yan's body, the large amount of sword intent gathered in Su Yan's sword bones was instantly nourished, and crazily began to devour the sword rhythms to enhance itself. In a flash, a sword intent grew like a seedling, slowly taking up the entire space. Boom! Accompanied by a crisp sound, a terrifying might emanated from Su Yan's body. The disciples gathered around were immediately shaken back. This is sword power. Looking at the sword intent gathered around Su Yan, one disciple immediately reddened his eyes. Originally, all these sword rhythms belonged to them, but at this moment, they were devoured by Su Yan alone. Moreover, Su Yan had now managed to comprehend his own sword momentum. If one were to take it a step further, transforming these sword bones would allow one to form a sword Dao domain. The faces of those who were originally thinking of stopping Su Yan from absorbing the sword rhyme were even more unsightly at this moment. Brothers, hurry up and make a move to interrupt Su Yan, or else all the sword rhythms overflowing from this sword mountain will be sucked up by him. I don't know who shouted from the crowd. The gazes of the surrounding people looking at Su Yan immediately took on anger. But, the clan forbids fighting here. Brother, don't be silly. Whoever can get this sword mountain chance is whoever can get it. If you don't do it, when the time comes, you will be sucked dry by Su Yan. I'll see that you will still be uplifted. Listening to the resounding conversation, someone finally couldn't hold back and released their sword intent to charge towards Su Yan. Su Yan, the sword rhythm here is not yours alone. It's ours to fight yet not to stop. Although this person's aura was sufficient, the sword intent when released was fragile and incomparable. It was crushed before it even touched Su Yan's body. Seeing this, the people around them released their own sword intent to launch attacks towards Su Yan. Yet this was the case for all of them. With their sword intent, they couldn't even come close to Su Yan's distance of 10 meters. Buzz off! The strange voice rang out, and the crowd only felt a huge mountain pressing down on them, unconsciously kneeling down. At a glance, excluding Su Yan who was sitting on his knees, the rest of the crowd were all pressed and kneeling on the ground, as if they were submitting to a king. Some people's faces turned red as they tried to pull themselves up, only to be completely unable to do so. At this time, Su Yan slowly opened his eyes and looked at the crowd of disciples kneeling on the ground with a smile in his eyes. Even if you kneel down here, I won't teach you the way of the sword. When the crowd heard this, their faces turned green. Ghosts are going to accept your kendo. Su Yan smiled and got up, entering the area behind him that was enveloped by the sword power. Stepping into it, several sword intentions burst out from Su Yan's body, forming a unique area around him. After absorbing a large amount of sword rhythms, 6 of the sword intentions within Su Yan's body had already formed sword potentials. The sword power was layered on top of each other, and this was the reason why those people were pressed to their knees on the ground. Yo, another acquaintance. Looking at a figure sitting cross-legged in the distance, Su Yan immediately took a step towards it. If it isn't His Highness Natsuzawa, why is he here alone? Hearing the voice, Xiaoze's body trembled and he turned his head violently to look at it. Why are you here? Xiaoze's face changed greatly, just wanting to get up. Several sword momentum wrapped him, hardening Yan kneeling on the ground. Suyin, I hear you. Su Yan took a step in front of Xiaoze, squatted down and reached out to pat Xiaoze's face. Looks like we really are meant to be. You asshole. Xiaoze had a stifled look on his face, wanting to use his spiritual energy, but he couldn't use it at all in this particular environment. I heard that you got another bone. Feeling Su Yan's line of sight continuously moving downward, Xiaoze's body shook, forcing a smile on his face. Actually, I'm kidding now. I don't have any bones. The Supreme Bone was a special physique that was several levels stronger than his original 10,000 Laws sword bone and had reached the top of the world. It was also with the help of this bone's ability that Shazer was able to advance further within a few days. But now that he saw Su Yan, the fear of the past was fresh in his mind. The first time, he had a chance to finish off Su Yan, but ended up failing due to the collision of the two spiritual forces in his body, thus failing. Now, and suppressed by the prohibition of this sword mountain, Xiaoze suffocated to death. Obviously with his strength he could battle Su Yan, but as a result, he was beaten up because of these messy things. Thus, what kind of relationship do we have? Well, at least we have the same bone. Come, let me see. Su Yan, he extended his hand without caring. Su Yan, you dare to make a move on me. Chapter 28, Another Bone Snatching. Su Yan, I'll never rest with you. Miserable screams continued to echo in the area. Hot blood continued to flow on the ground, and the smell of blood gradually filled the air. Xiaoze was lying on the ground like a dead dog, and an opening had been made at his chest, constantly flowing outwards with aura. Su Yan, if you dare to take my bones, I will not rest with you. Su Yan helplessly reached out and patted Xiaoze's face, meeting his resentful gaze and said, Third Highness is really a nobleman. Aren't we already immortal? Xiaoze's pupils shrunk, his lips slightly opened to say something. A wrist had already probed into his chest. Intense pain swept through the sea of consciousness, and Xiaoze immediately let out an agonizing scream. Don't scream so loud. It sounds oozy. It'll be over soon. I want you to. Su Yan slightly exerted his force, and a piece of bone emitting a 7-colored glow was immediately pulled out. This bone. It seems to be even stronger than your manifestation sword bone. The moment the supreme bone was pulled out, Su Yan could even feel the surrounding Dao rhythm deepen by a few points. Obviously, this bone was far more advanced than the 10,000 Laws sword bone and had already reached the grade of a Dao body. Moreover, removing this bone was even a bit more difficult than the 10,000 Laws sword bone. Tisk, tisk, worthy of being the Xia Emperor's son, this kind of good physique is just plentiful. At this moment, Xiaoze was paralyzed and no longer had the strength to speak. Only his translucent green eyes were left looking straight at the supreme bone in Su Yan's hand. Third Highness, although your brain is not very good, there is indeed nothing wrong with one sentence. Xiaoze raised his head with difficulty, and his gloomy gaze met Su Yan's line of sight that contained a smile. As you are the imperial prince of the Grand Xia, I indeed wouldn't dare to kill you. Hearing these words, Xiaoze's obscure eyes gradually glowed brightly. Yeah, he was the third prince of the Great Summer Imperial Dynasty. Even if Su Yan treated himself any differently, he wouldn't dare to kill him. Otherwise, the Great Summer Imperial Dynasty would definitely put pressure on the Divine Heavenly Sword sect, and there was nothing he could do even if he was a sword son. Thinking of this, Xiaoze couldn't help but bring a smug look to his face. Count on you having some brains. I'll spare your life if you send me away now. Su Yan looked at Xiaoze with a strange expression. It's true that I don't dare to kill you. After all, I can only kill the transformation god stage, and it would indeed be a bit troublesome if I were to take on the conjunction stage. Xiaoze's face stiffened, and the small flame of hope that had just burned up was directly snuffed out. But don't worry, you won't have to wait long until that day arrives. Su Yan looked at Xiaoze with a sincere face, his tone full of regret. Provocation. This is definitely provocation. The Yuaning stage could kill the transformation god stage. If it reached the transformation god, wouldn't it be possible to reverse the harmonization realities? Xiaoze's face turned green with anger, and even the blood flowing from his chest sped up a few points. Looking at Xiaoze's appearance, Su Yan sked twice, then kicked a few more times towards Xiaze before slowly leaving. Of course, before leaving, Su Yan still fed Xiaze a healing elixir, hanging on to his breath and not letting him die. It had to be said that this Xiaze was really an experienced baby, and what was gained from him completely exceeded Su Yan's expectations. Now that this supreme bone was incorporated into his body and absorbed, Su Yan's strength could still be increased by a large margin once again. Su Yan did not know which kind of bone was in his hand, but since it was a Dao bone it must not be bad. But now was not the time to think about this. Su Yan had to continue climbing. At the top of that sword mountain, within the area covered by the full moon, there was a divine Sha sword patriarch was a sword Dao inheritance left behind. That thing was also one of Su Yan's goals for this trip. The current Su Yan possessed 30 different types of sword intent within his body. Among them, 6 of the sword intentions had already formed a sword momentum, and as long as they continued to raise them, they could be promoted to a sword domain. And the sword intent that the predecessor had comprehended had been reduced to one of the 24 of them at this point. These 24 types of sword intent, due to the differences in the absorption of sword rhythms, some had reached perfection, while others had only reached minor success. If this powerful configuration was used to resist the sword domain left behind by the divine heavenly sword sect's ancestor, Su Yan wasn't sure if he could succeed. Sword potential and sword domain. Although it was only a difference of one word, but the laws of the sword Dao contained therein were worlds apart. Moreover, cultivation also played a great supporting role in this process. But today Su Yan's cultivation was only at the Yuaning realm, and when the divine sky sword sect's ancestor left behind the sword domain, his cultivation had long since reached the world's apex, the Mahayana stage. If compared to that, Su Yan was still far behind. Since that's the case, let's find a place to improve our sword Dao first. Continuously advancing towards the top, the light emitted by the full moon hanging in the sky became stronger and stronger. It was like sensing Su Yan's arrival and waiting for him to head to the challenge. Without spending too much time, Su Yan had already reached the top of the mountain peak, and was only a step away from the area covered by the sword domain. But just as Su Yan took a step, an unimaginable force stopped Su Yan from advancing an inch. Obviously, trying to enter the area wrapped by the sword domain. With the current Su Yan was still somewhat unqualified. Since this was the case, Su Yan didn't force himself and directly sat on his knees and began to release his sword potential sword intent to fight against those masterless sword chi. Sensing the enhancement, time passed slowly and the next day came quickly. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and obtaining the reward, the enlightenment tree seedling. Hearing the mechanical sound coming from his ears, Su Yan violently opened his eyes. The Gautama tea tree? I can't believe I'm giving this. A rare look of surprise appeared on Su Yan's face. The enlightenment tea leaf can help one to realize the great Tao faster and even perform an epiphany, which is a supreme treasure that all cultivators pursue. Su Yan moved with his mind, and a small sapling half a man tall appeared in front of him, with leaves hanging from its wobbly branches. At a cursory glance, there were at least hundreds of them. The rich Tao rhythm spread out in all directions, wrapping Su Yan in it. At this moment, Su Yan could feel the sword intent within his body being growth. Su Yan's eyes slightly condensed as he reached out and removed a green leaf that emitted a soft glow and held it in his mouth. In an instant, Su Yan lost consciousness and felt that he had entered a chaotic land. A streak of heavenly sword intent appeared from the chaos, splitting this turbid world down the middle. Buzz. In the next moment, Su Yan's sword intent ushered in a crazy rise. Various powerful sword intent senses filled Su Yan's mind, very gently integrating into Su Yan's mind. Time passed for who knows how long. When Su Yan once again came out of that chaotic world, the pressure of the intermunicipal city that surrounded his body became more and more intense. Originally there were only 6 sword postures, but at this point it had grown to 12. The rest of those sword intentions that had yet to be metamorphosed also became more and more powerful, with the least of them reaching great accomplishment. Su Yan waved his hand to retrieve the enlightenment tree and got up to look at the platform behind him. Entering it and being able to refer to the sword Dao left behind by the ancestor of the divine heavenly sword sect. Without hesitation, Su Yan hardened himself against the powerful pressure and stepped into it. Chapter 29, Acquiring the Ancestor's Legacy of the Killing Sword Dao. Ka Chao. As soon as he stepped into the sword domain, a long sword condensed from surging sword intent instantly landed on Su Yan. A crisp sound rang out, and the sword momentum wrapped around Su Yan's body instantly shattered. Su Yan's face changed slightly, and he hurriedly erupted the sword intent in his body, condensing it into a unique sword momentum surrounding and resisting the surrounding sword intent. Only after temporarily fending off the attack did Su Yan raise his head to look at the full moon hanging in the sky. Underneath the full moon was a figure that was glowing with light and had its back to Su Yan. Su Yan knew that the figure was a manifestation of the sword intent left behind by the ancestor, and was also the core of this sword domain. Su Yan sat on his knees and did not continue to move forward, but instead, With the help of the gradual sword intent around him, he sensed the sword rhythms contained therein. The closer he got to the figure, the stronger the sword domain attack would become. And if one could comprehend the sword intent contained therein, the difficulty could be drastically reduced. And while Su Yan was participating in the enlightenment, Xia Zhe, who had been lying on the ground for a long time, finally climbed up. Feeling the increasingly dense sword pressure around him, Xia Zhe could only brace his body's pain and leave towards the nearest place. Su Yan, you wait for me. Today's insult will be returned in the future. And those fools, actually letting him in just like that. When I get out, I will kill them all. Thinking of the image of himself being humiliated by Su Yan, Xia Zhe was so angry that a mouthful of blood spurted out. Damn, I'm going to get used to vomiting blood again. Smelling the unpleasant smell of blood in the air, Shazer's face grew worse. Get out of the danger zone. Xia Zhe immediately took out a sound transmission jade slip to summon the person he had arranged. In no time at all, crowds of people came from afar. Only, look at the disheveled expression on each one's face. Just like a dead father. Shazer was just furious. I don't even want to die when my supreme bone is gone, and you people are fine, and you're giving me the appearance of wanting to die so badly. However, after listening to the crowd, Xia Zhe's face turned green and white for a while, and his fists pinched and clicked. If these people weren't still useful, Shazer would have wanted to send them away on the spot. Your Highness, what should we do next? Xia Zhe's eyes flickered slightly. Thinking for a moment before having another idea, his eyes took on a sinister color. Since he doesn't want us to comprehend sword intent, then none of us will have a good time. Looking at the crazy look on Xia Zhe's face, the crowd subconsciously backed away. In response, Xia Zhe didn't care to speak directly. Everyone follow me out of the Sword Mountain's range. Then use spiritual power to destroy the entire mountain. Absolutely not. Your Highness, if we really do this, we will be the sinners of the Divine Sky Sword sect. Yes, Your Highness, think of something else. Besides, this Sword Mountain is originally a supreme treasure, and with our strength we can't even break it at all. Xia Zhe swept a glance at the crowd and said in an indifferent tone, my mind is made up. If you don't want to do it, leave now. The motley crowd quieted down. Half a second later, a figure walked out from the crowd and respectfully bowed towards Xia Zhe. I'm sorry, Your Highness, I can't listen to you as a disciple of the Divine Night Sword sect. After saying that, the disciple was ready to leave. Ha! Xia Zhe coldly smiled, and the spiritual energy in his hands vibrated, transforming into a huge palm print that enveloped the disciple. Shazer, what are you trying to do? Feeling the rich killing intent, that disciple's face changed greatly, and he just wanted to draw out the long sword in his hand to resist. Just see that big hand gently clasping. This out-and-out Divine Sky Sword sect disciple was blown into a bloody mist on the spot. Feeling the constant churning of chi and blood in his body, Xia Zhe swallowed the blood in his throat. Sharp eyes once again looked at the crowd in front of them. Now, can anyone else refuse? Having seen Xia Zhe's methods, the crowd shook their heads and completely lost their resistance. Don't worry, after this matter, I'll take all the blame for the offense, and I'll triple your pay. Having said that, Xia Zhe was the first to leave, and the rest could only follow helplessly. As things stood, they had no better choice. I didn't realize that the ancestor was also a god of killing. Su Yan slowly opened his eyes and looked at the figure under the full moon with some surprise. As Su Yan sensed the sword intent in this, he realized that what this ancestor of his was practicing was also the killing sword intent. It was necessary to continuously kill, thus accumulating blood chi and enhancing the sense of the sword path. And this kind of sword intent was also present within Su Yan. It's only because the time to obtain the killing sword intent is still short, and within this sword mountain, there weren't too many people practicing the killing sword Dao. Thus, Su Yan's killing sword intent was still elevated at the grand completion stage. What was originally a top-notch sword intent in terms of killing power was now reduced to the point where it was lumped together with ordinary sword intent. However, you can get a good lift for you right now. Su Yan stood up and exploded all his sword intent. All sorts of powerful sword intent flowed around them, forming a vacuum 3 meters in diameter. Within this range, once those killing swords fell, they would all be resisted by Su Yan's sword intent. As Su Yan continued to advance, the sword intent that attacked increased. The figure that resided in the center also slowly opened its golden eyes. The ancestor turned to look at Su Yan, who was gradually approaching, and with a grip of his right hand he coalesced a blood-red longsword. Is this a challenge waiting for me? Seeing that ancestor's movements, Su Yan's interest grew even greater. Su Yan also wanted to see if these 30 sword intentions of his own could touch base with this leftover sword intention ancestor. Gradually arriving in front of the ancestor, Su Yan didn't say much nonsense and directly began to mobilize the sword bones in his body. Su Yan's entire person was like a sharp sword that was about to come out of its sheath. Those 30 sword intentions poured all the sword intent Tao rhythm they contained into Su Yan. Together, they forged the Su Yan, a supreme divine sword. The ancestor's eyes narrowed slightly, and he seemed to have felt the pressure from Su Yan as well, but he didn't make a move and waited, waiting for Su Yan to finish the final memorial. At that moment, the sound of dense explosions suddenly resounded outside, only to see Xiaozhe leading a group of cultivators floating in the area outside of the Sword Mountain's forbidden system and jointly launching an attack towards the Sword Mountain. Although there were preset down sword chi as a defense, after countless years of absorption by the Divine Sky Sword sect's disciples, the power of these sword chi had long since ceased to be the same. Ha ha, Su Yan, you still want to comprehend the ancestor's sword Tao? Dream on. I can't learn it, and you don't want to learn it either. Xiaozhe looked at the densely packed attacks with a grimace on his face, and suddenly felt that his heart was out of his mouth. But what Shazar doesn't know is, everything he said couldn't affect Su Yan at all, and apart from being able to make a little loud noise, it didn't have the slightest effect. At this moment, Su Yan also absorbed all the sword intent, and his entire body transformed into a long sword condensed by sword intent. The ancestor eye showed a stunning color as he waved the long sword in his hand, condensing countless red sword chi in the sky. Wrapped in countless killing sword chi, the ancestor turned into a red tide and rushed towards Su Yan. I'm sorry, ancestor, you'll have to account for yourself here today as well. Su Yan took out the bone and flesh that emitted a 7-colored glow from his spatial ring and threw it out. The self was also like a sharp sword, running through towards the front. Boom! In an instant, dazzling blood-colored sword light ran through the entire secret realm, and a huge gully appeared from the mountain peak. This entire sword mountain directly shattered under this attack. When all the blood light dissipated, Su Yan's figure appeared in the same place. As for the Dao bone that Su Yan had just thrown out, it had completely shattered at this time, turning into a colored light ball. Using the self-explosion of this Dao bone just so happens to directly extinguish the ancestor's figure. And there's still quite a bit of Dao rhythm left behind from the Dao bone. The killing sword rhythm spreading around wrapped around the 7 colored light streams and merged with each other, then flew towards Su Yan's chest. Su Yan's entire body was wrapped in a golden glow, and he could clearly feel the increase in his spiritual power. The killing sword intent, which was already a great accomplishment, also grew wildly at this moment, gradually consummating itself and subsequently forming a sword momentum. Then he slowly raised it again. Killing sword power initiation, killing sword power minor achievement, and finally came to great achievement before stopping. What Su Yan had received were the senses of the ancestors, and if he wanted to go further, he had to experience it for himself. It just so happens that there are some little ants that can make my sword opinion see blood. Su Yan turned his head to look in the direction where the sound of the explosion came from, his dark eyes carrying a scarlet glow. Chapter 30, Xiaozhe's death. Experience baby's position is empty. Grr, are you all just eating your words? Still haven't broken that defense yet. Looking at that sword domain space without being affected in the slightest, Xiaozhe was furious. Hearing Natsu's curses, the faces of the people around him changed slightly, but they did not retort, and one by one, they used the few attacks they had even more vigorously. But even with that effort, it didn't affect the space in between. Just as Xiaozhe was about to continue cursing, the sound of a voice directly caused his body to stop trembling. You guys, having fun? The inquiring tone, however, directly caused the hairs on Xiaozhe's body to stand on end. Shazar slowly turned around and looked at the figure suspended in midair. You, how did you get out so fast? Shazar gulped, forcing his tone to sound even, but the tremor in his tone had betrayed his demeanor. Su Yan's expression was indifferent as he used his finger instead of his sword and pointed out. Countless sword intents surrounded his body, falling towards the crowd in front of him as Su Yan moved. Do it! I'll stop him for me. Now that it can use aura, it's just a Yuaning realm. It can't make waves. Xiaozhe grimaced and hissed out in anger. In an instant, all sorts of powerful spiritual energy fluctuations erupted in the air, resisting the sword chi released by Su Yan. Rip! However, the sharp sword chi fell and very easily penetrated the aura's defense lock. Soon, the first unlucky person appeared. The sharp sword chi went straight through the forehead and churned the soul. Then, a sound of sword chi entering the body rang out. The entire sky was like rain spewing out countless rains of blood, and the rich smell of blood filled the entire sky, combined with the smell of decay in the secret realm. It seemed very unpleasant and suffocating. Su Yan, you actually dared to kill a disciple of the sect. Have you forgotten that the sect stipulates that you cannot kill at will after entering the secret realm? Looking at the dead man, Shazar's eyes were bared and he questioned in an angry voice. Are you out of your mind? Didn't you guys start it? What? You're only allowed to do it but I'm not allowed to kill? So are the rules the clan's or yours? Xiaozhe choked on Su Yan's dislike, completely unable to think of words to retort. Gritting his teeth, Shazar said angrily. Even so, after we leave, I will definitely report this matter to the clan and inflict punishment on you. As you wish. As long as you can walk out of this secret realm today. Xiaoze's face stiffened as he asked incredulously. What do you mean by that? Stupid. Can't even understand human language. Of course I'm going to kill you. Su Yan used his finger instead of the sword and swung downward once again, and the roiling sword chi coalesced to transform into a giant sword. The giant sword fell with a terrifying might. Xiaoze trembled and immediately took out the defensive treasures that he carried with him to defend himself. But while Xiaoze blocked it, the others were engulfed by this terrifying sword chi, and one by one, they fell towards the ground like rags. Suin! Xiaoze roared out, his aura pouring out crazily. Countless auras poured out, and the continuous riots also affected Natsu's body. The injuries that had just been suppressed also relapsed at that moment. If you continue to do so, I'm afraid that you won't be able to use the great and small dynasties to pressure me. Su Yan smiled and looked at Xiaoze, his eyes full of playfulness. Natsu blushed and also noticed the condition of his body at this moment. If he really made a move with Su Yan, he was afraid that he would die here first. Xiaoze's face shook as he quickly turned around and left towards the distance. Tisk. I'm afraid it's a little late to be leaving even now. Su Yan spoke indifferently, and the sword intent around his body manifested, and his neighbor became a huge dragon of sword chi. Roar! Hearing a hissing sound from behind him, Shazar subconsciously turned his head to look. The huge mouth, which was like an abyss, instantly engulfed Xiaoze, accompanied by a loud ringing sound. Number one's figure completely obliterated between heaven and earth. After doing everything, Su Yan's figure also disappeared into the air. Your Highness was really killed. In the middle of the ruins, a figure came out trembling, covered in a soft light, until the jade pendant in his hand shattered, which revealed itself. Su Yan, you dare to kill my great Xia Emperor, you will surely die. The man hissed and roared, his body shrouded in black gas, and disappeared into thin air. On Su Yan's side, he had already re-entered the peak, having killed Xiaoze. Su Yan still had some regrets. After all, Xiaoze had provided him with opportunities, all of which had brought Su Yan a lot of benefits. However, there's actually no black demon chi present on this guy? Previously, when he seized the Dao bone in Xiaoze's body, as well as when he had just beheaded it, Su Yan had not felt a single trace of demonic chi in his body. This comes as a surprise. Under the identification of Jiang Shuyan, Xiaoze had been to the Lin family's magic cave. The ones who had seized Jiang Shuyan's Dao bone before were also a group of demonic cultivators, and they all followed Xiaoze's orders. So it seems that there is another person who colludes with demonic cultivators inside these houses. Within the territory of the great Xia imperial dynasty, in addition to the righteous sects, there were also devilish sects, and their strength was no less than the three top sects. However, 50 years ago there had been a demon-slaying operation to surround the demon sect. In one go, there was a major cleansing of the demonic sects within the Great Summer. Nearly half of the demonic cultivators were annihilated, and the rest were expelled from the Daxia imperial dynasty. And most of those seized Devil's Way techniques also entered within the collection of the Grand Xia imperial dynasty. It is not known whether it was destroyed. However, there had been rumors in the world that the Devil sect had once again become a climate, forming a not-so-weak force outside of the dynasty. The northern wasteland, the southern border, and the eastern region all had traces of demonic cultivators in them. Forget it, it's not about me, and it's not about me anyway. Su Yan sat cross-legged and continued to comprehend the killing sword rhyme left behind by the ancestor. Great Xia dynasty. Your Majesty, he is bad. A spirit transformation realm great cultivator with a panicked expression barged into the imperial study and rolled to his knees, his body unable to stop trembling. The Xia emperor, who was concentrating on checking the Zhangfu, was directly shocked by this sudden surprise and coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood. The eunuch next to him hurriedly brought the Xia emperor the same for recovery. During this period of time, the large cultivator of the god transformation realm kneeling below didn't dare to raise his head at all, and his forehead was constantly sweating. Emperor Xia frowned slightly and said in a dignified tone, Xiahou-chun, as an elder of my imperial soul palace, how can you be so rude? If people don't know, they would think that I'm dead. Your Majesty, the matter is indeed too big to die. Xiahou-jun's tone was bitter, wanting to say but unable to. Being in charge of where the Hall of Souls is located, he must have seen a lot of life and death. Even if a prince of the same clan died, he had seen many of them, but he had never been so out of sorts as he was today. Emperor Xia also guessed something through Xiahou-chun's expression, and his body couldn't help but sit up straight. Say, who the hell is dead? Feeling the dragon's might that gradually filled the air, Xiahou-chun fiercely cowed out his head. Yes, third prince. Snap. Hearing this name, the Xia emperor was like losing all his essence. the whole person directly paralyzed on the dragon chair. Zell, dead. The original majestic dragon was like a late old man at this moment. Chapter 31, Foolish Human Beings, to lay hands on the tail of your Lord Cow. Find out for me. I want to know who killed Zell. The Xia Emperor's violent anger exited. His body's spiritual energy could not stop overflowing, and his originally pale face became red because of his intense anger. Just like the return of light before death. Previously, although Emperor Xia felt bad about Lin Shui's death, he didn't particularly care. After all, that child hadn't been born, and it wasn't exactly a royal son. But Xia Zhe was different. As the third prince of the Elephant Dynasty, the Summer Emperor practically watched him grow up. Moreover, when Emperor Xia was able to sit on this throne back then, he also had the credit of Xia Zhe's mother's family. Therefore, for this child Xia Huang still preferred, Your Majesty, today's Third Highness is in the Divine Sky Sword sect, and his death is most likely related to the Divine Sky Sword sect. Xiahou Chun knocked his head on the ground and said with a trembling voice, if we directly account for the Divine Sky Sword sect, we might be in big trouble. Trouble? Hearing those two words, the Xia Emperor laughed out loud. Let me ask you, is this still my Daxia dynasty? His Divine Heavenly Sword sect is just a sect within my great Xia Imperial dynasty. What makes him able to stand on my head? The roar was accompanied by a terrifying aura that directly shook Jun Xiahou out. The hallowed spirit transformation realm cultivator was directly shaken by this terrifying sound and spat out a large amount of blood. Your Majesty, spare your life. Xiahou Jun knelt on the ground once again. Take someone to the Divine Sky Sword sect. I want to know the truth about everything. Yes, Divine Sky Sword sect. Master, something big has happened. A disciple hurriedly came with his sword and hurriedly landed beside the Taoist. Ze, cultivation should be meditative. How can you be so flustered? What a shame. Facing the Taoist's chiding, Ze gulped, his gaze unconsciously looking toward Zhang Shang in the crowd. Sharply noticing Ze's sight, Zhang Shanga felt a sudden sense of ill will in his heart. Senior nephew, looking at your appearance, it seems to be related to me? Zhang Shang asked in a deep voice. The words fell. The sights of the many peak masters were all invested in Ze. What the Taoist managed was the Hall of Life Souls within the Divine Heavenly Sword sect. As long as one is admitted to the inner sect, a disciple can intercept a trace of his life soul to attach to the Life Soul Hall. If you are born and die, you will be sensed. Related to Zhang Shang, or the Soul Destruction Palace. It was obvious that something had happened to the person beside Zhang Shang. Ze swallowed hesitantly. Look at you. You bear. And don't say anything. The Taoist was furious as he looked at Ze's cowering form and stepped forward to kick Ze in the ass. Falling to the ground, Ze hurriedly got up and came over to the Taoist. Just a moment ago, dozens of fortune tags shattered at the Green Spirit Peak, and among them, there was also the third prince of the Great Xia, Xia Zhe. Boom! A thunderbolt fell at the right time. Zhang Shang's entire body froze in place. Natsuzawa, dead. Natsuzawa, dead. Shazar. Zhang Shang stood still, his mouth repeating these words over and over again. The rest of the peak masters saw this and silently left this place. The wine Taoist frowned and followed the Taoist. Senior nephew, are you sure you're not mistaken? Ze revealed a bitter smile. Senior uncle, I also want to look at it wrong. Like those additionally all shattered at the same moment. The wine Taoist sighed and reached out to pat the Taoist on the shoulder. Senior brother Si Yang, whether or not we can investigate the cause of their deaths depends on you. Taoist Si Yan looked at the fine sweat that continued to emerge from his forehead, and his tone was somewhat uncertain. Don't worry, senior brother. I'll try my best. Si Yang, who was in charge of the Hall of Destiny Souls, naturally had a relevant secret method to be able to explore the traces of a dead disciple's life. But, Si Yang looked back at the secret realm that had opened up in the sky and couldn't help but choke up a little. With this secret technique of mine, can I really probe into the secret realm opened up by my master? It was too difficult to explore a secret realm like this one because of the extreme instability of the space. That said, are we splitting hairs? Si Yan looked at the wine Taoist with a confused expression. What? Now that Xia Zhe is dead, doesn't it mean that my disciple is the most likely to comprehend the sword momentum? Doesn't that mean that I made the right bet? The wine Taoist set of words directly dried out the Si Yang Taoist. *******, elder brother. You're too shameless. What do I care? They don't want it. Doesn't the stuff belong to me? What do you want to back out? *******, you took them all. So what do I take? You've got a hammer to hold. All this stuff is mine. And your bet comes with me to bring it. I $%. You, ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and gaining 7 days of cultivation. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and obtaining the 9th grade technique. Condensed Ice Frost Dragon Technique. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and gaining 7 days of cultivation. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the daily check-in and obtaining the reward, the fishing rod of the heavens. Su Yan slowly opened his eyes and felt the fluctuation of spiritual energy within his body. A few days down the line, Su Yan's realm had once again returned to the late Yuaning realm. The rewards this system gives for signing in are also messed up. Su Yan moved his mind and a green bamboo boom appeared in front of him. Su Yan reached out and held the fishing rod, and the method of use immediately entered his mind. Su Yan pulled the fishing line and flung it forward, and the hook that emitted a silver-colored glow instantly broke the space in front of him and plunged into a chaos. After a few breaths, there was a shaking of the fishing rod, and Su Yan pulled with force, and a 1-meter-long goldfish landed in front of Su Yan. Dragon carp? What appeared in front of him was the dragon carp that had been given once by signing in. Only this time the dragon carp was obviously quite a bit worse. Looking up to fluctuate with only the cultivation of a third-order lesser demon, the dragon carp smashed down on the ground. A pair of dead fish eyes just looked straight at Su Yan, and the master still had a bit of clueless. Let's see what else we can fish out. Su Yan once again threw the fish hook and probed into the chaotic sea in front of him. After a few more breaths passed, the chaotic sea in front of him once again transmitted a strange movement. Su Yan pulled hard, and another huge object smashed down in front of Su Yan. This time, it was a pitch-black demonic bull with a cultivation level that had also reached 7th order demon. Su Yan probed and found that this demonic cow's cultivation had been sealed. Even though its cultivation was high, it had now become a universe on Su Yan's desk. At this moment, the demonic ox was equally very confused. Wasn't I just in the demon race's holy land, discussing with other great demons about returning to attack the human race? Why did I suddenly appear here? Is the human in front of me some kind of top power? Otherwise, why could I seal my cultivation and bring it here across tens of thousands of miles? As the demonic ox pondered, he realized that Su Yan was walking towards him, and a sharp sword that emitted a powerful aura appeared in his hand. The demonic ox's pupils shrunk, trying to struggle but realizing that he was being suppressed and unable to move. One could only watch Su Yan walk towards his back. One breath later, moo moo moo, stupid human, how dare you cut my tail? You shall not die.